A pink-haired baby smiles among strawberries. A bloodied hand grips a sword.
Amidst shadows and red-eyed monsters, a dark figure continues the relentless fight with a blade.
After finishing a day of routine labor, a mundane task leads to an unexpected event. A young black-haired girl runs through the moonlit town until she suddenly trips with a sharp thud.
A beam of light shines on her fallen form as she suddenly recalls memories of her past life.
She realizes her sister, Arya, is the radiant and angelic female lead of a novel she once read. In contrast, she is the daughter of the cold Duke Chrysis and the villainous half-sibling destined to torment Arya.
Gazing at the family's dark legacy, she resolves to distance herself entirely from the Duke's grim affairs. Despite her reluctance, she acknowledges that finding the Duke is her only remaining option.
While she remains slumped in despair, a stern voice commandingly orders her to stand up.
A black-haired man with piercing red eyes reaches his hand out toward her in the opulent hall.
Snow clings to barren branches as he encourages a princess to find her inner confidence.
The black-haired man confirms his familial bond by declaring her to be his sister.
Standing amidst a vast library, the same man reaffirms her identity as his beloved daughter. A decorative frame highlights how she was once treated with genuine and heartfelt sincerity.
Her quiet reflection is interrupted by a gentle, reassuring pat on her head.
In a moment of shock, a group realizes that there is nothing fundamentally wrong with her.
The Duke stares forward with silent intensity.
A fist shatters a glass surface. Enraged, Arya punches a stone pillar and darkly notes that the Duke will only show emotion upon her death.
Overwhelmed by the unexpected turn of events, Kashmir trembles and questions why her plan has gone so wrong.
Recalling a tender childhood moment, she remembers her original desire was simply to protect baby Arya.
She had intended for the novel's male leads to find their way to Arya without any obstacles. 4 mysterious men stand in silhouette.
The blonde crown prince kisses her hand and demands she take responsibility for saving his life.
Looking at her intensely, Prince Diego asks if she has forgotten the events of that pivotal night.
From across the hall, the white-haired knight confesses that he has admired her for a long time.
Liner, the imperial knight, blushes as he pleads for her to return even a small portion of his feelings.
A silver-haired man offers her the choice between being empress or queen, promising to protect her as her commander.
King Alexandro smiles and proposes marriage, offering his entire kingdom in exchange for her hand.
A man takes her hand while explaining that his public persona as a pope is merely a facade.
Leora, the pope of the sun god's temple, gazes at her softly and calls her his true son.
A geometric pattern signals a transition. Kashmir is struck with sudden horror as she realizes the male leads are chasing her instead of her sister. Clutched in a spiral of confusion, she desperately wonders if the world has gone mad or if she has. She lets out a frustrated scream as the reality of her derailed plan sets in.
Despite the chaos, her internal motivation remains the singular goal of protecting the lovely Arya.
Her thoughts drift back to her difficult past, born into a brothel without ever knowing her father.
She recalls living in a state of poverty, sharing a quiet life alone with her mother.
A sudden, joyous sparkle fills her eyes as a 3-year-old Kashmir sees her sister for the first time. She reflects on the vast difference between Arya's celestial beauty and her own life of misery.
A rat scurries through the darkness. She huddled on the floor of a cold room, feeling as though her sister was too pure for such an environment.
A sweet voice calls out for her sister amidst a field of blooming flowers.
Baby Arya reaches out with tiny hands. A brilliant light flashes as she concludes that a distant god is indifferent to those suffering in the dark. Tragedy struck when she was 7 years old as her mother passed away, leaving behind only an old mansion. Without a guardian, she and Arya were forced to labor desperately under harsh conditions just to survive.
When Arya turned 8, she fell victim to a mysterious and worsening illness that had no known cure.
She worked tirelessly to afford rare, expensive medicine for her ailing sister.
Her life as a warrior began at the young age of 10. Violence and the scent of blood became her constant companions. A sudden, sharp crunch sounds as the magician enters the fray.
She mastered the blade with incredible speed and has been fighting ever since. Her terrifying reputation earned her the ominous title of Black Catastrophe Mir. The story's title appears against a dark, ornate background.
Her life changed forever upon reaching her 18th year. Covered in blood after a quest, she returns home to her quiet life. A sudden slip leads to a sharp, jarring snap sounding.
As she hits the ground with a dull thud, intense pain triggers a memory.
She recalls her previous life as an overworked graduate student in Korea.
Death came suddenly to her former self before she could reach her goals.
She realizes she has been reborn into the world of a novel.
Her beloved sister is the destined female lead of the story Fairy Night.
She is actually the daughter of the high-ranking Duke of Chrysis.
In this world, she is cast as the villainous half-sister destined for tragedy.
Waking up, she recognizes the familiar surroundings of a medical room.
She feels grateful to whoever rescued her after she collapsed from exhaustion. She realizes she is alive as her sister's shadow falls over her.
Arya sits quietly, her pink hair glowing in the soft light. Startled, the mercenary questions why her sick sister is out of bed.
She frantically urges her sister to go home and get some rest. Worried about the rain, she frets that her sister might catch a cold.
Arya gazes at her with a look of intense, silent frustration.
Clenching her skirt, Arya asks if her sister is finally worried about her.
Arya points out that her sister was found bloodied and unconscious.
The mercenary fidgets nervously under her sister's stern and tearful gaze.
The two sisters stand in the quiet room as the tension builds. Arya cries out in anger, demanding her sister's attention and honesty.
She scolds her sister for being secretive about her dangerous activities.
Arya expresses her deep fear for her sister's constant injuries.
Calling her Shushu, Arya pleads for her to finally take care of herself.
Arya yells that her sister should stop trying to cure her illness.
The mercenary reflects on hiding her dark profession from her innocent sister.
She looks away, saddened by the burden she has placed on Arya.
Her only goal was to keep Arya from worrying about their survival. She pushed herself to work without rest to secure their future. She realizes just how much her sister has been suffering in silence.
Arya weeps, explaining that she hates seeing her sister struggle so much.
A warm embrace brings the two sisters closer together in their grief.
Looking determined, she vows to protect Arya no matter the cost.
Her knowledge of the original plot gives her a clear advantage.
Arya clenches her fists, tired of hearing that everything is fine.
As Arya hits her, she apologizes and feigns pain to soothe her.
She continues her performance of being hurt to make Arya feel better. Despite her durability as a master, she lets Arya care for her. A dark realization crosses her mind about the true nature of their problems.
The scene shifts as she reflects on when the trouble truly began.
Her memories returned only after a violent accident forced them to the surface.
She reflects on the novel she read in her past life.
In the story, the pink-haired lead fell ill and was saved. Arya's kind nature won over everyone at the council.
She captivated the childless couple and their household servants.
Arya eventually entered high society and saved the entire world.
The popular romance novel became a massive bestseller.
Arya had to endure many trials to grow and awaken.
The sister rages against Arya's destined suffering and trials.
A sudden panic strikes as she realizes the time.
She ignores Arya's warnings and rushes off for work. She recalls her destined role as the villainous Kashmir. A plaque displays the name Kashmir Chrysis. She is destined to be a trial for her sister. In the original story, she abandoned Arya for her heritage. Society ostracized her as an illegitimate child of the Duke.
Isolation and resentment turned her heart increasingly dark and cruel.
10 years later, she reunited with Arya in social circles.
Both sisters are shocked to see each other again.
Arya was beloved while Kashmir was bullied and ignored. She fully awakens as a bloody and vengeful villainess.
She resolves to protect her sister from any insults.
Her constant intervention is tangling the original story's plot. She intends to protect Arya as her secret sword.
She adjusts a ring that modulates her voice.
It is finally time to work as Mir. A heavy rhythmic thud sounds as the mercenary enters.
People whisper in shock about the black catastrophe Mir.
They discuss the many followers who mimic her signature look. She chooses the outfit simply because it is comfortable. She notes the misunderstandings that follow her grown fame.
A waiter bows politely and asks for her reservation.
She mentions her noon appointment with her mysterious client.
She places a specific lunch order for steak and wine.
A quick slide sounds as the waiter guides her.
She finds her self-proclaimed god client to be quite inferior.
The waiter bows and bids her a polite farewell.
She braces herself to perform well for her task today. A sharp click sounds as she turns the handle. She enters the room and immediately bows to her client.
The silver-haired man sits before a window flanked by guards.
The client requests that she use a more personal name.
He asks her how she has been faring lately.
A soft rustle sounds as Elle finally greets her. He invites her to sit comfortably and share her is.
He complains that his life in the temple is boring.
A rhythmic top sounds as he discusses his dull routine. He admits he has been looking forward to the meeting.
He explains that she is the one who brings him happiness.
She's bewildered by the priest's cryptic and sentimental words.
A heavy thud sounds as a bag hits the floor.
A liar looks on with a thoughtful expression.
He praises her for her hard work. Elior hands over a sealed envelope. Mir accepts the envelope with a soft top.
She is startled as a quick grab sounds.
A soft pop sounds as he smiles brightly.
She holds the envelope in her hand.
A somber reflection notes her lack of joy.
She feels uncomfortable with the high payment.
He consistently pays her with gold coins. She argues his generosity is his own loss.
Mir's grip on the envelope tightens. A quick tap sounds as she unseals it.
Mir reacts with shock at the contents.
She addresses him by name in surprise.
Mir's eye shows a look of disbelief.
Elior invites her to use a casual nickname. They acknowledge the new, more familiar turns. Mir is stunned by the extras Yiril added.
He remains calm despite her intense reaction.
Elir becomes incredibly flustered and awkward. A memory shows the danger she faced. She recalls the long months of suffering.
He dismisses the overpayment as a mistake.
Mir refuses the money based on her faith.
Her master's teachings emphasize unwavering faith.
She chose faith over her personal pride.
A firm thud sounds as she stands up. Mir rejects his offer, claiming it is excessive.
A soft clink sounds as he defends her.
He insists the gold pays for her blood.
Mir demands that he stop deceiving her. She stands her ground against the excessive payment.
He questions why she refuses his support.
Mir clarifies that she has no hidden intentions. A flashback reveals their history of stubborn goodwill. Young Mir shouts her refusal being out. Elior freezes in a moment of pure shock. He offers a quiet apology for everything. Mir wonders why he is looking away. He explains his desire not to tease her.
Mir admits that she also overreacted.
He seeks forgiveness for his earlier rudeness.
A smooth slide sounds as he reaches out.
He apologizes for acting without her consent.
Elir pleads for her to use his nickname. He admits that his formal title feels distant.
A sharp gasp sounds as he gets closer.
Their hands meet in a firm clasp. He looks at her with desperation. The mercenary panics upon realizing she has made the Grand Priest cry. She frantically scrambles to clean the mess, promising that she will definitely call him El from now on. The black-haired woman bows in deep despair as the silver-haired man continues to weep into a cloth.
She reflects in terror on her crimes of betting against the priest and making him cry.
Looking visibly shaken, she watches him closely as a sudden, nervous sweat breaks out.
The Grand Priest remains hidden beneath his hood, his shoulders shaking with soft sobs.
A soft, comforting touch surprises her as he places his hand over her gloved one.
She is stunned into silence by the sudden physical contact and the change in his demeanor. He smiles gently and reminds her that she must use his personal name.
She is dazzled by his appearance, thinking he looks like a real angel despite his occasionally strange eyes. His eyes sparkle with a soft, tearful warmth as he gazes at her affectionately. He notices her hand is injured again, while she secretly worries about how to explain her head injury. Her thoughts drift to her sister, wishing that Arya could also be cured by such divine power. She reflects on the danger of seeking temple treatment for Arya, as a failure could be labeled as heresy. She tries to politely decline his help, insisting he does not always have to treat her. He looks at her with a pleading expression, asking her to please let him continue.
His pure and radiant smile completely overwhelms her senses, leaving her breathless.
He leans in close with a mysterious gaze and asks if she is aware of something. Amidst a background of blooming roses, he confesses that he is always waiting for this moment with her. She wonders if he is being bullied by other priests, since none of them seem very kind. Her mind recalls a child she saved years ago who had been bullied within a temple.
She notes to herself that the child and El bear a striking resemblance to one another.
The mercenary stares at him intensely, trying to reconcile her memories with the man before her. He takes her hand and asks if she has been bothered by anyone lately. She answers him simply, stating that no one has been causing her any trouble. A dark, possessive energy fills his thoughts as he vows that no one will ever bother her again. A sudden, sharp realization of his intense expression causes her to flinch in surprise.
A priest stands at the window, interrupting their meeting to address His Holiness.
The brown-haired subordinate bows deeply, reminding his superior that it is time for their scheduled meeting. His face contorts with a dark, sinister pleasure as he remarks that meeting with Mir is fun. A terrifying aura of divine pressure erupts from him, causing the subordinate to seize up in pain. He stares out with a cold, distant expression as he mentions that he is recalling the past.
Narrative text explains the ancient myths surrounding the founding of the empire and the temple.
Legend tells of a silver dragon that purified the magical ruins of the world long ago.
The person possessing the greatest divine power in the temple is always appointed as the pope.
A formal portrait reveals the identity of the current pope as the silver-haired Eliora.
The subordinate trembles violently, clutching his chest as he struggles under the immense pressure. He gasps for air, his face pale with terror in the presence of his superior.
The priest collapses to the floor, coughing uncontrollably as the oppressive energy continues to weigh on him.
Eliora stands tall and imposing, looking down coldly at the man's suffering at his feet.
Mir walks home through the dark streets, her posture slumped from the day's exhaustion.
She sees her tired reflection and worries that her overworked appearance will make Arya angry.
Despite her fatigue, her only desire is to return home and see her beloved sister.
A sudden, loud command to lay siege echoes through the air, catching her off guard. She hears someone shouting about a poisoned rat being caught in their trap. Horror strikes her as she realizes the Grand Priest is currently being pressured and attacked. She watches from the shadows as a group of armed men moves toward their target.
Her attention is drawn to a specific man with orange-brown hair standing amongst the attackers.
The orange-haired man looks back with a grim, determined expression on his face. A festive and cute illustration thanks the readers for their support and concludes the chapter. A brown-haired man turns in shock as several masked figures surround him.
A masked assassin mocks the target's helplessness as he faces imminent death.
The brown-haired man reels from the realization that his mother hired them.
Hidden above, the black-haired mercenary observes the noble and questions his bounty.
She decides to intervene, recalling her teacher's lessons about justice and strength.
She briefly struggles with her conscience, wishing for a peaceful outcome.
Her resolve hardens as she chooses to uphold her teacher's principles.
The assassins mock the man's talent before launching a lethal strike. The brown-haired noble closes his eyes, seemingly accepting his tragic fate.
Mir leaps from the shadows to save the man from certain death.
A heavy thud sounds as the mercenary lands, shocking the confused attackers.
She reflects on her duty to punish those who disregard human life.
Mir lunges forward, determined to neutralize every threat in the area.
She suspects the handsome noble might be a member of the royalty.
Dazzled by his beauty, she thinks he is a real Prince Charming. The group of masked men stares in complete and utter disbelief.
They begin to wonder if their mysterious opponent has lost her mind.
She apologizes for the delay while searching her person for a weapon. The assassins watch in confusion as she pulls out a strange object. She triumphantly presents a simple iron rod as her weapon of choice.
The lead assassin scoffs at the idea of being defeated by scrap. A sharp, bone-cracking sound echoes as she delivers a powerful overhead blow.
The attackers are left speechless as their comrade is instantly taken down.
She casually observes that the iron rod she found is surprisingly effective.
The noble watches in awe, wondering if she is the legendary Kashmir.
Terror grips one of the assassins at the mention of Kashmir's name.
A dark and oppressive aura begins to radiate from the mysterious mercenary.
Narration describes the legendary power of Kashmir that surpasses all human limits.
A flash of light marks another strike as she harnesses supernatural mana. She continues her swift assault while remaining the world's most mysterious warrior. Mir stands confidently among the fallen men, her mission nearly complete.
The final assassin boasts about his high rank as he prepares to fight.
While he imagines himself as a tiger, she sees a harmless little cat. A loud crack sounds as she finishes the fight in record time. She decides to throw the unconscious men into the jungle for safety.
The brown-haired man looks up and asks who she is.
He begs for an answer as to why she decided to save him.
She is distracted by his looks before sensing a faint magical energy.
Her eyes narrow at his ring, suspecting it hides his true identity. She dismisses his questions, telling him to simply forget the entire encounter. She inspects his deep wound, ignoring his protests as she plans treatment.
A sudden rip sounds as she shreds a cloth to make bandages.
A pained grunt sounds as she applies firm pressure to his injury.
The noble winces in agony as he endures the rough first aid.
She is surprised by his high level of stamina despite his appearance.
She notes that the bleeding has been successfully stopped by her efforts. Seeing he cannot walk, she decides to carry him out herself. A quick whoosh sounds as she tosses the man over her shoulder.
The noble is left speechless by the sudden and forceful rescue. She looks back and asks if he would consider following her lead.
Stars twinkle over a quiet stone house nestled among the trees. A soft thud sounds as Mir tells the brown-haired noble to take a seat on the bed.
The man addresses her as a princess, leaving the mercenary wondering who he is talking about.
A rhythmic thumping sounds as Mir demands he remove his shirt for treatment, causing him to look shocked.
Various apothecary jars and dried flowers sit on the shelves as he asks if she is a deputy. Mir reveals a wooden crate full of bandages, explaining that she knows enough about first aid to help him.
A pained grunt sounds as Mir forcefully wraps bandages around the man's bare torso to treat his wounds.
She suggests that his sneaky behavior in black clothing might lead someone to mistake his identity.
A silhouette of a tall man with red eyes appears as she notes he could be confused for Duke Chrysis if he were taller.
Mir reflects on the original story where the Duke was known for exclusively wearing black clothes.
A soft tapping sounds as she finishes her task and tells him that everything is okay now.
Sitting shirtless on the edge of the bed, he asks her for the real reason she decided to save him.
The handsome noble sits quietly, his upper body and torso completely covered in fresh bandages. He stands up and explains to the mercenary that there are 3 types of people who have helped him. The first group consisted of those who expected him to surpass his limits and achieve greatness for them.
The second group were those who hated him and simply waited for him to make a fatal mistake.
A dark frame highlights the third group of people, those who only wanted to take things away from him.
He claims she does not fit any of those categories because she does not actually know who he is.
A transition shot shows the lower half of the noble's legs in the dimly lit room.
Mir touches her face thoughtfully and asks what he wants, admitting she cannot read his thoughts.
Making a comical expression, she insists to the noble that she absolutely does not want anything from him. He leans in very close and takes her chin, asking again why she saved him and what her goal is. She suspects he has been lied to his whole life and asks if he could even provide what she wanted if she asked. He chuckles and notes that as a swordmaster, she could take whatever she wanted by force anyway. A loud slap sounds as Mir tosses a cloth over his head, telling him he just got lucky.
She tells him to stop the nonsense and get changed while he struggles to pull the fabric over his head.
A soft rustle sounds as Mir grabs a brown cloth, stating there is no such thing in this world as a truly selfless deed. He looks down with a somber expression as she finishes her thought about doing good deeds without expecting rewards.
Holding the brown shirt, he admits that he does not trust heroes or legendary figures like the Black Tragedy.
A sharp click sounds as Mir touches the door, telling him not to trust them then, and asserting she is no hero.
A quick whoosh sounds as she tosses more clothes his way, telling him to worry about his own needs for once.
In a cute, small form, she orders him to stay and rest until he is able to walk home by himself. He lets out a surprised cry as Mir forcefully pushes him back toward the bed to make him lie down. A soft thud sounds as he lands on the mattress while she explains that he can return home safely later. Mir looks down at him with a gentle gaze, explaining that saving him was simply what people should do for one another.
The noble looks up in wonder, thinking that there is nothing more important than a person's life.
He reflects on the fact that while many are selfish, there are still selfless people in the world like her.
Mir smiles softly under her mask and tells him to be comfortable while she sleeps elsewhere for the night.
He reaches out and grabs her scarred wrist, asking if she intends to leave without telling him her name.
She claims her name is Kashmir, but he demands her real identity as she worries about his growing suspicion.
Mir looks away in a panic, thinking that she absolutely cannot reveal her true name to him under these circumstances.
A bird flies overhead as Mir blurts out the fake name Dedita to the utterly confused man.
A sharp screech sounds as they stare at each other in an awkward, silent standoff over her strange choice of name.
The house remains quiet as a soft creak sounds from the door opening in the middle of the night while he sleeps. A soft rustle sounds as a blonde subordinate arrives and tells the noble he is there to pick him up. Outside, the subordinate addresses him formally before the noble remarks on the inconvenience of the entire situation.
A soft thud sounds as Mir sleeps in a nearby chair while the noble looks back at her one last time before leaving.
The blonde man urges the noble to leave quickly, mentioning the chaos that will be occurring at the palace. A soft hum sounds as someone notes how light the mercenary is while lifting her to move her to the bed. A soft rustle sounds as the noble pulls the covers over the sleeping Mir, reflecting on the importance of life. Reflecting on the value of life, Mir thinks that while some are selfish, there are many others like her who care for people's well-being. A soft rustle sounds as the noble watches Mir sleep. A soft rustle sounds as he touches her face. Night passes in the quiet house. Waking up alone, Mir kicks the covers in frustration, realizing the noble moved her on purpose. She fumes at the realization that he knew she was awake and listening to her surroundings the entire time. A tired highs sounds as she decides to head home, resolving to never see him again. The scene shifts to town during the day. A clicking sound echoes as Mir returns home, announcing her arrival to a girl named Arya.
A happy wah sounds as a pink-haired girl rushes out to embrace her.
A soft thud sounds as Arya clings to her. Mir apologizes for her sudden urgent business, but Arya worries that she was unable to help with the chores. Arya insists that Mir's health and meals are far more important, while Mir urges her sister to eat well. Mir smiles warmly at Arya. Arya thinks about how her sister Shushu always acts in this self-sacrificing way. Narration describes Arya's constant worry for her sister, who hides her own burdens despite her claims of love. The thought continues, noting that many truths are still kept hidden between them.
Mir acknowledges Arya's concerns with a soft, knowing gaze. A soft ah sounds as Arya admits she is being childish because she worries so much about her sister.
A soft potting sound echoes as Mir promises to stay home and not go anywhere for the rest of the day.
She asks if Arya would like to go out and play together for the first time in a while.
Arya's face lights up with joy.
She smiles happily among the flowers.
Walking through town, Mir warns Arya to be careful, but Arya urges her to be less vigilant and fears she might run into someone.
Mir playfully tells the princess to step back while she handles a pretend threat, making a dramatic protective gesture.
Arya giggles at the performance and teases her sister for being so childish.
Mir watches Arya with a smile. Mir reflects on how lonely Arya must have been while she was away working on her business. She vows to make Arya happy and make up for her past regrets. Narration focuses on the importance of Arya's successful meeting with Count Freya. A soft sound of surprise escapes Arya. A joyful hee-hee sounds as she smiles.
The sisters walk through town together.
Mir offers to order a drink for Arya after they settle into a table at a cafe.
Arya looks over the menu.
Mir watches her sister, thinking about buying her better clothes now that they have more money.
She recalls that most of her profits used to go to Arya's medicine, making her eager to spoil her now.
Arya smiles and confirms her choice.
Mir promises to be right back with the order as she thinks about how fast her sister has grown. A soft tapping sound echoes as Mir orders coffee and a strawberry parfait, feeling guilty about Arya's past hardships.
A soft sigh sounds as she wishes Arya could enjoy being a child more. A sudden gasp escapes Mir as she spots something alarming through the cafe window.
She stares in disbelief at a violent scene unfolding on the street below.
Several thudding sounds echo as a man roughly drags away a struggling red-haired woman.
The man drags the girl away.
Mir wonders if it has become an imperial trend for people to find themselves in danger right in front of her.
Arya asks what is wrong after noticing Mir's sudden change in mood.
Mir tells Arya to eat once the food arrives, promising she will be right back after a quick task. A sharp grab sounds as Arya catches Mir's sleeve, calling her Sister Shushu.
Arya looks worriedly at her sister, begging her to be safe and not get hurt. Mir smiles and promises she won't get hurt.
Mir promises she'll return before the coffee cools. Mir rushes through the city toward the disturbance.
The red-haired woman shouts at the cotters.
The man snarls at her, ignoring her status.
He declares that she will die right there.
The noblewoman remains defiant despite being roughly grabbed.
Mir watches, annoyed by the recurring drunken violence.
A sudden, sharp realization strikes the masked Mir.
Mir holds a pipe, considering how rumors spread.
The woman frantically tries to bribe her way free.
The man mockingly asks if wealth solves everything.
Hiccuping, he laments that money won't save her. He orders her to follow him to Sefer. A heavy bang sounds as a pipe strikes.
The terrified man collapses onto the hard ground.
The noblewoman looks around for her mysterious savior. Mir appears behind her, asking if she's okay. The woman stares, wondering who has saved her.
The man shouts in confusion at the newcomer. A soft slide sounds as Mir readies herself. Mir asks if he truly understands his actions. The man trembles in the face of her presence.
He rants about how nobles mistreat their subjects.
He claims the woman insulted him by calling him Durgi. Mir questions the claim while the woman stammers.
The noblewoman explains he bumped her shoulder first. She glares, refusing to apologize for his mistake.
Mir thinks she will never lose her pride.
The man points out her lack of remorse. He shouts that all nobles are cruel bastards.
He claims a right to deal with her.
Mir thinks she doesn't care about his past. A dark energy strikes him down with force.
She asserts that no harm can ever be justified. A pained "gah" sounds as he is struck. Narrative text explains the aura's non-lethal, painful effect. Mir considers how she almost hit him. She decides the pipe is too innocent for him. Mir dismisses the woman and prepares to leave. Surrounded by roses, the woman asks for her name. In reality, Mir just wants her to go. The woman insists on a reward for the help. Mir notices the woman is about to faint. The red-haired woman trembles in the street. She whispers her name as Llewellyn de Carter. She collapses while offering a reward from the Marquis. Mir reacts with shock at hearing the name.
Llewellyn is the queen of the social world.
Mir realizes she saved the story's main villainess.
Narrative describes Llewellyn de Cardo, the money-eating rose and youngest daughter of Marquis de Cardo.
Before Arya appeared, Llewellyn was the queen of the social world and harbored a crush on Liner Einhart. A soft thud sounds as Llewellyn collapses while Mir realizes she has changed the original story by rescuing the villainess before Liner Einhart could.
Mir realizes a silhouette has arrived, noting she ignored the original timing of Liner's appearance.
A quick tap sounds as the white-haired man approaches the sweating Mir, asking what is wrong.
Narrated as a talented future swordmaster, the white-haired man expresses his deep impression of Mir. Narrative identifies him as Liner Einhart, the next Marquise and commander of the 2nd Imperial Knight Squad. He is revealed to be a fanatic obsessed with swords. Mir sits on the ground with the unconscious Llewellyn, staring up at the imposing commander.
Mir's heart thumps as she worries that the sword fanatic will recognize her skills and take an interest in her.
Narrative text warns that the situation is about to become very serious.
Liner Cartel Renault Einhart is described as a top candidate for the story's male lead. Narrative notes that he becomes a rambling explanatory machine whenever swordsmanship is mentioned.
From a hostile perspective, his obsession makes him appear intense and overwhelming.
A vibrant energy highlights the fact that he is completely crazy about swords.
Liner asks for a word while Mir recognizes his obsession through his tone, confident she can handle him if he is only a sword expert.
Mir considers knocking him down and escaping if the situation doesn't improve.
A soft rustle sounds as Mir quickly stands up and lifts Llewellyn, prompting Liner to ask what she is doing. Mir apologizes and claims she is too busy to talk while holding the obstacle Llewellyn. Liner insists on asking a single question. Mentioned he noticed her aura while passing by. Liner pauses as he prepares to address her.
A soft wah sounds as the Chibi Mir and Llewellyn panic, with Mir concluding that Liner is driven by an abnormal obsession.
Mir worries that her famous black aura has made her identity too easy to trace.
Narrated as the Black Disaster, Mir reflects on the many people trying to uncover her true identity.
She thinks about how her secret identity is essential to ensuring Arya's safety.
Narrative explains that Liner is destined to fall in love with Arya in the original plot.
Mir puts Llewellyn down, resolving to resolve the current mess and flee immediately.
She wonders if Liner is hostile because she has consistently declined offers from the Night Squads.
Mir asks if he would believe her if he denied being Mir, but Liner flatly refuses.
Mir mocks his certainty and calls him impolite for questioning a stranger without an introduction. A soft gasp sounds as the man flinches at Mir's demand. Liner immediately apologizes for his lack of manners.
Surrounded by flowers, he introduces himself as Liner Einhart, the commander of the 2nd Imperial Knight Squad.
Mir hands over the responsibility of the criminals and the victim to him now that his status is confirmed.
She asks him to ensure justice for the victim while Liner agrees to finish the situation.
Looking at the fallen drunk, Mir reflects on the dangers of alcohol.
Mir prepares to leave, thinking this aligns with the original plot's resolution. Mir's heart sinks as Liner asks for her introduction with sparkling eyes, making her nervously offer a fake name. Liner immediately rejects her claim. Liner explains that her flawless use of a black aura confirms she is none other than the mercenary known as Mir.
A soft highs sounds as Mir gives up and admits that she is indeed the mercenary Mir.
She asks if he is finally satisfied with her answer. Looking joyful with cherubs appearing around him, Liner asks if she will tell him her real name as well. A heavy thud sounds as Mir's analysis fails, shocked by the smile of a man who is supposed to be cold-blooded to everyone but Arya. She finds his interest in her strange and even questions if he is actually the real Liner Einhart.
She realizes he is curious about her personal identity, acting as if he already knows the truth.
Concerned for Arya's safety, Mir asks if he was assigned to investigate her or what he intends to do with the information. Liner clarifies that his curiosity is focused on her as a person, not her reputation as Black Disaster. Mir asks why he is so curious about her, surprised by his unexpected reaction.
Liner promises that he will explain his reasons to her very soon.
Mir looms over Liner in the dimly lit street.
A harsh, demanding question echoes through the darkness. The black-haired mercenary and the white-haired commander lock eyes in a tense standoff. Mir pins the white-haired man to the ground, a blade held firmly against his neck as she demands his identity.
Blood trickles as Mir threatens him for the truth. He calmly asks how she discovered his name.
The white-haired man wonders why he didn't resist, while Mir feels a sudden, haunting surge of déjà vu. The scent of rosewood clings to the air as Mir stares down at the white-haired commander. Liner explains his personal interest led him to uncover her name during an investigation, assuring her the secret is safe.
A sudden, swift movement cuts through the tension.
Mir grips the white-haired man's jaw, drawing blood as he identifies himself as Liner Einhart. Mir warns him to be careful with his words and keep her identity hidden forever. Liner touches his bleeding neck and apologizes for his prying, while Mir admits her own hostility. Mir decides to leave the scene to him, her thoughts already turning toward Arya's safety. Liner watches the black-haired mercenary depart, realizing she is the hero he has always admired. Mir pauses as the man declares his desire to emulate her strength. A memory of a tall youth and a smaller, hooded figure walking together surfaces. A young, messy-haired boy looks on with wide, starstruck eyes. The white-haired commander stands amidst falling petals, revealed as the boy Mir once saved.
A realization dawns on the black-haired woman as she looks back. Mir reaches out and applies a cloth to the wound on the white-haired man's neck.
She instructs him to apply pressure to stop the bleeding.
Mir grows uncomfortable under his intense gaze, wondering why he is looking at her so deeply.
She reflects on the young boy's words, questioning why anyone would want to be like her.
Mir pokes the white-haired commander's chest, a playful yet firm gesture.
She encourages him to strive to be a better person than she is.
A gentle, rare smile crosses the black-haired woman's face in his memories.
Present-day Liner looks visibly moved by her words.
Seated on a high rooftop, Mir reflects on her 4 days of investigating Count Freya.
She ponders the hidden depths of the story as she gazes at a grand sunlit manor.
The narrative shifts to the Snow Festival, where the original plot destined Arya to meet the Count.
A memory of Arya lying helpless in a cold alleyway flickers.
Because Mir has provided Arya with medicine and care, she doubts the girl will collapse as she did in the original story.
Mir reviews a plan, realizing she must manipulate events to ensure Arya's meeting with the Count happens.
She reprimands herself for being selfish, vowing to prioritize Arya's happiness over her own desires.
Mir decides she will disappear once Arya is safe with good parents, leaving her sister to live a happy life.
She considers herself an obstacle and resolves to stay away from Arya's future as a countess.
A vision of the pink-haired Arya looking towards the light fills Mir's mind.
Mir decides that her time of rest is over. She prepares to return to her life as the mercenary Mir, leaving the temporary peace behind.
Looking over the town, Mir recalls her past days working alongside colleagues.
Narrative text over purple blossoms explains she wasn't always a lone mercenary. Faded memories of a team on a balcony haunt the black-haired woman.
She leaps from the rooftop, dismissing those memories as remnants of a dead past.
Mir stands before a crowded notice board where people debate if she is the real mercenary.
She studies a request involving violent beasts, noting the difficulty of a winter mission.
Mir finds the compensation for such a dangerous task to be insultingly low.
A golden shield crest marks the request as one intended only for the most elite mercenaries.
Mir tops the paper, concluding that the person who wrote the request is clueless about mercenary work.
A decorative frame highlights that only one person is desperate enough to help.
Mir holds up the golden crest, deciding to accept the mission despite the poor pay.
As a hand delivers a golden crest, a swift wah signals the urgency of a message requiring an immediate departure.
The blonde guild worker explains that the mission's deadline is today and that the other participating knights have already left, mentioning the Duke of Crissus's devotion to his territory.
Looking at a flag depicting a sword and beast, Mir recalls that previous support teams were wiped out, prompting the Duke to send his own knights. She reflects that the Crissus family is actually her parents' family.
The guild worker admits he is waiting for mercenary assistance for the beast subjugation in Rouge Village, but expresses surprise that anyone would accept such a poorly paying quest.
Looking at a grand gate, Mir overhears a strange command and wonders if the mission hides some special significance. The sun shines brightly over a lush, flower-adorned mansion estate.
A wide view reveals the immense and sparkling scale of the Duke's palace-like mansion.
A sense of overwhelming grandeur fills the air as the magnificent estate comes into full view.
Mir feels a wave of panic, worrying that her appearance makes her look like a beggar who might be kicked out of such a prestigious place.
Mir is stunned by the mansion's visual scale, which far exceeds her expectations for the Crissus family home, when a voice suddenly asks if she is the mercenary Mir. Startled by the sudden approach, the black-haired mercenary confirms her identity to the waiting guards.
A soft gasp sounds as a guard reacts with wide, sparkling eyes upon meeting the famous mercenary.
The guard excitedly welcomes her, declaring it an honor to meet her before offering to guide her inside. Amidst a chorus of happy laughter, the guard expresses deep joy that she has come to help with the beasts of Rouge Village. As they walk, the guard admits how much he wanted to meet her, while Mir finds the friendliness of the knights toward a mercenary to be highly unusual.
Mir reflects on the typical hostility knights feel toward mercenaries, having prepared herself for a cold reception or worse.
The group reaches a set of grand doors as the guard prepares to share one last detail.
With a bright, beaming smile, the guard leads her into the reception room.
Mir is presented with a teacup so exquisite and glowing that she finds herself questioning how she ended up in such a situation. Feeling completely out of place, Mir stares at the expensive-looking tea set with a sense of dread. She remains frozen on the couch, terrified that she might accidentally scratch the precious items.
While Mir sits nervously, a gray-haired butler approaches with a teapot.
The elderly butler offers a warm, polite smile.
Mir asks why the Duke wants to see her, but the butler simply states he is following orders and cannot say for sure.
The butler suggests the Duke is simply curious about a fellow swordmaster, causing Mir to worry about the infamous Devil Duke taking an interest in her.
The butler suddenly asks if she has any ancestors from the Crisis family, catching Mir off guard.
Mir quickly denies any connection, claiming to be a mere commoner while secretly wondering how he could have suspected anything.
The butler finds her answers strange, his gaze lingering with a look of mild skepticism.
Mir wonders if it was something about her eyes that prompted his odd question.
A sharp click sounds as a door opens and a man announces that he has kept her waiting.
Mir senses a powerful energy as a dark-haired man in a formal red uniform appears, whom she identifies as Caesar Crisis.
Duke Caesar Crisis stands tall in his decorated military attire, his presence commanding and stern.
Mir bows low and introduces herself as a mercenary, while the butler offers his own formal respects.
A firm, rhythmic tap echoes as the Duke walks toward her, telling her to stand and take a seat.
A heavy silence fills the room as the two sit opposite each other in the grand reception hall.
The Duke stares intently at Mir, his expression unreadable and serious.
Mir's mind and feelings are in turmoil as she feels incredibly uncomfortable and wishes she could simply go home.
Breaking the tension, the Duke abruptly compliments her eyes, calling them pretty.
A shocked, "Huh?" escapes Mir as she reels from the unexpected and personal remark.
Mir offers a hesitant thanks, wondering if the compliment was actually sarcasm, as she has always been told her eyes look strange.
The Duke tells her to relax, claiming he didn't call her for anything overly important, though Mir remains wary of his sudden friendliness.
While sipping her tea, Mir wonders if the terrifying rumors about the devilish Duke were exaggerated as she considers how to handle him.
The Duke asks why she chose to accept such a dangerous mission, his eyes fixed on her.
He notes that the mission is difficult and the pay is low, making Mir realize he was the one who set the poor price despite knowing the risks. Mir clutches her teacup tightly, wondering if the Duke already knows who she really is.
The Duke clarifies that his interest is not a test, finding it fascinating that his father would take an interest in mercenaries.
Mir stops in her tracks, startled by the Duke's words and the gravity of the situation.
She reflects on her current life, her thoughts turning toward the strange circumstances that brought her to this mansion.
The Duke asks a pointed question, his gaze remaining fixed on the mercenary across from him.
Mir remains silent, her hands resting tensely on her knees as she considers her next move.
Mir reflects on the grueling effort she invested to grow stronger.
Exhaustion weighs heavily on the black-haired woman after her training. Sweat beads on her face as she catches her breath.
She recalls villages that relied on mercenaries for winter survival.
Some villages perished without help, leaving behind grieving survivors.
Mir laments being among those abandoned by a peaceful world.
She explains her refusal to ignore suffering despite her own power. A sense of duty drives her to use her strength. Mir catches herself rambling as the Duke signals for silence.
Tense silence follows as she worries the Duke misinterpreted her.
Mir introduces herself as Taylor, visibly shrinking with embarrassment. The butler's arrival to announce the departure feels like divine intervention.
Mir nervously asks for permission to leave and stand up.
Caesar adjusts a ring while contemplating the woman before him.
The Duke offers a red gemmed ring as a reward. Mir is stunned by the high value of the gift.
She declines the extra payment, adhering to the original contract.
Thoughts of her sister's future and her own conscience collide.
Caesar finds her odd, but she insists on doing what's right.
Caesar acknowledges her unique perspective while Mir reassesses his character.
The Duke dismisses her as she offers a formal farewell. Caesar watches her leave with a calculating gaze. Ancient myths describe the Black Dragon's descent into red-eyed madness. This curse explains the Crisis family's signature red eyes. The Empire recognizes red eyes as proof of Crisis blood.
Caesar recalls noticing Mir's distinctly red eyes during their meeting.
A silhouette of a woman evokes memories of a past encounter.
He toyed with her using the ring to test her. Caesar contrasts her weary face with the purity of her eyes.
Familiar sword mastery and eye color stir mixed feelings in him. He finds her foolishly bright nature surprisingly charming.
The Duke schemes to bring the fascinating mercenary into his service. The sun shines over the expansive Duke's manor.
A knight outlines the strategy for the upcoming beastchat.
The map highlights a path between the capital and Rouge.
The plan involves sorcerers using hallucinations to weaken the beasts.
The mention of psychic sorcerers causes Mir to pause.
Realization strikes her with a sense of dread.
A dark-cloaked man channels glowing magical energy.
The group prepares to exploit the beast's mental vulnerabilities.
Mir pieces together the identity of the incoming sorcerer.
She recalls a character from the novel who weaponized magic. This villain was known for his obsessive nature toward Arya.
An officer announces the imminent arrival of their magical support.
A massive gust of wind signals the sorcerer's arrival.
The mercenaries are told to stand down as a friend arrives.
Kalhaimad Caesar Chrysis, the Duke's half-brother, makes a grand entrance. Kalhaimid immediately insults Mir's small stature and thin frame.
Mir adopts a cheerful facade as Kashmir, hiding her true annoyance.
The sorcerer turns away with a huff, acting cold and dismissive.
Caesar Chrysis asks if the group is ready to set off, while the black-haired mercenary laments being ignored and dreads traveling with him.
A request to join the journey is met with a warning about the mission's inherent danger.
A sharp exclamation sounds as Caesar asks if the knight believes a noble duke like him would only be a burden.
The knight bows deeply and apologizes, explaining he was merely surprised and already knows of the Duke's excellence.
Caesar states that the damage to Luzu village is considerable, so he intends to inspect it personally. Taylor reflects on how unusual it is for a noble to personally inspect territory damage. A quick tap sounds as Caesar pushes Taylor back, telling her to stay away because she is in his way.
Pinkish red eyes gleam as Taylor looks up from beneath her dark hood.
Taylor feels a sudden surge of energy as a knight mentions that His Grace has liked Mir for a long time.
The knight explains that blessing magic is rarely used, but Caesar applied it to her because he seems to like her.
Mir questions if it was a blessing or a curse, feeling miserable while doubting humanity.
The Duke asks if they shall set off immediately, and a voice confirms they are ready. The campfire logs crackle rhythmically. The subjugation team camps under the stars.
A hand offers a bowl to Taylor, commanding her to beat.
Taylor thanks the Duke as he hands her a steaming bowl of food. A heavy thud sounds as the Duke sits right beside Taylor, making her wonder why he is there.
Caesar asks if she thinks he only knows how to cut a steak.
Mir admits she thought nobles would avoid commoner food, eating happily as she reflects on her assumptions.
Caesar explains he is not the type to eat fancy meals alone while everyone camps, causing Mir to note how different he is from the original novel.
Mir notes his attitude toward people is different from the original story, as Caesar asks if she is a scholar rather than a mercenary.
The red-eyed Duke eats in silence.
Mir asks if he is bored, but Caesar retorts by asking if he looks like a 5-year-old child who needs playing with. Taylor admits that she is quite bored. Mir offers to play with the Duke and asks if he has any questions for her.
Caesar asks why she became a mercenary, and she simply replies it was because of money.
A silent pause hangs between them.
The Duke explains he wanted to protect what he loved, and this job was the only way to make money. Taylor reflects on the helplessness and shame of watching a loved one die. Caesar asks why she became a hero, and Taylor explains she never intended to become one. Caesar asks why she would exert effort for something that pays no money, and Taylor realizes she has heard this question before. Narration explains the pain of losing something precious and the desire to prevent others from losing their loved ones. Caesar stares thoughtfully into the darkness.
A close-up of a red eye.
Taylor senses a terrible ignorance reflected in his voice as they sit together. Text describes the heavy, hopeless feeling of losing someone you love. White lilies bloom as text explains that despair keeps people alive and holding each other tightly.
Two figures embrace in a village. A sudden exclamation sounds as Caesar is startled, and Taylor apologizes for scaring him. Mir realizes she has said too many useless words and worries that her explanation was too weird.
A soft top sounds as Caesar pots her and says her words are great. Caesar thinks about wanting to meet someone who would treat him so preciously.
Caesar looks back at the mercenary.
A loud shout announces the arrival of the subjugation team.
Villagers look up with weary eyes.
Villagers thank them profusely, admitting they thought they were all going to die. Mir surveys the damaged village of Kashmir. Knights inspect the destroyed village buildings.
Mir introduces herself as the mercenary Kashmir, prompting a villager to ask if she means the mercenary king.
Taylor reveals a golden crest, confirming she is the Golden Shield, mercenary Kashmir.
The elderly villager weeps while expressing his profound relief that the legendary mercenary has finally arrived to save them.
Mir offers a reassuring smile from beneath her dark hood as she promises the grieving man that he no longer needs to worry.
A firm vow is made that no further injuries will befall the people of this village under her watch.
Narrative text recounts how the village previously managed to endure the harsh winter despite frequent attacks from smaller beasts.
Villagers brandishing torches look out over their fields while contemplating how uncharacteristically aggressive the monsters have become this season. A terrifying beast lunges at a fleeing villager with a level of bloodlust that far exceeds any previous encounter. Caesar and the Knight Commander listen intently as the villagers describe the sheer insanity that has overtaken the local wildlife.
Overcome with emotion, the old man struggles through his tears to recount the tragic events that began just 1 week ago. He describes the horrific moment when the undead creature known called Devera invaded their home and devastated the village's youth.
Mir's eyes widen in shock as she realizes the true nature of the monstrous threat they are facing.
Forbidden knowledge explains how black magic can reanimate the carcasses of animals to create mindless, undead servants.
The creature is described as a rare but exceptionally violent beast that poses a significant threat to any living being.
Shadows loom as the narrative emphasizes the unprecedented violence unleashed by these corrupted beasts.
Armed villagers gather while pondering the strange emergence of a creature that has never before been seen within the Empire's borders.
Mir gazes toward the dark horizon. The Knight Commander searches for the missing Duke while noting that Caesar appeared to be deeply affected by the village's suffering.
The sun sets over the village. Caesar enters the dimly lit room where an injured child rests while his presence brings a heavy air of concern. The Duke looks down at the bandaged boy and laments his ignorance regarding the true extent of the suffering caused by the beasts. Caesar reflects on the harsh reality of human life being destroyed by the very creatures he was sworn to manage. Narration notes how obvious it was that someone raised in the capital's light would be blind to the Empire's darker shadows. Mir approaches the Duke and gently reassures him that he shouldn't blame himself for his lack of experience.
Caesar remains silent as he absorbs the mercenary's words, while his red eyes remain fixed on the floor.
She continues to comfort him by insisting that no one expects him to be perfect or blames him for the situation. The Duke gazes out the window and wishes he had acted sooner, while Mir warns him that dwelling on regrets is a slow poison.
Caesar leans over the sleeping boy and offers a final lesson about how ignorance is excusable, but neglecting duty is not.
A faint, gentle smile touches Mir's lips as she watches the Duke interact with the young villager. The Duke remains lost in awe. Caesar questions if they can truly succeed, while the black-haired woman confidently asserts that her plan will work. A soft rustle sounds as she places a comforting hand over the Duke's gloved hand. Caesar is visibly startled by a sudden, quick tap sounding on his shoulder from the mercenary. Mir reflects on how the Duke attempts to carry the weight of an adult despite still having a youthful heart. Snow falls silently over the quiet camp as a single figure keeps watch through the cold night. Caesar offers a warm drink and asks if Mir is truly all right staying awake for the entire night watch. She explains that a swordmaster's stamina allows her to manage without sleep and thanks the Duke for his concern. Thoughts turn toward the upcoming battle as they both acknowledge that this subjugation begins at dawn. Mir is stunned to hear such a vulnerable admission of fear from a man of the Duke's high pride. Caesar admits his honest fear to the mercenary while looking up at the snowy night sky. Mir offers a small smile and confesses that she also feels afraid despite her experience.
Tragedy stains the white winter snow.
A silent cry echoes through time. A final embrace in the cold. Snowy narrative text reveals that the only thing she fears more than death is failing to protect those she cares for. Mir waits alone in the snow. Caesar tells her that fear is natural and offers her the chance to withdraw if the mission becomes too much. She laughs off the suggestion while boasting about her strength and telling the Duke to get some rest instead. A look of confusion crosses her face as she asks the Duke to repeat his unexpected comment.
Mir thanks him for his support while Caesar continues to worry about her well-being.
Caesar playfully declares that he isn't afraid because she will protect him, while Mir wonders when she ever made such a promise. A sharp exclamation sounds as Caesar charges forward with a fierce battle cry while his red eyes glow with determination. Taylor commands the beast to stop as a monstrous creature lunges through a purple haze. A character in dark boots plants their sword with a sudden, firm clock sounding. Taylor slashes through a massive boar monster, sending blood spraying into the air with a fatal strike. The mercenary continues her assault, cutting down multiple beasts with a powerful and decisive swing. Taylor leaps into the air and delivers a fatal blow to a bat-like creature amidst the snowy forest. A knight rushes to the Duke's side and asks if his grace is unharmed after the skirmish. Caesar calmly motions with his hand and confirms he is perfectly fine as the battle ends. Taylor praises the Duke's magic for their quick victory, making Caesar blush as he tells her not to flatter him. Caesar notes that the situation is sorted and suggests everyone return to rest since it is late. The Duke stubbornly refuses to rest unless Taylor also agrees to take a break from her guard duty. Taylor's expression shifts to shock as she suddenly senses a new and overwhelming presence. Caesar notices her sudden change in behavior and calls out to her in confusion as she looks toward the woods. Taylor looks toward the dark tree line and warns that something massive is approaching their position. Caesar grabs the mercenary's shoulders and asks if she is all right while checking for injuries. The Duke reflects on how he hasn't known her long, yet he feels a desperate need to protect her. Caesar stares intensely into Taylor's eyes and commands her to survive the coming conflict at any cost. A sudden, firm grab sounds as Taylor pushes the Duke back to safety while his cloak flutters. Taylor holds the Duke tightly while shouting a warning that a massive crowd of beasts is imminent. A frantic, rhythmic tap sounds as the camp descends into chaos while Caesar demands to know what is happening. Taylor urgently orders everyone to run and use teleportation to escape the horde of 40 incoming monsters. She turns to a mage and demands to know his maximum teleportation capacity as the beasts draw near. Caesar searches the horizon and asks for the exact location of the approaching horde. Taylor instructs the knights to put their ears to the ground to confirm the threat of the approaching beasts. A knight trembles as a heavy, rhythmic thump sounds, and he wonders why the beasts are moving outside their habitat. The knights stand together in the snow, paralyzed by the realization of the massive threat facing them. Narrative text clarifies that there are 14 people present, but at least 2 will be left behind. Taylor turns to the Duke and asks if he can utilize his teleportation magic to save the group. Caesar considers his limits and starts to answer before hesitating as a sudden, sharp tap sounds. Taylor realizes with horror that even with magic, someone is destined to be left behind to face the horde. The Duke looks on with a grim, determined expression while his red eyes glow. The surrounding knights and Taylor are struck by a sudden wave of shock as a plan is proposed. A knight shouts in disbelief, telling Caesar his plan to stay behind is absolutely insane. Taylor clenches her fist in frustration while vowing that there will be no more sacrifices on her watch. She recalls a memory of a precious gift and her deep worry for her companion. A sudden, quick tap sounds as Taylor remembers the powerful artifact Elle gave her a long time ago. Taylor frantically searches her gear and realizes she has the perfect tool for the situation in her bag. She holds up a glowing blue artifact and mentally thanks Elle for her foresight and protection. With a sudden fluid motion, Taylor activates the artifact and begins to teleport Caesar away. Caesar is stunned as a dark magical energy and pulls him into a swirling portal. Taylor orders the knights to take the protesting Duke with them as he demands to be released immediately. She gives strict instructions to activate the main magic circle in exactly 5 minutes for their escape. A knight asks where she is going as Taylor explains she will buy time and seek help from the village. The Duke continues to struggle against the knight's hold as he is forced away from the front line. A massive, deafening boom sounds as Taylor realizes the monsters have finally arrived at the camp. Caesar is whisked away by the magic, shouting his refusal to leave her behind to fight alone. A sudden, bright flash sounds as the Duke disappears completely from the battlefield. Taylor charges into the dark forest alone, her footsteps making a quick, rhythmic tap sound. The trees shake as a heavy, ominous thump sounds from the depths of the winter woods. A colossal monster paw smashes into the ground with a thunderous boom sounding. Text reveals the horrific truth that the creature is a reanimated, rotting corpse that continues to move. Narrative text describes the Devera as a hound from hell while Mir prepares her sword to face the glowing-eyed beasts. Mir calculates that she faces at least 5 creatures as a massive, red-eyed head looms out of the darkness. The mercenary leaps into the air and considers a strategy to redirect the oncoming force of the attack. Mir spots a momentary opening as she lands and notes that there is still a chance to succeed. The black-haired mercenary retreats as the monstrous hounds snarl and close in on her position. A sudden, sharp snarl sounds as Mir's eyes widen in shock behind her mask while a beast lunges. Narration reveals that an evil and powerful energy is controlling the creatures as Mir wonders how to proceed. A thunderous, heavy boom sounds as one of the rotting beasts lunges forward with terrifying speed. Mir braces for a final stand while admitting she has no confidence in escaping such a large group. A vision of her sister Arya smiling in a flower garden serves as a final, precious motivation to survive. The mercenary is blinded by a sudden, brilliant flash sounding from the edge of the battlefield. A loud, echoing shout sounds as Caesar suddenly appears to join the fight. A massive, crackling blast sounds as the Duke's blue magic strikes the encroaching monsters. Caesar strides through the swirling magical energy with his cape fluttering behind him. Mir stares in total disbelief while questioning how the Duke managed to return to her side.
Caesar playfully scolds the mercenary for attempting to handle all the dangerous work by herself.
The black-haired man clenches his fist while his red eyes glow with intense magical power. A sudden, sharp tap sounds as the two argue about his presence while the Duke tells her to stop worrying. Mir notes with surprise that he had been maintaining his magic even during the teleportation. Caesar explains that the monsters are corpses under external control, making mind control impossible. The Duke instructs that fire magic is the only way to effectively destroy the reanimated beasts. Mir proposes a plan to strike the creatures first and then have him follow up with his magic. Caesar remains focused and confirms that he is capable of casting the necessary spell. Mir demands a promise that he will flee immediately if she is injured or falls in battle. The mercenary shouts a warning that she will knock him out and send him away if he becomes fussy. Mir stands before the towering monsters and waits for his commitment to their plan.
Narrative text reveals that her desire to protect him stems from more than just his status as an heir. Caesar looks down with a somber expression and gives Mir his solemn promise to survive. The title card for the series appears against a white background.
The mercenary begins a tense countdown as she grips her sword tightly.
A sudden, quick tap sounds as Mir launches herself forward on the count of 1.
Shards of energy fly as the mercenary delivers a powerful strike to the beasts midair.
Caesar prepares his mana and signals that it is time to unleash the magic.
A thunderous, roaring boom sounds as the Duke unleashes a massive wave of fire magic. Caesar shouts a frantic warning as a beast lunges toward Mir's blind spot. A sickening, wet crunch sounds as the mercenary is struck by the massive creature's claws.
Mir spins around and delivers a desperate vertical slash through the beast's dark hide.
Blood splatters the snow as Mir realizes that the battle will never end if they continue this way.
The mercenary calls out to Duke Karl and asks him to buy her a few moments of time.
Caesar agrees to the request but warns that he can only hold the line for 30 seconds. A glowing pink clock-like magic circle forms around Caesar's outstretched hand. Mir realizes there is only one way left to confront so many enemies at the same time.
The mercenary's eyes glow with a fierce purple intensity as she prepares her most devastating technique.
A sharp, high-pitched hum sounds as Mir initiates the Black Wind sword art.
Massive black blades of energy tear through the environment, shredding everything in their path. Debris and rocks fly through the air as the dark energy decimates the surrounding area. A thunderous final boom sounds as the power of the strike creates a massive vertical upheaval.
Mir declares that the fight is finished as the smoke begins to clear from the snowy field.
The corpses of the beasts lie scattered on the ground as the controlling energy finally vanishes.
Mir checks on Caesar, who confirms he is safe and that they have both survived the ordeal.
Caesar reflects on the surreal feeling of surviving such a brutal battle as Mir asks if he is still able to walk. The Duke sinks onto the snowy ground and admits that he cannot move any further on his own. The mercenary offers to handle their surroundings and tells him to rest, but he points out that her own left arm is badly injured. Mir flashes a confident smile while assuring him she can still carry him with her uninjured arm. Caesar looks exhausted but offers a soft smile as he agrees to rely on her strength.
Mir leans her head against his shoulder while suggesting that they should officially become friends.
A soft, rhythmic tap sounds as the mercenary ponders the idea of friendship while a final wish for Caesar's peaceful sleep appears.
Narrative text describes a life drained of meaning and trapped in a loop of monotonous, soulless days.
A young man sits alone amidst a room overflowing with books and papers. Panels question what could possibly capture the interest of someone so detached from life.
A sudden, sharp crack sounds as a foot stomps down on a bloody, outstretched hand.
Words of deep torment and inescapable anguish drift across a dark, blood-splattered void. Caesar stands over a tortured, silver-haired prisoner in a dungeon and coldly commands the violence to stop. The young nobleman turns back with a chillingly indifferent expression in his glowing red eyes. A formal announcement reveals that a family psychiatric disorder has only made his existence more repetitive and boring. Other knights whisper and point as Caesar sits in isolation with a book, clearly alienated from his peers. The dark-haired student stares off into the distance with a look of pure apathy. Caesar suddenly looms over two gossiping students and demands to know what they are watching while they cry out in terror.
The students panic and try to hide their actions as Caesar insists on an explanation for their behavior.
One of the trembling knights reveals they were watching a rare battle record of the famous mercenary Mir.
Caesar repeats the mercenary's name with a sudden, uncharacteristic spark of curiosity in his eyes.
The blonde knight enthusiastically explains that Mir is incredible and describes how difficult it was for his father to obtain such a precious record.
Caesar takes the artifact into his hands while the students continue their dramatic reactions in the background.
A sudden, sharp shing sounds as the record shows Mir fighting while a student begs for the artifact's safe return. A vibrant array of jewels and magical items are shown, as narration calls the encounter a major milestone. Two men sit across from each other in a grand, sunlit reception hall. A man sitting opposite Caesar notes that the Duke has become obsessed with learning more about mercenary Mir lately. Caesar considers the situation and asks if it is necessary to uncover the mercenary's secret identity. The projection shows Mir standing tall with her sword as blue magical energy swirls around her.
The Duke shakes his head while deciding that her true identity is better left a mystery for now.
Thought panels wonder about the girl's current well-being and her true nature after their brief meeting.
Text confirms that life returned to its dull routine after that day, as Mir walks away into a field of flowers.
A white-haired butler interrupts Caesar's work in the library to deliver an urgent letter from the Duke. Caesar asks for the contents of the message as the butler hints at a chance for a future reunion.
The Duke's eyes widen in shock as he processes the information contained within the letter. Caesar stands and orders an immediate mobilization, while the butler confirms that the knights are ready for his command.
A grim revelation appears stating that mercenary Mir is scheduled to participate in a village massacre later that week. Caesar hopes that he can arrive in time to reunite with her and change the course of events.
Internal text reveals his desperate impatience to see her again, mixed with a fear that his image of her might be shattered.
A heavy, crackling hum sounds as Caesar stands before a massive portal and vows to confront his doubts.
He steps decisively into the swirling blue light of the magical gate.
A sudden deafening boom sounds as Caesar's voice echoes through the chaos, declaring that Mir is not an enemy.
A close-up captures the shock in Mir's pink eyes as she looks out from behind her mask.
The mercenary stands frozen on the battlefield while shards of energy and debris fly through the air.
A system message identifies the current information as a direct message from Kashmir. Caesar sits in his bedroom and reads a short note that explains the sender has already departed.
The letter details that the materials harvested from the forest monsters were valuable enough to cover all expenses.
A final, casual instruction from Kashmir tells him to take a bath once he wakes up.
The Duke asks if that is all the information available, as a knight in blue armor confirms it.
Caesar looks down with a determined focus and gives the command to track down Kashmir immediately.
A hand clenches a paper timey.
Heavy footsteps crunch through the snow, while a voice declares that costs and methods are irrelevant.
A hooded figure battles the blizzard as a cold warning is issued regarding the search for the girl. An absolute command is given to uncover the true identity of Kashmir.
A door creaks open into the dark, snowy night.
Mir looks up sharply with glowing pink eyes. The mercenary draws her sword with a metallic shing and demands to know who has arrived. A lantern is lit with a click.
A brown-haired man holding a lantern identifies himself as Shushu while Mir keeps her blade steady.
Mir lowers her sword slightly and recognizes the man as Dedita.
A voice warns that the painkillers might cause fatigue and cautions against overdoing any activity.
Mir adjusts her black clothing over her bandaged shoulder and thanks the man for the medical aid.
A soft clack sounds as the man sets down a jar and asks the mercenary why she is there. The man smiles and explains that he came simply because he wanted to, requiring no special reason.
Surrounded by cute chick icons, Mir playfully asks if he is a sparrow and the hut is his nest.
The mercenary recalls his previous words about saving others and notes that such actions are human rather than heroic.
A quiet tap sounds as the brown-haired man sits and agrees with her assessment.
The man smiles warmly and teases that she appears to be attracted to him.
Mir thinks to herself that this man is actually quite a fine person.
Looking out at the snow, the mercenary notes his lack of caution and asks why he doesn't inquire about her identity.
The nobleman leans on his hand and suggests that he might answer her if she actually bothered to ask.
Mir calls him an aristocrat and points out that she is clearly just a commoner.
From a distance, he argues that no true commoner would ever sit so comfortably in the presence of a noble.
The mercenary admits that she would only be polite and respectful if she actually knew who he was.
Mir reaches out and places her hand on his forehead with a sudden, soft rustle.
The black-haired mercenary tells him that he won't be able to learn anything about her true identity. The man gazes at her and asks her to stay as his friend so he can see her true nature.
Surrounded by blooming flowers, he holds her hand to his cheek with a gentle touch.
Mir stands frozen in shock at the sudden, intimate gesture.
The mercenary smiles and asks him what kind of strange things he is saying.
The man blushes and blames his nonsense on a lack of sleep, but she tells him he should rest.
A howling wind sounds as Mir looks around the room and realizes they are trapped by the storm.
Mir surprises him by suggesting they should both go to sleep since the blizzard is impassable.
The mercenary begins to feel dizzy and suspects the medicine is making her head hazy.
The brown-haired man looks completely flustered and blushes at the sudden proposal. The man covers his face in embarrassment while Mir tells him to just lie down.
He asks in disbelief if they are really expected to sleep in the same bed.
Mir tells him to cover up with a blanket so he doesn't freeze or catch a cold.
The man asks if she is crazy, but she sleepily replies that it is only half crazy.
Mir rests her head on her hand and suggests that this is an age where such things should be exciting. The mercenary sleepily instructs him to turn off the lights and join her under the blanket.
Shushu's face glows bright red as he stammers in confusion.
The man turns away in frustration, declaring his dislike for her strange suggestions.
Mir remains indifferent to his annoyance and tells him to go to sleep now that the room is dark.
Silence falls over the room as a few minutes pass with the two sitting in the dark.
A sudden, loud shout asks why he is still not sleeping.
Mir grabs the man and forcefully pulls him down toward the bag.
The mercenary pleads for him to let her sleep and stop the resistance. A thunderous thump sounds as Mir successfully pulls him onto the bag.
Shushu reacts with a startled yelp as they end up tangled together on the pillows.
The brown-haired man lies awake in the dim light, reflecting on how quickly the time has passed. He gazes at the sleeping mercenary beside him and notes that she seems like a completely different person when she is not conscious. A sudden, heavy thump sounds as a black-clad arm drops over his chest, startling him.
He looks down in confusion, wondering what the mercenary is doing in her sleep.
With a soft, rhythmic rustle, the girl pulls him closer and buries her face against his side. Mir sleeps soundly while the man realizes she is truly exhausted and finds her behavior unexpectedly endearing.
He exhales a long, relieved breath as narrative text confirms that they spent the night together. Outside the small, lonely hut, a fierce blizzard rages while he reflects that he still felt as though he slept alone.
Stylized text appears next to a decorative sword in a transitional title card.
A memory of the night resurfaces, showing the mercenary's head resting on his shoulder as he considers her true nature.
The scene returns to the exterior of the house, which stands silent against the falling snow.
A pink-haired girl named Arya greets her sister with a bright smile while holding a kitchen knife and a carrot.
Arya's expression shifts to one of curious confusion as she pauses her cooking.
Mir stands before her with a slight sweat and a bump on her forehead, claiming she simply ran into something while walking.
The mercenary looks off to the side with a sheepish expression, clearly hiding the truth.
A sudden, loud thump echoes through her memory as she recalls the moment she forcefully pulled the man onto the bed.
Mir panics internally about her medicated state and the embarrassing note she left behind before fleeing the hut. She suddenly flinches in pain, realizing she has completely forgotten about her injured arm in the heat of her embarrassment.
The mercenary turns away sharply with a quick whoosh to hide her bandaged limb from her sister's sight.
Arya stares at her in silence, her large eyes filled with unspoken suspicion.
With a soft, heavy squeeze, the two sisters embrace as Mir invites her back inside.
Arya points toward the table and excitedly announces that the morning meal is finally ready.
The pink-haired girl hums thoughtfully while scanning the pages of a newspaper.
A sudden, messy spray sounds as Mir spits out her soup in shock at the news her sister is reading.
Mir coughs and sputters while Arya reveals that the daughter of a marquis is searching for a mysterious masked knight.
Arya peeks over the top of the paper and asks her sister to read the rest of the article.
The black-haired mercenary tries to maintain her composure and dismisses the news as nothing important.
A flashback reveals that the Lady of Decardo was nearly accosted by a drunkard in the capital a week ago.
The report details how a masked hero saved the lady, and the description matches the infamous mercenary Mir perfectly.
Mir coughs violently at the table while Arya notes that the location and date of the incident align with their own travels.
Arya smiles warmly and suggests it would be wonderful if her sister were actually that famous knight.
The pink-haired girl turns back to the paper while Mir watches her with a look of quiet disbelief.
Mir thinks to herself that her sister is so kind it borders on being foolish.
The mercenary lets out a nervous laugh while wondering if Arya actually knows the truth of her identity.
A thought panel questions if her sister has discovered her secret life.
A sharp crackling snap sounds as the fire in the hearth burns brightly.
The two sisters spend a quiet evening together in the warmth of the hut, engrossed in their reading. A newspaper clipping announces that King Alexandros I has ascended the throne and is focusing on national stability.
Mir rests her hand on the paper and considers the king as a potential candidate for a brother-in-law.
She looks at the paper with a smug grin, noting that only important figures are featured in such prominent reports.
A grand illustration shows the Atara kingdom nestled among towering snow-capped mountains. Narration explains the kingdom's vast wealth and its history of frequent wars due to its strategic northern location. Text describes the passage of centuries and the arrival of a ruthless young king who took the throne by force.
A formal portrait reveals King Alexandro Leonid Atara, a white-haired man with piercing green eyes. A decorative frame displays the full name of the new monarch.
The text details his violent rise to power through the purge of his own brothers, contrasted by his warmth toward his woman.
Mir smiles proudly to herself as she finishes reading the report. A faded memory shows a young boy happily calling out to his sister.
Mir stretches out in her chair and decides that it is time to begin her preparations for the coming war.
She reflects on the hardships of the original story and vows to prevent Arya from suffering through those ordeals again.
Clenching her fist tightly, she resolves to help even if she cannot end the conflict. The black-haired mercenary looks on with a gaze of absolute determination.
Arya dozes off in a chair, clearly exhausted from the day's events.
Moving quietly, Mir carefully carries her sister toward the bed. Sunflowers stand in the window as night settles over the quiet house.
Mir sits in the dim light, watching over her sleeping sister.
She leans in close, checking on the pink-haired girl's condition.
A soft scratching sounds as the mercenary writes a letter by lantern light.
A sudden noise startles her, making her wonder what is happening nearby.
Mir turns back sharply, her expression filled with sudden alarm.
She looks toward the source, hoping her suspicions are wrong.
Panic begins to set in as the black-haired girl realizes something is terribly wrong. Horror strikes as she sees her sister convulsing in the bed. A lantern falls with a heavy crash during the sudden chaos.
Arya coughs violently, a dark spray staining the blankets as she gasps.
Mir rushes to her side in a panic, desperate to help her suffering sister. She begs for the pink-haired girl to wake up and look at her.
Tears well in the mercenary's eyes as she witnesses the severity of the illness.
Hugging her sister, she realizes this situation deviates dangerously from the original story.
She remembers the medicinal water Arya consumed and knows she must act quickly.
The sick girl struggles for breath with a faint, rattling wheeze. Desperation takes hold as the mercenary vows to find any way to save her sister. Narrative text explains the power and rarity of the fairy forest spirit. A single dose of the essence is said to sustain someone for a decade. The difficulty of obtaining the essence forced Arya to rely on inferior medicinal water. Such measures are revealed to be only temporary fixes for a half-fairy.
Mir weighs her options, considering potential allies like Decardo or Count Freya.
She questions if the Sun Temple or other factions hold the necessary spirit essence. Realizing she lacks the funds and influence, she clenches her fist in frustration. Einhard is dismissed as a potential source of aid in her current state. The Sun Temple remains an enigma, their favors too mysterious to rely on now. She realizes there is no other choice left for her sister's survival.
Tears fall as she promises to find a place where her sister can be saved.
A sudden realization hits as she looks at a portrait of Duke Chrysis. He is identified as a man with the wealth and power required to help. Mir acknowledges that Caesar Chrysis is her biological father and her only hope. She understands that to the Duke, a daughter is merely a useful political tool. A sudden, biting chill fills the air as the storm worsens. Masked and ready, the mercenary carries her sister through the raging blizzard.
She plans to offer herself as a mercenary to secure a deal under her own name.
Mir pushes through the deep snow, protecting the bundled girl in her arms. Arya shivers weakly, her breath turning into mist in the freezing hay. The massive estate of the Duke looms through the falling snow. Mir resolves to become his loyal blade in exchange for the essence to save Arya. Snow continues to fall heavily over the dark, frozen forest. They arrive at the towering iron gates of Duke Chrysis's house. Guards challenge the intruder, demanding to know who has arrived at such an hour. The sentry recoils in shock as the infamous mercenary Mir steps into the light. Mir demands they step aside and insists on an immediate audience with the Duke. The two guards stand frozen, overwhelmed by the mercenary's intense presence. The guard explains it is too late and suggests she return tomorrow to see the Duke with a formal request. Mir insists on an immediate meeting, while the guard warns her to retreat before she is forced back. The masked mercenary draws some sword. Resigned to the conflict, the guard orders his men to stop the intruder. A sudden whoosh sounds as Mir lunges forward with incredible speed. A sharp clang echoes as her blade strikes. The guard screams a warning about a dangerous magical barrier protecting the door. Mir is engulfed in a swirling mass of dark energy. A powerful shockwave ripples through the air.
A crackling snap sounds as she breaks through.
She staggers forward through the snow. Her eyes glow with fierce determination. Surrounded by soldiers, Mir is ordered to put down her weapon and surrender immediately.
Darkness swirls as she prepares to fight.
Blades flash in the freezing night. Mir cuts through the group of carts. A quick tap sounds Austerlitz. Light flares as she reaches the doors. Seeing her sister's worsening condition, Mir realizes she cannot afford any further interruptions. A series of heavy thumps sound.
She pounds on the massive doors and demands they be opened at once.
Her voice breaks as she begs for someone to help them. The guard pleads with her to stop before she causes herself even more trouble. A mysterious voice commands everyone to step back, surprising the sentry. A heavy energy fills the grand corridor. Light floods out from the opening doors. An elegant, white-haired man stands calmly before the frantic mercenary and her sick sister. He watches her with a stoic expression. Mir looks up and repeats her demand to meet with the master of the house. A freezing wind sweeps through the estate. Snow blows across the polished floors.
Heavy footsteps approach from the shadows.
A calm voice requests her patience. Mir stands shadowed, pleading once more for an audience with the Duke. The butler introduces himself as Taylor and politely asks for the intruder's name. The black-haired mercenary reveals her identity while standing in the ornate foyer. Taylor notices her natural voice and realizes she must have used a modifier to hide her gender previously. Mir asks to see the Duke immediately, though Taylor questions the reason for her late arrival. The butler explains it is difficult because the Duke has already retired for the night.
A sudden, sharp rustle sounds as she moves.
She ignores his politeness and demands the meeting happen right now.
Taylor insists she provide a reason for her visit before he can offer any assistance.
Desperate, Mir reveals her sister is gravely ill and begs for his help. While she pleads, Taylor recalls her reputation and her recent heroic actions in Luzu Village.
He offers to call for standard medical help, but Mir frantically rejects the suggestion.
She explains that common physicians are useless for her sister's specific ailment.
A heavy thud sounds as she collapses. Arya coughs blood while Mir screams for Taylor to bring Duke Caesar Chrysis immediately, shocking the nearby maids.
Tears stream down her face as she questions the purpose of her life. Mir weeps over her sick sister, identifying Arya as her only family. Mir despairs over her sister's condition, wondering how she could ever go on alone.
Looking at the empty space, she refuses to let Arya go just yet.
A heavy rhythmic shudder rocks her body as she struggles to remain upright. Steeling her resolve, Mir determines that she cannot give up now. Clenching her fists, the mercenary demands to know exactly who the butler serves. The black-haired girl stares forward with a gaze of unwavering intensity. Standing atop the stairs, the white-haired butler asks for her to repeat herself. Taylor explains his lifelong service to Duke Chrysis and his bloodline while Mir prepares to reveal her name.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as Taylor reels from her shocking revelation.
A flicker of realization crosses the butler's face as he considers the possibility. Heavy, measured footsteps echo through the grand hall as the surrounding staff watches in silence. The maids react with visible shock as a hushed murmur ripples through the manor. A commanding voice calls out to the butler, breaking the tense silence. From the shadows of the upper floor, an order is issued to let the visitor speak.
Casting aside her mask, Kashmir Chrysis declares herself the daughter of the Duke. Her pink eyes burn with a fierce, defiant light.
A quick, metallic ring sounds as her hand tightens firmly around her sword hilt. Pointing her blade, she warns that anyone who dares to defy her will be executed. Duke Caesar Chrysis watches the scene unfold from the balcony with a stoic expression.
Kashmir flinches as she senses an overwhelming presence suddenly bearing down on her.
Standing amidst a floral backdrop, the black-haired Duke asks if she is truly his daughter. After a moment of silence, Caesar acknowledges that she possesses a striking resemblance to him. Kashmir hesitates as the powerful man begins to approach her. Looking into her eyes, he notes that she has finally decided to show up.
Memories of her time with Arya swirl around her, reinforcing her desperate mission.
Bowing her head, she begs for his help just this once. Kashmir offers everything she has, promising her magic and soul in exchange for his aid.
Kneeling in the Duke's private quarters, she waits for his judgment.
A grim silhouette shows the father and daughter reaching a silent, dark understanding. Caesar tilts her chin up, focusing his cold gaze on her.
He reflects on how she begged with such a firm attitude despite her desperate situation.
Kashmir remains motionless, her resolve as sharp as the blade at her side. The Duke questions why she is revealing her bloodline now after remaining silent during her time as a mercenary. She acknowledges her status as an illegitimate child, but insists on the truth of her blood. A heavy thud sounds as she drops to her knees once more.
Caesar looks down at her and asks for the meaning behind her sudden desperation.
Casting her sword aside, she pleads with him to save her sister's life.
The Duke glances toward the bundle on the floor, noting that her sister is the reason for her arrival. Placing a hand to his chin, he coldly states that the sick child is not his daughter. Kashmir looks up with tear-filled eyes and clarifies the child's identity to the Duke. A dark aura surrounds Caesar as he questions why he should save someone who shares no blood with him. Her hand trembles as she prepares to offer her final, heart-wrenching justification. She confesses that while she is the Duke's daughter, her love for the sick child is her true motivation. A warm memory shows a pink-haired baby laughing happily in her bed. The sisters are seen walking hand in hand through a field of flowers in a fading dream. Kneeling in tears, Kashmir admits her bloodline won't move him, and instead offers a formal deal. Intrigued, the Duke questions the nature of a deal proposed by his own daughter. A sharp, scraping slide sounds as she reaches for her sword again. She declares her true worth to him by revealing her status as a swordmaster. A massive, crackling flare of energy erupts from Kashmir as she releases her full power. A powerful, crackling flare of energy erupts as Kashmir Chrysis grips her sword hilt, declaring that she has wielded a blade for her entire life. Standing before the Duke, she pledges to become his most loyal weapon if he will only save her younger sister. The black-haired mercenary stares forward with a gaze of unwavering determination. Duke Caesar Chrysis watches her with a stoic and unreadable expression. A series of ragged coughs echo through the hall as Kashmir cries out for Arya in a panic. Clinging to her sister, she begs the Duke for his help once more. Kashmir shouts that she will be an invaluable tool to him if he accepts her offer.
She describes her brutal combat experience and offers to serve as a disposable shield on the battlefield if commanded.
A flicker of surprise crosses Caesar's face as he processes her desperate and extreme proposal. He questions why she would refer to herself as a mere tool or a meat shield.
Prostrating herself, Kashmir promises to be like a dog and die on his order if it means Arya will live.
Please, she whimpers, her tears falling as a series of soft, wet splashes sound. A heavy silence fills the dark room as the Duke begins to walk slowly toward her.
The household staff and the white-haired butler watch the tense scene unfold from the shadows. A series of measured thumps sound as Caesar approaches and commands the girl to stand up.
Kashmir gasps sharply as she senses his overwhelming presence right in front of her.
She looks up in shock as a pale hand reaches out toward her face.
Against a backdrop of blooming roses, the Duke declares that his daughter should never have to kneel to anyone.
He looks into her pink eyes with a surprisingly calm and steady gaze.
He reaches out to her, his hand moving with an unexpected gentleness.
Kashmir stares back at him in total disbelief, her breath hitching at his words.
A quiet rustle sounds as he moves to adjust his stance beside her.
The mood shifts as the narrative questions the true nature of the supposedly cruel Duke.
Caesar orders Taylor to prepare a room and call a physician before picking up the sick child himself. Kashmir tries to explain her sister's state, but the Duke reveals he knows Arya as a half-breed fairy. He explains that her unique aura is different from humans and will require a specific recovery period.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as he asks if her name is Kashmir, and she confirms it.
Placing a comforting hand on her head, he tells her not to worry any longer.
Standing amidst a sea of flowers, he promises to save her sister.
Kashmir wonders why he calls her by her full name and if he feels any regret for acknowledging her.
A soft sigh escapes her as she considers if he truly feels the despair others describe.
The scene transitions with a vibrant display of the story's title.
A dark flashback shows a bedridden man screaming that he never considered Caesar to be his son.
The dying man urges Caesar to kill him, demanding he not be viewed as a father.
A sharp metallic slide sounds as Caesar ends his father's life in the cold shadows. Standing over the body with a bloody sword, the name Kal Hayimid Caesar Chrysis is revealed.
He reflects on the cruel title given to him by people who called him a blood-crazy devil.
He admits to never knowing love, even after his wife gave birth to his daughter years ago. Returning to the present, he realizes that the daughter who appeared before him has given him a new reason to breathe.
He asks Kashmir if she thinks he is being insincere, causing her to flinch in surprise.
Caesar wonders what words are needed to make her understand his true intent. He asks if she would believe that he has actually been searching for her for a long time.
"What?" she whispers, her eyes wide with shock at his revelation.
He explains that while he didn't know her location, he was always aware of her existence.
Kashmir looks up at him with a mix of awe and confusion.
They stand together in the luminous foyer, the distance between father and daughter finally bridging. Surrounded by roses, the Duke reaffirms his commitment to her as his daughter.
Outside, the clouds begin to part over the moonlit estate. Inside a warm bedroom, a physician carefully examines the pink-haired Arya. A quick, soft pot sounds as the doctor confirms Arya's condition is stable and she will be fine. The physician advises that Arya should rest for a week or so to recover fully from her illness.
Looking at her sleeping sister, Kashmir whispers Arya's name as a heavy, rhythmic shudder rocks her body.
Caesar orders Taylor to have the room next to his cleaned and a bath prepared within 5 minutes, to which the butler obeys.
The Duke turns away in silence. A brown-haired maid bows deeply, introducing herself as Maria and stating she will be serving the young lady. Maria and Kashmir exchange greetings, with the girl suggesting the maid simply call her by her first name.
The Duke stands tall and silent.
Maria kneels and asks Kashmir to feel free to speak, reaffirming that she is the lady's dedicated servant as the Duke watches.
Kashmir reflects on the formality, thinking she is actually more comfortable being addressed by her full name.
Surrounded by a dark aura, Caesar firmly declares that Kashmir is not indebted to the manor because it already belongs to her.
Opening the door with a loud metallic creak, the Duke tells her his room is next door and to come to him if anything happens.
The black-haired man bids his daughter a quiet goodnight as she stands in the threshold. Opulent chambers await their new guest.
A series of soft, airy gasps sound as Kashmir marvels at the room while Maria calls out to her.
Maria explains that it is natural for a father to love his children, regardless of how complicated things may seem.
Kashmir listens in stunned silence as the maid smiles and asks if she would like to enter the room.
Staring at the massive tub, Kashmir is shocked by the enormous size of the luxurious bathroom. Kashmir asks if she can wash herself, but Maria explains that noble ladies naturally receive bathing services. Maria offers a warm, laughing smile and asks if the girl would like help undressing if she feels embarrassed. Kashmir frantically declines the help, promising to take off her own clothes as she clutches them tight.
She reflects on how she previously had no choice but to treat her own wounds when only her sister was there.
The narrative ponders the reaction if the maid were to see the horrific scars covering her back.
Panicking as her clothes loosen, Kashmir shouts that her body is disgusting and she doesn't need the bath.
A soft, quick tap sounds as Maria places a hand on the girl, firmly stating that her body is not disgusting.
Noticing the wounds, Maria cries as she realizes how much the girl must have suffered in her life. Maria offers comfort, noting how hard it must have been and reassuring the girl that it is okay now.
Kashmir tries to brush it off by claiming her status as a sword master makes it easy, but Maria firmly disagrees.
Maria weeps as she insists that there are no such things as casual wounds in this world.
Kashmir remains silent, reflecting on how she lived her life as if nothing had ever happened to her.
A sense of profound sadness lingers.
She considers how she lived fiercely every day before her metaphoric death, always carrying a hidden hurt. Against a backdrop of flowers, she admits to struggling with a happiness she feels is unsustainable.
A single tear falls with a soft, wet splash.
A beautiful flower arrangement sits peacefully.
Moonlight fills the silent palace halls. Tucking herself into the massive bed, Kashmir thinks about how wonderfully fluffy the covers feel.
She experiences a rare feeling of stability on the cloud-like duvet, wondering if the dreamlike comfort is real. Snow falls over the grand estate.
A gourmet breakfast spread is prepared.
More exquisite dishes fill the table.
A lavish feast is laid out.
Kashmir reads the Duke's message accompanying dinner, which says he ordered the best dishes for her and wants her health checked.
Looking at the winter scenery, she wonders what her father truly thinks of her existence.
A soft, quiet sigh escapes her as she walks through the snowy estate.
Admiring the frosted landscape, the black-haired girl comments on how beautiful the view is.
Her hand brushes a snow-covered branch with a quick, soft snap.
Kashmir smiles and thinks about how much more beautiful the garden will be when spring flowers bloom.
She quietly wonders if she will be able to stay in this peaceful place until the spring comes. Kashmir reflects on how the staff's kindness makes her feel compensated for her years of hard work.
She realizes peace is a test. Kashmir recalls telling someone named Adita to trust in the kindness of others.
She reflects that deep down, she also yearned to experience that same kindness and wonders if being naive would have made her life easier to accept.
A poignant realization that such soft expectations never truly suited her.
Walking alone through the snow, she thinks about the immense debt she owes him for saving her sister, Arya. A dark frame reflects her belief that she cannot afford to delude herself into thinking this peaceful life will last forever.
A silhouette of a girl with long black hair runs away from the massive estate, underscored by the feeling that this place isn't her home.
She decides that even if she is thrown out tomorrow, the outcome of her current mission is the only thing that matters. However, she thinks, her gaze turning toward the future.
She envisions her sister Arya happy and surrounded by gifts and blooming roses. Kashmir believes that Arya deserves to live a joyful life as Arya Freya, regardless of their past struggles.
A fractured visual symbolizes her conviction that a child should never have to suffer due to the failures of the adults in their lives.
A small mouse scampers through the darkness as she concludes it is perfectly fine for her own life to return to one worse than a rat's.
Thinking of the Duke, she assumes he will accept Arya because the girl is adorable and will be useful to him, perhaps even finding more happiness than she did with Count Freya.
Her footprints lead away into a dark, frozen forest as she walks under a canopy of skeletal branches.
Vibrant red blossoms defy the winter cold.
Pausing by the snowy branches, the black-haired girl marvels at the sight of flowers blooming in the middle of winter.
A series of soft thumps sound as she begins to climb a tree, her boots finding purchase on the bark.
She tells herself that it should be fine to indulge in this for a moment, since no one is around to see her.
Settling onto a high branch, she looks out over the frosted landscape.
Her memories drift back to her childhood, realizing that she used to love climbing trees when she was little.
She recalls a funny memory of hanging upside down from a branch by her legs.
A chibi-style Kashmir sits happily on the tree limb as cherry blossoms fall around her. With a determined look, she decides to give it another try.
A sudden, sharp slip sounds as her boot loses its grip on the branch.
She falls backward through the air with a startled gasp.
A soft laugh escapes her as her hair furls out.
Closing her eyes, she notes how long it has been since she felt this comfortable, feeling separated from the heaviness of the world.
She breathes in the sweet floral scent of the blossoms.
The cold winter air and snowflakes make her nose feel itchy.
While hanging upside down, she is unaware of a tall man in a red and white coat approaching her from behind.
Huh? The black-haired man whispers, his red eyes widening in total shock at the sight of her.
A loud thud and a cry of surprise echo as Kashmir falls from her perch. A black-gloved hand reaches out with lightning speed.
He catches her mid-fall, holding her close as petals swirl around them. Flustered and blushing, Kashmir stammers as she asks Caesar why he is there, especially since she heard he wouldn't return until nightfall.
Smiling gently, Caesar explains that after hearing the shocking news that a mercenary was actually his half-sibling, he worked all night long so he could return earlier.
The narrative notes that in the original version of this story, he truly hated Kashmir.
Kashmir wonders if he might still despise her despite his current gentleness.
A gloved hand reaches out toward her long black hair. She remains convinced that no matter what she does, he will ultimately still despise her. Caesar notes that she looks tired and asks what is wrong, while Kashmir claims it is just a little cold and suggests she needs to leave.
He stops her, looking into her eyes and asking point blank if she doesn't like him.
Kashmir stares back at him, her expression a mix of shock and confusion. He continues his thought, his gaze intensifying as he speaks to her.
Their feet stand together on the snowy ground, surrounded by fallen red petals.
She questions why his complexion worsened the moment he saw her, and why he would reject her help.
Caesar asks if she truly hates him that much, prompting a panicked Kashmir to shout that there is no way she could ever hate him.
He mentions he heard she was his half-sibling, but points out that she never even told him about it herself. He reminds her that during the beast subjugation, he didn't listen when she told him to go back and kept following her instead, even if he wasn't much help.
Looking visibly hurt, he asks if she left without saying anything because she didn't like him, or if she is simply dissatisfied with the fact that a cowardly duke is her older brother. Blush creeps across Kashmir's face as she frantically yells that she doesn't hate Caesar and considers being his sibling a great honor.
Caesar's fist tightens as he begins to grapple with his own thoughts. Caesar watches her in silent contemplation.
A smirk plays on Caesar's lips as he remarks that his sister is also a coward.
Their footsteps crunch through the snow while he explains that she has no reason to worry and has simply misunderstood the situation. Walking amidst the winter blossoms, the man asks what he should call her, to which she simply requests he use her name, Kashmir.
He asks about her nickname, and she mentions that her sister calls her Shushu, though she trails off. Kashmir stares back with wide-eyed shock.
A circle of flowers frames the declaration that she is now officially his younger sister.
Kashmir looks down solemnly, addressing him as Your Grace, before asking if he truly doesn't hate her.
Reflecting on her past as an illegitimate child and a mercenary without rights, she feels like a stranger who arrived unannounced.
She looks down with a faint, sad smile, commenting on how lucky she is that he treats her so well.
Standing together in the garden, Caesar tells her to listen carefully, asserting that she was actually the one who saved him. He explains that his current actions are only right because she saved him long before the beast subjugation occurred. Stunned, Kashmir questions if she really could have saved someone like him.
Caesar stands with a firm resolve. He encourages her to take pride in being Princess Chrysis and his sister, reminding her that she has the right to do anything she wishes.
Caesar's gloved hand reaches for hers as he admits she might not understand yet. Kneeling on the snow and pressing her hand to his forehead, he confesses that she dragged him out of his boring life and saved him. A gloved hand rests in peace.
Looking up with a gentle gaze, he tells her to stop worrying and simply accept his favor. Petals swirl around the silent pair, a gaze filled with deep shock. Clutching the fabric in desperate thought,
he points out the layout of the palace, noting the bedrooms on the second floor and the servants' quarters on the right. He guides her toward the end of the left hallway where the Duke's office is located.
They recall a moment from earlier when the maid urged them to go quickly because the Duke had summoned them.
Kashmir pauses near the door, recognizing a voice coming from inside.
The absurdity of the moment lingers.
From inside the office, the pink-haired Arya tells the Duke that growing up in the alleys has made her resilient to any harm he could do. Kashmir panics, wondering if the Duke is tormenting Arya, but Caesar quickly silences her with a soft shh. Through the doorway, Arya notes that the Duke's eyes change whenever they talk about her sister, Shushu. With a series of confident thumps, Arya declares she is not afraid and is certain of her own opinion. Slapping her hand on the desk, she reminds him that while she needed the spirit to be saved, he was the one who provided it.
Arya questions why the Demon Duke saved her when they had no prior connection or contact.
She asks why he, as her sister's father, failed to help when things were difficult in the past.
Arya demands to know why he is only choosing to help them now.
She questions if he wants to exploit her sister's power as the mercenary king, or if he intends to reject a daughter from the alleys. The Duke firmly tells her to stop. He warns Arya that she shouldn't push her limits if she values her life.
Smiling brightly, Arya describes her sister, Shushu, as a weak-minded person at heart. She explains that if the Duke treats her sister well, Kashmir will eventually give him her whole heart. She warns that Kashmir will be devastated if his interest fades and he turns his back on her.
Arya expresses gratitude for her life, but admits she feels compelled to speak up for her sister's sake. She emphasizes that her sister's well-being is far more important than her own life.
She cautions him against doing favors recklessly if he isn't prepared to take responsibility for Kashmir until the end.
She repeats the warning that he should not exceed his limits.
Shrouded in a dark, threatening aura, Arya vows to kill him at any cost if he dares to hurt her sister.
Overhearing the threat, Caesar thinks that her attitude is something to be proud of and that he'd like to learn it.
Arya is startled as her name is called out. Kashmir opens the door and calls out to her sister with a hopeful expression. Arya rushes forward to hug her sister, asking if she is okay, while Kashmir reassures her that she feels no pain. Expressing her relief, Kashmir pauses as Arya looks up with a curious and questioning expression. Kashmir bows deeply to the Duke, offering her sincere apologies for Arya's past disrespect and asking for his forgiveness. A scraping sound echoes as the Duke pushes back his chair, stating that his mind is already made up. Looking intensely at the two girls, the Duke calls out both Arya and Kashmir by their new family names. Standing with a firm presence, the Duke declares that he will take full responsibility and that both of them will become his daughters.
The scene transitions to the title card for the story.
The Duke stands tall before them, formally asking if the two of them will accept becoming his daughters. A sudden, loud bang sounds as the doors are thrown open, causing Kashmir and Arya to react with shock as Caesar watches. Kashmir is overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events, feeling that the situation is the greatest disgrace of her life.
Arya clings to her sister, declaring that Shushu is her only true family and that she will endure anything for her sake.
Caesar remarks on Arius's impulsive nature while telling her to be brave, much to the shock of both girls.
Looking at the closed office doors, Kashmir reflects on the fact that she doesn't consider herself special. A tight fist clenches as she wonders if there is a place for someone whose only skill is wielding a sword. Kashmir blushes intensely as cherry blossoms swirl around her surprised and beautiful face. The Duke watches her with a calm gaze, silently noting that she is capable of making such a soft expression. A soft chuckle escapes as the Duke smiles and offers a gentle agreement. A series of soft potting sounds follow as the Duke places his hand on Kashmir's black hair. Caesar acknowledges the Duke with a respectful greeting as he enters the hallway. A brilliant and joyful glow surrounds Arya as she beams with a wide, happy smile.
Caesar notes that Arya acts differently in front of Shushu compared to the side she showed him earlier.
A snapping sound accompanies Arya's playful threat to settle matters with a fight if he wishes.
A series of soft thumps sound as they walk, both admitting their mutual dislike for each other and the Duke.
Arya clarifies that she is only tolerating the situation for Kashmir's sake, noting that her sister is different.
She reflects on how Kashmir has always naturally attracted the interest and loyalty of those around her.
Caesar questions if Arya truly wants Kashmir to be happy and if she knows how to ensure it.
Arya admits she needs him for Kashmir's happiness, while Caesar confidently claims to be the one Kashmir loves. A quick spinning motion follows as Arya playfully dismisses Caesar's claim. They engage in a silent, intense rivalry over who holds the most importance in Kashmir's heart. Their faces are shown in a split visual of sharp, competitive glares.
Arya offers her hand, suggesting they both strive for their sister's happiness despite their personal feelings.
Caesar accepts the proposal, suggesting they work together as colleagues rather than siblings in the future.
A thought bubble confirms their shared goal of ensuring Shushu's happiness above all else. They seal their agreement with a firm and professional handshake. A sudden, crackling spark of energy erupts between them as their intense rivalry flares. Arya waves a cheerful goodbye, telling Caesar she will see him later at dinner. Caesar waves back, politely telling her to take a good rest for now. Walking away from each other, both privately complain about how unpleasant and uncomfortable the encounter was.
A heavy thumping sound accompanies the presentation of several ornate perfume bottles.
Another thump sounds as jewelry boxes are opened to reveal sparkling pearls and gems. A final thump marks the reveal of a table laden with mirrors, brushes, and various cosmetics. The maids crowd around a shocked Kashmir, excitedly suggesting different accessories and colors for her upcoming debut. A quick snap of fingers draws attention as the Duke explains they have only 1 week to prepare for the event. A grand ballroom scene highlights the critical importance of a successful debut for nobles reaching age 15. A formal bow marks the arrival of Countess Helena Levito, who will oversee their etiquette training. Standing in the center of the room, Helena announces she will provide a crash course in essential etiquette due to the time constraint. The narrative notes that the manners of the nobility were incredibly complex and involved many lessons. A sense of impending trouble arises as the text notes there were several things Helena did not expect. A sharp clicking sound echoes as a foot wearing a lace-patterned shoe steps forward onto the carpet.
Araya's grace is compared to a swan as the etiquette teacher marvels at how quickly the pink-haired girl mastered her first lesson.
The teacher's shock grows as she watches the black-haired Kashmir lead a maid in a dance, realizing the girl has a genius-level control over her own body.
Clutching her hands in awe, the teacher declares them both geniuses for completing a 6-day curriculum in only 2 hours.
The teacher is horrified as Kashmir vows to duel anyone who insults her sister, while Arya gleefully suggests hanging offenders upside down from a balcony.
Collapsed on the floor in despair, the teacher begs them to at least refrain from swearing in front of the Emperor and the Pope.
A series of soft, rhythmic chuckles follows as Caesar watches the chaotic scene unfold from the sidelines. Caesar finds the situation hilarious enough to cure depression, while Arya grows irritated by his amusement at their expense.
Caesar wonders if his sister's loveliness can be surpassed, while Arya notes her brother's haste in leaving his belongings behind. Arya clings to a weeping maid as Caesar privately reflects on his plan to disrupt the original story by subverting expectations.
Kashmir looks on with a determined gaze, signaling her readiness for the next step.
A gentle warmth radiates as Kashmir comforts the crying maid with a soft embrace.
The story transitions through a formal title card.
Kashmir is presented in a striking red military-style outfit, described as a true masterpiece.
Standing at the top of the stairs, a bashful Kashmir is urged by the maid to come down and show everyone her new look.
A sudden gasp escapes Arya as she stares up at her sister in absolute wonder.
Arya sits elegantly in a yellow floral gown, pausing her tea as she notices Kashmir's approach.
A feeling of immense pride swells within Arya as she admires how well her sister has turned out. The sisters enter the dining hall where the Duke and Caesar wait to greet the 2 ladies of the Chrysis family.
Caesar offers a warm compliment on Kashmir's outfit, while Arya trembles with suppressed excitement beside her.
Arya feels a sense of rightness in her new life, reminding Kashmir that she was right about wearing colors other than black. Bursting into a fit of dramatic tears, Arya scolds Kashmir for her stubborn attachment to cloaks and simple hairstyles.
Kashmir asks if her previous look was really that bad as she pulls Arya into a tight, affectionate hug.
Pressing her cheek against Arya's, Kashmir reassures her that she is always beautiful.
The Duke mentions he heard they were heading to a boutique and prepares to offer his support.
A shimmering gold card is presented, serving as an identification that allows the holder to purchase anything, even an entire island.
Handing over the card, the Duke tells them to buy every dress in the shop if they wish, leaving the sisters speechless.
A sense of disbelief lingers over the Duke's extreme displays of wealth and eccentricity.
A sharp metallic creak sounds as the carriage wheels begin to turn.
The carriage comes to a halt as a servant announces their arrival at the boutique.
A soft, rhythmic top follows as a boot steps down onto the pavement.
They enter Catherine's boutique, the most prestigious and difficult shop to book in the entire empire.
A hollow, echoing silence fills the empty shop as the maid explains that the Duke has rented the entire establishment for them.
Arya is momentarily dazed by the sheer power of the Duke's fortune.
A purple-haired woman steps forward to greet the ladies of the Chrysis family.
Bowing deeply, the woman introduces herself as Catherine Podolite, the boutique's renowned designer.
Arya and Kashmir introduce themselves formally using their new family name.
A bright, sudden flash of realization crosses Catherine's face as she looks at the sisters.
A sharp, sudden clap signals the start of the session as Catherine busily takes their measurements with a yellow tape.
Both sisters collapse onto a sofa, completely drained by the intensity of the fitting process. Catherine returns with massive stacks of catalogs, eager to show them the vast array of available styles.
Pointing at the designs, Catherine suggests frills for Arya's innocent image and satin for Kashmir's cool, firm presence.
Catherine excitedly promises to make them the trendsetters of the season with her newest tunic dresses.
Setting down her tea, Kashmir interrupts to voice 2 specific requirements for their new wardrobe.
Catherine listens with an expression of intense curiosity. Kashmir first requests that Arya's dress be designed to be worn comfortably without a corset.
For her second request, Kashmir insists that her own attire remain in a uniform style. Someone reflects on how unusual it would be for noble ladies to abandon corsets and embrace uniforms.
Kashmir wanders through her memories, questioning if she must trade her identity as a sword for that of a flower.
She acknowledges her new status as a daughter of the high-ranking Chrysis family.
She remains conflicted, balancing her past as a back-alley commoner and her title as the king of mercenaries.
In the quiet study, the Duke encourages Kashmir to act freely and embrace her various identities with confidence. With a calm and resolute expression, the Duke promises that his only wish is to see her desires fulfilled.
Kashmir looks up at him, her gaze sharpening as she prepares to state her non-negotiable terms. A bold statement appears on screen confirming that she has absolutely no intention of negotiating on this matter. Her inner conviction flares as she identifies herself strictly as a weapon meant for protection. Back at the boutique, Catherine is visibly stunned, arguing that no noble lady has ever dared to abandon corsets for uniforms.
Kashmir presents her notebook, explaining that these simple designs will capture everyone's attention and asking for the designer's expert opinion.
Catherine stares at the sketches with her mouth agape and eyes wide in total shock. Deep in thought, Catherine reflects on the immense difficulty of creating a unique design capable of leading a trend in high society. Kashmir watches Arya, determined to ensure her sister is never looked down upon the way she was in her original life.
As Catherine flips through the pages, she admits the designs are groundbreaking and suggests minor adjustments to make them popular with young ladies.
A sudden, intense realization flashes in the designer's eye as she looks back at the black-haired girl. A loud, sudden bang sounds as Catherine slams her hand on the table, declaring with excitement that the designs will be a massive trend.
In a flurry of movement, Catherine reaches out and grabs Kashmir's hands with desperate intensity.
The purple-haired designer pleads with Kashmir, begging for the opportunity to go into business together using these innovative ideas.
A final heavy bang sounds as Catherine reaffirms that the new fashion style is guaranteed to be a hit.
The steady rhythm of hooves echoes as the grand carriage pulls away from the boutique and travels through the city. Seated inside the carriage, a curious Arya asks her sister how she managed to come up with such incredible fashion ideas.
Kashmir tells a small lie about the designs being a lucky coincidence, privately acknowledging she cannot reveal they are from her past life.
Arya listens intently, accepting the explanation with a soft and trusting smile.
Kashmir returns the smile, asking if her sister has any other questions on her mind.
Narrative text notes that while Arya knows the future, the sudden transition to nobility must have been overwhelming for Kashmir.
Arya fidgets nervously with her fingers, admitting she actually has 3 specific questions to ask.
Turning her head to listen, Kashmir gently encourages her sister to proceed.
Arya looks down at her hands, the atmosphere growing heavy with unsaid thoughts.
Looking directly at Kashmir, Arya asks if she has known the truth for a very long time.
Kashmir reaches out and takes her sister's hands, admitting she only recently discovered the reality of their situation.
A portrait of Arya is shown, noting her heritage as the daughter of the Fairy King and her unique bloodline. A magnificent vision of Arya with glowing white wings appears, representing her energy, which is far beyond that of ordinary humans.
Kashmir looks on with a sad expression, realizing she only recognized the fairy energy because of her memories from a previous life.
Ornate text confirms that the power she sensed from her sister was indeed the energy of a fairy.
Kashmir remains quiet, knowing she can't reveal the true length of her knowledge without revealing her reincarnation.
Arya's second question is much sharper, asking if Kashmir is secretly the swordmaster and the mercenary king.
A sudden tight squeeze of her eyes follows as Kashmir realizes Arya has likely known the truth for a very long time.
A childhood memory shows the two together, noting that Arya was gifted enough to memorize everything she saw from a young age.
Kashmir asks how Arya could possibly know her secret identity, and Arya reminds her of the time she fell ill from a deadly poison 2 years ago.
A flashback reveals a younger Arya diligently tending to Kashmir while she was bedridden and unconscious. Arya looks at her sister with a soft, knowing gaze, stating she has known the truth ever since Kashmir first became a mercenary.
Kashmir bows her head in silent contemplation, moved by her sister's long-term loyalty and silence.
Arya pauses, preparing herself to deliver the final and most important question of the 3. Leaning forward in the dim light of the carriage, Arya softly asks her sister if she truly loves her. Kashmir's eyes widen and fill with tears, deeply affected by the vulnerability in her sister's voice. Pulling Arya into a fierce and affectionate embrace, Kashmir vows to love her sister forever. As the sun sets behind the clouds, the text declares that Arya is both the beginning and the end of Kashmir's world. The scene shifts to the sprawling, majestic architecture of the capital city under a bright sky.
A sharp, quick tap sounds as a hand places an envelope onto a polished table.
In the Duke's lavish office, he informs Kashmir that he will take full responsibility for the business deal with Catherine's boutique.
The Duke questions her experience, but Kashmir confidently mentions her history of trading magical materials while planning to use a reliable agent. Impressed by the potential of her plan, the Duke agrees to invest in the venture immediately.
Kashmir looks flustered while the Duke stares blankly, realizing that running a business is even more confusing than a sword duel.
The Duke asks if he and Caesar should wear the new outfits to the upcoming ball.
Kashmir secretly relishes the potential publicity for her designs before simply agreeing to the Duke's suggestion.
Encouraging her, the Duke promises to convince Caesar to participate in the plan as well.
He softens his expression, asking her to start calling him father from now on.
Kashmir is visibly stunned and speechless by the sudden and affectionate request.
Observing her shock, he asks if the idea of calling him father is unwelcome to her.
Panicking, she stammers through several attempts to accept his request and find the right words.
She continues to struggle, her face flushed with embarrassment as she tries to force the word out.
A gentle touch halts her as he pats her head, signaling that her effort is enough for now.
He reassures her that it is perfectly fine for her to take her transition into the family slowly.
Walking toward the door, he promises to always be there waiting for her to feel comfortable.
A soft, quick tap sounds as the door closes, leaving Kashmir in stunned silence.
A hand reaches out to pick up a sealed envelope from the table. Alone in the grand room, Kashmir sits and contemplates the surprising warmth of her new family.
She reflects on how her preconceptions about the Duke's intentions were entirely incorrect.
She watches the empty space he left, her gaze softening as her understanding of him shifts.
Narrative text notes that his true desire was much simpler than she had ever imagined.
She looks down, her eyes reflecting a mix of guilt and growing affection for her adoptive father.
She realizes that, above all else, he simply wanted to be a good father to her.
A stylized title card marks a shift in the story's focus toward the upcoming event. A flurry of quick rhythmic footsteps sounds as the staff rushes to finalize preparations.
Maids bustle around the dressing room, ensuring every detail of the sisters' attire is perfect.
Final adjustments are made to a garment as someone declares that everything is finally ready.
Kashmir is revealed in a bold red and white military uniform that exudes authority and grace.
Caesar smiles warmly at her, complimenting her striking and sensational new appearance.
Seated nearby, the Duke adds his praise, noting her style is both cool and appropriately eccentric.
Kashmir feels slightly overwhelmed by the intense energy and high expectations of her new family.
Arya insists that her sister looks incredible and must not change a single thing about her outfit.
Kashmir turns to look at her sister, her breath catching at the sight of the transformation.
A sparkling realization dawning in her eyes as she takes in Arya's completed look.
Arya is revealed in a magnificent white gown, looking like a vision of purity and elegance.
The hem of her intricate white dress is surrounded by a lush, beautiful arrangement of blooming flowers. Moved to tears by the beauty of her new life, Arya expresses her profound joy.
She grabs Kashmir's hands, declaring that her sister is the most fantastic person at the ball today.
Kashmir returns the warmth, telling Arya she will be the most beautiful protagonist of the evening.
Caesar observes the sisters with a gentle expression, announcing it is finally time for them to depart. A full moon hangs over the grand silhouette of the palace as the night's festivities begin. Inside the ballroom, the air is thick with the low, curious murmur of the gathered nobility. Guests gather in small groups, their constant whispering creating a sense of restless anticipation.
Hiding behind her fan, a noblewoman discusses what has become the biggest gossip in the empire.
The crowd speculates about the Duke's new daughters and their perceived lack of noble etiquette. The herald officially announces the arrival of the Duke and his family to the silent crowd. A sharp, heavy creak sounds as the massive doors to the ballroom are swung wide open.
Delicate blue roses frame the grand entrance, heightening the drama of the family's debut.
Caesar leads the way, escorting Arya into the room as the guests watch them in absolute awe. A sudden, heavy silence falls over the entire crowd as they witness the sisters' entrance. A noblewoman gasps in surprise, her eyes wide with shock at the unexpected and stunning sight.
A sharp tap sounds as a boot hits the floor, drawing every single eye in the room.
The Duke and Kashmir enter together, shocking the room with Kashmir's revolutionary uniform and black harness. Observing the stunned reaction of the nobility, Kashmir notes that everything is going exactly as planned.
The gathered nobility whisper in low tones as they observe the newcomer's arrival. The Duke finds the ballroom too noisy and encourages Kashmir to use her name or sword if needed. Kashmir internally scoffs at the idea of bringing a weapon into the imperial palace's banquet hall.
An official's attention is captured by a sudden bow as he delivers a summons from the emperor.
Caesar laughs while the Duke reacts with visible frustration to the official's untimely message.
The Duke apologizes to his daughters for being unable to finish the debut ball together.
Caesar promises to stay by the sisters' side just as curious nobles approach them for an introduction. A few noblemen express their honor at the meeting and eagerly ask for an official introduction.
The intense gazes of Kashmir and Caesar leave the approaching nobles looking quite unsettled.
Caesar officially introduces Kashmir as the elder sister and Arya as the younger sister to the crowd.
A male guest asks about the purchase location of the black accessories they are currently wearing. Kashmir realizes this is the perfect opportunity to promote her business products to the curious guests. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick tap sounding as she sets down her wine glass. Kashmir offers the boutique's location in exchange for a seat, which the guests eagerly accept.
Kashmir observes that the bothersome nobles have left as she speaks softly with Arya. Arya looks toward the rest of the high society crowd, realizing she must fulfill her social obligations.
Her focus is interrupted by a sudden, firm grab sounding as Arya takes her hand.
Arya vows to bring high society to its knees for Kashmir, leaving her sister stunned. Kashmir watches her sister leave, noting that she is now truly alone in the crowd.
Kashmir realizes she must act as a group of ladies greets her as Princess Chrysis. 3 noblewomen approach Kashmir and offer their congratulations on her successful debut in society. Kashmir reflects on her initial hope to meet others who possess genuine goodwill.
Kashmir politely requests an introduction from the 3 ladies standing before her.
The women introduce themselves as Lily Lilium, Lady Fleur, and Lady Melody from prominent families.
Narrative text notes they are testing her.
Kashmir maintains a polite fake smile.
The ladies comment on the unique and modest nature of Kashmir's military-style ball attire.
Kashmir internally fumes while maintaining her facade, struggling to suppress a string of curses. Kashmir explains her preference for uniforms due to her history with swords, shocking the group. The noblewomen mock Kashmir's commoner background and manual labor while offering condescending advice on hand care. Kashmir reflects on the strategy of allowing others to rumor her identity as a swordmaster.
Lily mocks the idea of a sword-wielding lady, assuming the Duke is ashamed of Kashmir's behavior.
Kashmir looks back at the ladies. Narrative text questions their dangerous behavior. A chilling atmosphere descends as Kashmir warns the 3 women that they are talking far too much.
Narrative text confirms her plan for murmurs.
A dark background frames the transition. The noblewomen look up in fear.
Kashmir lectures them on the history of the Chrysis family and their duty to protect the empire.
Kashmir declares that her family heritage precedes her title and that an insult to her is an insult to the Duke.
Kashmir critiques the ladies' outdated perspective on nobility and gender roles in the current era.
Lily reacts with a panicked, high-pitched scream at Kashmir's sudden and aggressive social dominance.
Warrior imagery represents a cultural shift. Red flower petals swirl as a new voice commandingly tells Lady Lilium to stop her behavior.
Kashmir is shocked by the voice. Llewellyn Ducardo introduces herself while remarking on the perceived decline in the quality of high society.
Llewellyn warns Lady Liam that her disrespect toward the Chrysis name has made the situation dangerously serious.
Llewellyn reaffirms the significant weight and history that the Chrysis family name commands. Llewellyn urges the women to apologize immediately before the Duke discovers their disrespectful behavior.
The scene ends with a sudden, nervous creak sounding as the 3 ladies tremble under Llewellyn's gaze.
A sudden bow sounds as Lady Fleur offers a humble apology to Lady Chrysis. Kashmir accepts the apology but begins to deliver a stern and necessary lesson. A chilling wind sounds as Kashmir warns that reckless speech leads directly to disaster. The grand ballroom stands resplendent, its golden ceilings shimmering under the light of massive chandeliers.
The sound of quick, scrambling footsteps fades as Kashmir thanks Lady Ducardo for her timely intervention.
A sharp snap sounds as Lady Ducardo opens her fan, claiming she only acted to prevent social decay. Kashmir offers her thanks while Caesar steps forward to formally introduce himself to the group.
Observing the red-haired woman's reaction, Kashmir notes she possesses a surprisingly endearing and defensive personality.
A sudden sense of recognition strikes Kashmir as she begins to question if they have met before.
Kashmir quickly dismisses the thought, convincing herself that such a meeting would have been impossible. A herald's voice booms through the hall, announcing the grand entrance of the imperial family.
The royal family enters in a majestic procession, led by the emperor and his golden-haired heirs.
A sweeping bow sounds as the gathered nobility pays respect to the royals passing through the hall.
Helios I is presented as a radiant figure, the very son of the Salatine Empire. The emperor casually addresses the crowd, encouraging everyone to simply relax and enjoy the banquet.
Kashmir finds the emperor's youthful appearance and strange demeanor highly unsettling despite his high status. Her attention sharpens as she focuses her gaze on a peculiar movement from the royal balcony.
From his elevated position, the emperor looks down directly at Kashmir with a knowing expression.
Kashmir feels a wave of intense pressure as she realizes the emperor is staring solely at her. A playful wink sounds as the emperor acknowledges her presence with an unexpected and casual gesture. Convinced the emperor is a total freak, Kashmir struggles to maintain her composure amid her confusion.
The emperor waves his hand cheerfully at her, sending Kashmir into a spiral of internal panic.
Kashmir spots the blonde crown prince and wonders why he is present at the debutante ball.
A sudden thud sounds as Kashmir retreats in shock, realizing her presence here is becoming dangerous.
She reflects on how the Crown Prince used magic to hide his true outward appearance from others. Narrative text explains that Crown Prince Diego was the son of the deceased empress and the rightful heir.
Empress Lena Quiros is revealed to have threatened Diego's life to pave the way for her own son.
Kashmir realizes that while the Emperor loved Diego, he was unable to offer him open protection.
Long-standing imperial tradition prevented the Emperor from engaging in battles over the throne, leaving Diego vulnerable.
Originally, Arya was the one destined to heal the unconscious Diego after a brutal assassination attempt. The fated connection between Arya and Diego is visually depicted as being shattered by recent changes.
Kashmir stands in the dark, realizing with a heavy heart that she is the culprit of this disruption.
A silent scream of realization sounds as she understands she accidentally saved him before Arya could. She desperately hopes that the mask she wore during their first meeting will prevent him from recognizing her. Kashmir repeats the hope to herself, trying to find comfort in the belief that he cannot know her. A sudden gasp sounds as Kashmir accidentally bumps into another guest while lost in her thoughts. Her eyes widen in pure shock as she recognizes the person she has just run into.
Liner stares at her in disbelief, his recognition of her making the situation even more complicated.
A sudden whoosh sounds as Kashmir turns and flees from the white-haired boy in a blind panic.
Liner is left standing alone in the ballroom, stunned and confused by her extremely abrupt departure.
Rhythmic, heavy footsteps sound as Kashmir ducks away, lamenting that she keeps encountering all the male leads.
Kashmir stops to catch her breath, wishing for a quiet moment away from the overwhelming social chaos.
A sudden, calm greeting sounds as a mysterious voice asks if she is tired of being alone. Kashmir turns toward the voice, finding a man dressed in long, elegant white robes standing before her. The hooded man looks at her with a knowing gaze, greeting her by a name from her past. A stylized title card appears, signaling the conclusion of the current events and a shift in focus. Standing in the quiet, blue-toned corridor, Kashmir reflects on the strange turns her debut night has taken. The mysterious voice echoes once more, drawing Kashmir's attention back to the stranger in the white robes. Kashmir looks up at the tall, hooded figure, her expression a mix of caution and growing curiosity.
Determination hardens her features as she prepares to confront the man who seems to know her true identity.
Elle promises to keep Kashmir's secrets to himself. He prepares to elaborate on his true intentions. A soft brush sounds as Elle touches her chin, suggesting that friends should have belief in one another. A sudden pull sounds as Kashmir grabs his wrist, arguing that being friends is a separate matter from trust. A firm grip sounds as she stares intensely at his gloved hand. Elle expresses his willingness to do anything to earn her complete trust.
Kashmir looks at him with skepticism, questioning if he is being sincere.
Standing on the grand balcony, Elle asks if she is willing to stake her life on an oath to the sun. A sudden gasp sounds as Elle agrees to her demands with a chillingly calm smile. A sudden grab sounds as Kashmir pulls him closer to confront him about his unexpected answer. A quick turn sounds as she reflects on the gravity of the legendary sun vow. She is shocked that he would agree so easily despite knowing the risks involved.
Narrative text describes the sun vow as an eternal oath witnessed and testified by the sun itself.
The consequences are absolute, as anyone who breaks the vow faces immediate death.
Al claims he has no worldly desires and wouldn't dare to wish for anything from her. He only requests that his condition remains a permanent secret before he agrees to her terms.
Kashmir orders him to begin the ritual and swear his oath to the sun immediately.
Under the night sky, Kashmir begins the sacred ritual in the name of the sun. She swears that the vow will last forever until the morning sun no longer rises.
A sudden glow sounds as a magical crest marks their pact on the back of their hands.
Kashmir reflects on her identity as the king of mercenaries and the shock it would cause if exposed. She prioritizes shielding the Duke from any scandalous rumors that could hinder him. Elle looks at her with a soft and oddly affectionate expression. A sudden squeeze sounds as he encourages her to name her own wish now that the vow is sealed.
Kashmir admits her love for her mercenary identity far exceeds her current role as a noble lady. Elle gently assures her that she doesn't have to force herself to appear in society if she doesn't wish to.
A soft touch sounds as he reaches out to her.
Elle looks into her eyes and asks for her love in return for his loyalty.
He cradles her face with a tender, longing gaze that leaves her speechless.
Kashmir identifies a familiar lily scent coming from Elle while looking out over the palace grounds.
She notices a deep, unshakable sadness buried within his eyes, despite his outward smile. Every time they lock gazes, she feels a strange and unsettling sense of recognition. She recalls a young, sorrowful boy whose eyes were strikingly similar to his. The resemblance is so perfect that it leaves her heart racing with confusion.
A sudden shout sounds as Arya interrupts to announce that the blessing ceremony is about to begin.
Al bids her a mysterious farewell and promises to see her later.
Kashmir is left alone on the balcony, haunted by the expression he showed her.
A sudden rush sounds as the sisters scramble to reach the ballroom before the start.
The announcer calls for Kashmir, the Duchess, and Arya to come forward for their blessing.
The two sisters kneel before the high priest in a formal display of respect.
A sudden gasp sounds as the priest is overwhelmed with delight upon meeting Lady Arya.
He offers an incredibly enthusiastic and warm welcome to the pair.
He praises Arya for her reputation as the lady who turned a tyrant into a sweet macaron.
The priest gives bizarre advice about looking at the sun whenever they face trouble in life.
He leans in to whisper a strange warning about a man turning into a madman upon seeing her.
He rants about a petty rival who is destined to lose everything soon. The priest snaps back to his official duties and apologizes for his unprofessional behavior.
Quan Julian formally introduces himself as the representative of the Sun Temple.
He offers a sincere blessing for the well-being of the two sisters. Raising his hand, the priest begins the solemn prayer to conclude the blessing ceremony.
High Priest Quan Julian prays for the sun to shine on the sisters' path, blessing them for as long as the sun rises.
The High Priest offers a parting wish that all the ladies in attendance enjoy a peaceful life.
The gathered nobility breaks into warm applause following the completion of the ritual.
A sudden rustle sounds as the High Priest formally presents Lady Kashmir Chrysis to the ballroom guests.
A playful wink sounds as the High Priest encourages Kashmir to seek his help whenever she might need it.
Arya turns to her sister with an enthusiastic invitation to share a dance together.
Suitors immediately swarm Lady Arya Chrysis, clamoring for a chance to dance with her.
Noting that Arya deserves all the love she is receiving, Kashmir quietly slips away from the crowd.
Standing alone, Kashmir considers if she should take the initiative and ask someone for a dance.
A sudden stop sounds as she notices two men approaching her solitary position.
Liner and Crown Prince Diego both reach out to her, offering a dance at the same time.
Kashmir is left in absolute shock by the unexpected and simultaneous proposals.
She realizes with mounting panic that both Sir Liner and Sir Diego are actually asking her to dance.
Kashmir reflects on the social necessity of dancing to avoid being reprimanded later.
The two high-ranking suitors wait expectantly for her to make a choice. Confusion overwhelms her as she reels from the weight of their combined attention.
Kashmir wonders why these two powerful men would both be inviting her of all people. Diego greets Liner as Marquis Einhart and asks about his knights, while Liner bows and reports they are doing well. She questions if they are after her family's prestige or if they have discovered her secret identity as a mercenary.
The surrounding crowd whispers excitedly that the three of them formed the most perfect romantic triangle.
Kashmir realizes that no matter who she chooses, a scandal will be impossible to avoid. The problem remains that she simply does not know which man to select.
A sudden rustle sounds as El appears, asking if it is not too late for him to join.
The hooded priest bows gracefully and asks for the lady's hand in a dance. Liner questions what the man means by his arrival, but El quickly hushes him into silence.
Kashmir is baffled that the crowd is not surprised by a masked priest suddenly appearing at the banquet.
She decides that turning down all three of them would lead to the most damaging gossip of all.
Kashmir accepts the hooded man's hand, thinking that dancing with El will make her the least hated by the crowd.
El expresses his sincere pleasure at being granted the dance with Lady Chrysis.
Diego notes that her family has kept her hidden and admits he is curious about her identity and dancing skills.
Kashmir apologizes for her lack of skill and promises to ask him later, which the prince says he looks forward to.
Liner bows his head and asks for his own chance to dance with her.
A dejected sigh sounds as the white-haired boy looks on with puppy-like sadness. A heavy silence sounds before Kashmir promises to ask him for a dance first next time, making Liner agree to wait.
Narrative text explains that choosing either ideal groom would have made her the target of every woman's jealousy. Kashmir concludes it is better to reject both, while El admits he did not expect her to accept his invitation.
A firm squeeze sounds as El takes her hand to lead her onto the dance floor.
El confidently confirms that her decision was the right one to make.
Kashmir asks why El has come to the ball, and he reveals that he is only there to see her.
A light laughter sounds as she asks how long he has known her identity, and he suggests it was before she knew herself.
A rigid posture sounds as El claims he merely guessed by the situation, even though he could not ask her directly. Kashmir recalls El knowing how Duke Caesar found her and a woman years ago, a fact most attributed to his own child.
Narrative text reveals that in this empire, red eyes are a trait unique only to the Chrysis bloodline.
A vision of her childhood surfaces, showing a woman leading her away long ago. Text notes that all Chrysis successors were born with incredible talent for the intelligent sword. El observes that she possesses very unique skills and guesses at her true nature. Narrative text explains that these specific details regarding her origins were never part of the original story. Kashmir reflects on the Duke and Taylor's accounts of the snowy day they first met her. Looking directly into El's masked eyes, Kashmir asks him how she was truly born.
El looks back at her and gently tells her not to worry about those secrets. El and Kashmir dance together as a joyous spin sounds.
Holding her close during the dance, El expresses his happiness that she is Lady Chrysis.
Kashmir gazes up at him with a look of stunned realization.
Their rhythmic movement continues as a firm step sounds.
Elle observes that she is no longer hiding her true self behind her former persona.
The two share a quiet moment on the dance floor, surrounded by blooming white lilies.
The surrounding guests celebrate the performance as a loud clap sounds.
Kashmir admits she is impressed by how much he knows about her, and Elle cryptically replies that he is more capable than she might imagine.
Elle changes the subject to warn her about the upcoming arrival of a delegation from the Erotic Kingdom.
Concerned, Kashmir asks if something is wrong with the delegation, and Elle warns her to be wary of them because of their new king.
He warns her that a dangerous madman might be traveling with the group, leaving her confused.
Elle emphasizes that she must ignore this person if they meet, as a steady grip sounds.
He reassures her that while diplomacy is difficult, Duke Caesar and he will both support her.
When she asks who the mysterious person is, Elle apologizes and says he cannot reveal the identity.
A frustrated Kashmir wonders how she can avoid a person she doesn't even know.
Elle cautions her that the man will pursue her the moment he sees her, so she must not show him any interest.
Kashmir agrees to follow his advice as a soft nod sounds.
Elle smiles warmly under his mask and thanks her for taking his words to heart.
Bowing formally, Elle thanks her for the dance, while she insists the pleasure was all hers. She freezes in shock as she realizes he just used her private nickname.
Standing amidst lilies, Elle declares that his feelings for Shushu will never change.
The ballroom crowd blurs as the scene shifts. Kashmir's attention is drawn to a small detail on her sleeve.
She discovers a single strand of blue hair and wonders if it belongs to the only person she knows with that color.
She frantically scans the crowded room as a quick turn sounds.
The ballroom atmosphere fades into a blur.
Under the full moon, Kashmir questions if Elle could actually be the high priest.
The quiet palace exterior reflects her growing suspicions.
Catherine is overcome with joy as she thinks about her lady.
A dark-haired man with red eyes smirks while speaking Catherine's name.
Catherine celebrates with her staff, announcing that everything sold out in 2 days thanks to the lady's influence.
She excitedly tells Kashmir that their clothes have become a noble trend and asks if the success was planned.
Relaxing with tea, Kashmir thanks Catherine and credits the success to using the right people for advertisement.
A charming illustration depicts the Chrysis siblings and the Duke as a model family. Arya is swamped with a mountain of party invitations following her successful debut.
Her quiet reflection is punctuated as a sharp clack sounds.
Kashmir realizes there is still one mystery regarding Elle that she hasn't solved. She dwells on the connection between the blue hair she found and Elle's mysterious behavior. Morning light shines over the Grand Palace.
High Priest Quan Julian smiles brightly and expresses his honor at being invited.
He asks Kashmir how she has been since her debut and notes how much time has passed. While Kashmir politely responds, Julian rambles about her new business being the talk of the temple. He continues to chatter about fashion bans and smugglers while Caesar looks on with pure irritation. Julian's gossip spirals into nonsensical questions about the Pope's morning attire. Caesar and Arya reach the limit of their patience with the priest's incessant babbling. Kashmir finally asks Julian to stop talking, and the priest apologizes for his over-enthusiasm. Narrative text explains that Kashmir invited Julian to formalize the sun vow after learning she was the Duke's daughter. She reflects on her dangerous past as a mercenary and her desire to protect her new family from her enemies. The household staff voluntarily agreed to the vow's secrecy, but Julian remains a curious variable. Kashmir notes Julian's oddly calm reaction to her secret and suspects he is hiding his own knowledge to test her. Servants gossip about the high priest's arrival, while a narrator explains the simplified sun vow requested by the former mercenary king, Kashmir. High Priest Julian proudly confirms his role in overseeing the sacred secrecy vow for the massive household. Duke Caesar offers a donation to the temple, but Julian insists that a simple cup of tea is payment enough.
Kashmir is taken aback when the priest makes a sudden and personal request to speak with her.
Arya and Caesar react with intense, overprotective hostility toward Julian's suggestion of a private meeting. A flustered Kashmir attempts to mediate the conflict and calm her furious family members. She offers Julian tea as a gesture of apology for her family's behavior despite her sister's protests. The scene shifts to a serene, sunlit conservatory as the two sit down for their discussion. Hot tea is prepared as the atmosphere in the garden becomes quiet and reflective. Kashmir admits she did not expect her family to react so strongly to his presence. Julian suggests that he understands the deeper reasons behind her invitation for tea. Sensing his insight, Kashmir prepares herself to ask the priest her questions directly.
She asks about the physical manifestation of the sun vow, specifically the appearance of the mandala mark.
Julian confirms that the mark's validity is an undisputed truth trusted by everyone in the Empire. Narrative text emphasizes that the divine mandala's sun mark is impossible for anyone to forge.
Kashmir reflects on the fact that she was questioning a fundamental and obvious theological truth.
Julian playfully feigns heartbreak, asking if she truly doubts his integrity as a man of the cloth.
Kashmir explains that her skepticism stems from a previous experience with a similar magical vow.
She asks for permission to inquire about one more secretive matter, and Julian agrees.
The priest's expression remains calm as Kashmir asks if he knows a mysterious man named L.
Julian cycles through a series of comedic, panicked reactions as he tries to process her question.
He suddenly chokes on his tea and struggles to maintain his composure.
Julian claims that L is a longtime senior colleague from the temple who has helped him immensely.
Kashmir asks for a description of L's character, and Julian claims he once saved the man's life.
Narrative text describes L as a highly emotional and gentle individual. Julian compares L to the sun god while silently begging for divine forgiveness for his blatant lies.
Kashmir recalls that the god Ra is actually known for having a violent and strict personality.
Julian quickly amends his description, insisting that L is simply as warm and gentle as the sun.
He reassures her that L is a good person while privately expressing his own internal distress. Julian dramatically laments his own ongoing struggles with a deep and persistent lovesickness.
Kashmir remains deadpan and unimpressed by the priest's sudden theatrical outburst.
The priest shifts the focus of the conversation and invites Kashmir to visit his temple.
Kashmir asks if there is a specific purpose or hidden reason behind this sudden invitation.
Julian makes up a bizarre story about a sick temple dog that misses her and needs her attention. Kashmir agrees to visit as soon as possible, much to Julian's immense and visible relief. He offers a formal blessing as he prepares to conclude their meeting and depart.
Julian stops at the door to deliver a final message he claims was his actual purpose for coming.
A mysterious and knowing smile plays on the priest's lips as he leans in. A quiet whisper sounds as Julian shares a shocking secret with the stunned lady. A sharp clack sounds as the door shuts, leaving Kashmir standing alone in total silence. She stands in the garden completely bewildered and frozen by the priest's final words.
The colorful sunset sky reflects her growing confusion regarding the nature of his apology.
The scene shifts to a training arena where onlookers gossip about the Duke and his daughter. Kashmir prepares for a training session, surprised by the idea of a competitive match.
Caesar explains that he wants to test her skills and warm up after their long time apart.
He warns her to keep their spar private so as not to be seen by the rest of the household. Caesar and Arya's bickering echoes in the background as the family bond is tested through humor. The Duke jokes about his children's attitudes while Kashmir asks him to be nice to her. A sudden, sharp clang sounds as their training swords meet with incredible force.
Narrative text declares that the two masters are perfectly matched in strength and skill.
Kashmir effortlessly swings a massive heavy sword as a quick swoosh sounds.
A loud clang sounds as they clash, and Kashmir notes that Caesar's skills far exceed his reputation. Grinning through the intensity, Kashmir finds the fight much more interesting than she expected.
Caesar stares her down as Kashmir admits her competitive drive to win is fueling her.
The observing staff gasps in collective shock as a sharp exclamation sounds. Kashmir performs a rapid acrobatic flip over Caesar to regain her footing. Their blades meet again with a resounding, sharp clang that echoes through the arena.
Caesar offers a small smirk and remarks on her highly unique fighting style.
Kashmir charges forward with incredible speed, leaping high into the air for her next strike. As she readies her blade, she tells her father to stop joking around during their match. Narrative text explains that a swordsman untying their hair mid-battle signifies absolute confidence in their skill. Caesar unties his dark hair and lets it flow, signaling his intent to get serious.
Standing tall, he declares that his long hair will not hinder him in any way. Narrative text emphasizes that Caesar's gesture is an obvious and direct provocation to his daughter.
He pledges to fight on equal terms according to his daughter's strong will. Caesar feels a sense of elevation at finally meeting a truly strong opponent. Looking at the palace, Kashmir realizes that Caesar's true power is beyond anything she previously imagined. Caesar commands her to defend herself as the pace of the battle accelerates.
Kashmir unleashes a flurry of relentless high-speed attacks against her father.
She grows confused as she realizes he is only deflecting her attacks rather than counterattacking. Narrative text poses the questions of why he is wasting power and hesitating to strike her. Feeling mana surge through her, Kashmir realizes she will tire first and must win quickly. Clashing again, she decides to use a desperate maneuver she reserved for extreme disasters. The friction of their clashing swords creates sparks as Kashmir pushes past her limits. Tightening her grip on her hilt, she prepares to launch her final, decisive move. Caesar's eyes widen in surprise as a sharp gasp sounds from the sidelines.
He reacts with shock as Kashmir lunges forward with a sudden, unpredictable strike.
A quick tap sounds as she pivots her foot to change the angle of her blade. Arya screams her sister's name in terror as the match reaches its dangerous peak.
A sudden spray of blood coats the area as a wet splash sounds. Caesar stares in stunned silence as the tip of her sword points toward him. Blood drips from a deep gash on Kashmir's arm as a slow drip sounds.
In the hazy aftermath of the clash, Kashmir weakly declares her hard-won victory.
Gasping for air, a bloodied but happy Kashmir repeats that she finally won.
Arya sprints toward the pair as a frantic thud of footsteps sounds.
A sharp smack sounds as a furious Arya delivers a hard slap to Caesar's face.
Arya screams that her father is a crazy man for letting the match go so far.
The clear sky remains peaceful despite the chaotic scene unfolding in the arena.
Caesar stands motionless, a visible red handprint burning on his cheek.
He calls out to Arya as the pink-haired girl breaks down in tears over the situation.
Arya scolds Caesar for his recklessness while Kashmir insists she only did a good job by winning.
Arya shouts that winning doesn't matter compared to Kashmir's safety and scolds them for ignoring their father's command.
Kashmir looks away guiltily, admitting to herself that her desire to win made her deaf to orders.
Arya demands an explanation for Kashmir's reckless behavior as her anger continues to boil.
The Grand Palace exterior stands tall as the emotional confrontation continues within its walls.
A simplified sketch depicts Kashmir's state of utter exhaustion and injury.
Arya continues her tirade, yelling that nobody listened to the warnings to stop the match. Embracing her sister, Arya asks why she fought like a crazy dog without regard for her own body.
With tears streaming down her face, Arya asks if this recklessness is why Kashmir was always injured.
Kashmir apologizes and confesses that since she never learned formal swordsmanship, she only knows how to attack. Caesar watches as a frantic Arya scolds her sister for her recklessness.
Kashmir gazes at her father with a soft, pleading expression.
Caesar pulls Kashmir into a tight embrace and vows never to hurt her with his own hands again.
Stylized text introduces the title of the story.
Kashmir looks on with wide eyes as her father continues to hold her. Caesar gently tells Kashmir that she can do anything except put herself in harm's way. He sternly reminds her that in the face of danger, self-defense is a priority over reckless engagement. Caesar asks what she was thinking during the fight while pulling her into a warm hug as a soft, comforting squeeze sounds. A hand reaches out toward the bed as a slight flinch sounds.
He places a hand on her arm as a gentle, soft swish sounds.
Kashmir leans into her father's chest, feeling the weight of his concern.
Light fingers brush against her scarred shoulder as a soft, warm glow sounds.
Narrative text explains that Arya's unique healing magic manifests as a soft light, distinct from typical divine power. Narrative text recounts how Arya's healing abilities began to emerge after she discovered her half-fairy heritage. Narrative text notes that these newly awakened powers allow her to easily mend minor injuries. Arya weeps as she finishes tending to the wounds while a few soft, wet drops sound. Kashmir offers a sincere apology to her sister and begs for her forgiveness as a tight, comforting squeeze sounds.
Arya hugs her sister back and demands she never be so reckless again, accompanied by the sound of more soft sniffles.
Narrative text begins a reflection on the deep love Kashmir feels from her family.
Narrative text emphasizes that it wasn't just her father's love, but the affection of everyone around her.
Tears of genuine happiness well up in Kashmir's eyes. Narrative text concludes her thought, stating that she realized she was a very happy person.
Bright flowers bloom under a clear, vibrant sky.
Narrative text reveals that a royal command was issued this morning to bring the family to the palace.
Caesar stands by the window while the sisters have tea, asking what transpired during their time apart. Kashmir and Arya react with a look of shared surprise.
Caesar explains that he can no longer deflect the emperor's intense curiosity regarding his two daughters.
He issues a stern warning to never act in an interesting manner while in the emperor's presence, as a sudden, tense pause sounds.
Caesar settles into his chair and instructs them to be as boring as possible as a soft, heavy thud sounds. He leans back with a serious expression, insisting that there is nothing wrong with being overly cautious. Kashmir sips her tea and notes her father's visible trembling, casting a quick, subtle glance his way. Narrative text explains that the emperor's goal was to find the crown princess, mirroring the original plot of the story.
The tea is set down on the table as a light, delicate clack sounds.
Narrative text reflects on her need to participate in the upcoming events for the sake of her long-term goals. Caesar tells Arya and Kashmir to prepare themselves for their visit. He looks on with a grim determination, stating they will depart for the imperial palace this afternoon. The two sisters exchange a worried look as a small, gulping sound echoes. Kashmir suddenly realizes that meeting the emperor likely means encountering the crown prince as well.
She asks for confirmation about meeting the prince, and Caesar grimly agrees. Caesar asks if the crown prince caused her any trouble at the debutante ball.
Arya indignantly shouts that the prince was looking at her sister with eyes full of love as heavy, angry puffs of air sound.
Caesar vows to investigate the mysterious priest Kashmir danced with, while Kashmir fruitlessly begs them to stop.
A butler enters to announce that the carriage is ready as a sharp, rhythmic tap sounds.
Caesar notes the emperor's impatience as a sharp, impatient click sounds.
The massive and ornate imperial palace stands under a bright sun.
The arrival of the Duke and the princesses is formally announced as a heavy, resounding thud sounds from their steps.
The emperor greets them from his throne, flanked by the crown prince. Kashmir observes that the emperor looks remarkably young for his position.
Narrative text mentions the intense pressure and envy caused by the Duke's announcement of his daughters.
Kashmir stands tall with a confident smile, resolved never to kneel before someone like the emperor. The blonde emperor asks Kashmir if she is the one who kicked his son. Kashmir looks incredibly uncomfortable and wonders why the emperor is bringing up that incident. The emperor shifts the conversation to Arya, praising her for becoming the center of high society fashion.
He compliments Arya's successful business while she shyly thanks him for the kind words.
Kashmir thinks the emperor is a talkative and strange man who lacks any royal dignity. With a cheerful expression, the emperor invites everyone to sit down and have tea together. Sunlight filters through the glass ceiling of the ornate palace sunroom. A variety of colorful sweets and delicate tea sets are laid out on the table.
They all sit at the table, though the atmosphere is noticeably tense.
Diego glares at Kashmir with an intense gaze, making her feel like he wants to burn her.
Kashmir finds the prince's constant glaring to be very burdensome and wonders why he is acting so hostile. She notes that his aggression feels just as strange as it did during her debutante ball.
Kashmir casts a subtle sideways glance with her pink eyes.
A sudden wave of worry hits her as she wonders if he has realized her secret identity. Memories of a night spent with a wounded man and a mask flash through her mind.
Kashmir is deeply embarrassed to realize that the man she helped, Dedita, was actually the crown prince.
Silence falls over the table as Kashmir sips her tea while sitting across from Diego.
The narrative text confirms that the man she encountered was indeed Crown Prince Diego.
Kashmir focuses on her tea, trying to maintain her composure under the prince's scrutiny.
The blonde-haired emperor watches the scene with a pleasant and relaxed smile. He warmly reiterates that he has been very eager to meet Kashmir in person.
The emperor finds it wonderful and amazing that Kashmir actually dared to kick his son. He laughs uproariously, admitting he has been mocking Diego for getting kicked by a princess. Caesar tells the emperor to stop confusing his daughter, while the emperor defends his playful teasing.
Diego looks away in frustration as a sudden, sharp hack sounds from Kashmir's throat.
Narrative text describes the complicated relationship unfolding at the table as thrilling and clear.
The emperor spreads his arms joyfully and declares that youth is the most beautiful time of life.
Kashmir and Arya look utterly exhausted as they wonder how to navigate the awkward conversation.
Kashmir's pink eyes look out from behind her cup as she continues to drink.
Diego asks what she is saying while Kashmir remains bewildered by the chaotic interaction.
Diego demands that she speak up, causing a sharp gasp of shock to echo.
Kashmir suddenly spits out a mouthful of tea with a wet splash as Arya watches in horror. Caesar and Arya rush to help Kashmir as she coughs, though she insists she just drank too much. Noting her wet clothes, Diego offers to escort Kashmir to a changing room. The emperor watches the pair with a knowing look while Caesar scolds him to maintain his dignity. A heavy, resounding thud sounds as the massive doors to the room are closed. Diego and Kashmir walk alone in the hallway while rhythmic taps sound from their footsteps.
Kashmir is startled as a sharp snap sounds while she looks at her damp sleeve.
Diego mentions he knows magic and offers to dry her clothes instead of going to the changing room. He admits he only suggested the changing room to escape the emperor's embarrassing behavior.
Kashmir notes that the prince seems even more confused than she is as they continue walking.
Looking at his back, Kashmir notices that Diego's ears have turned a bright shade of red. Diego asks if she wants to escape from the palace with him, leaving her completely stunned.
Diego looks away as they approach a garden, leaving Kashmir speechless at his sudden suggestion.
A small white bird sits peacefully on a branch under a bright blue sky. The grand imperial garden is filled with elaborate fountains, flowers, and manicured hedges. The two of them walk side by side into the vast and sunny garden area. Diego mentions he heard her father calls her Shushu and asks if it is her nickname.
He asks if he can call her Shushu now that they are acquainted, and Kashmir shyly agrees.
Diego thanks her and tells her she can call him Dedita when they are alone. Diego smirks at Kashmir, clearly enjoying her discomfort as he openly teases her about their past encounter.
Kashmir decides to stop overthinking and just face the situation head-on despite the prince's mysterious behavior.
Kashmir stops walking and asks the blonde-haired prince if he is still feeling pain from his previous injury.
A memory of their secret night together flashes vividly across her mind.
Diego reassures her that he is fully recovered thanks to her skillful medical treatment that night.
Kashmir turns back to the prince and asks if he is trustworthy enough to keep a secret.
Diego looks at her with a knowing smile and promises to keep her secret for the right person.
They stand in silence amidst the sparkling garden atmosphere.
The blonde-haired prince watches her with a soft and sincere expression. Diego mentions that her family would be greatly honored and rewarded if he officially announced her as his savior.
He offers to make her a hero publicly without revealing the specific, potentially compromising details of their meeting.
They both come to a sudden halt in the garden as a sudden, sharp flinch sounds.
Diego turns to Kashmir and asks why she insists on hiding the fact that she saved his life.
Kashmir looks down and explains that she helped him out of genuine kindness and has personal reasons for staying anonymous.
She smiles brightly and insists that helping others is simply the right thing to do, regardless of rewards.
Diego stares at her, seemingly struck by her selfless and noble nature.
He smiles to himself as a sharp, sudden click sounds while he prepares to speak.
Diego finally agrees to her request, even offering a sacred royal oath to protect her identity.
Kashmir tells him that she trusts his word as they continue their walk through the palace grounds. They both acknowledge that their temporary roles as commoners have officially ended now that their true identities are known.
Diego suddenly moves close, making Kashmir gasp in surprise as the atmosphere shifts.
He gently brushes a strand of hair from her face, suggesting they ignore formal protocol when they are alone together.
He leans in close and requests that she continue using his nickname, reminding her of their shared history.
Kashmir panics at his forward behavior while Diego playfully agrees to her nickname, making her worry about what others might think.
Standing in the ornate garden, they exchange casual inquiries about each other's physical well-being.
Kashmir tentatively uses his nickname, seeking confirmation that they are still close despite their high status.
Diego playfully brings up their night together, causing Kashmir to agree with a slightly embarrassed blush.
Kashmir looks up at him with sparkling, hopeful eyes as she considers their evolving relationship.
Diego looks away with a slight blush as a soft, rhythmic glugging sound echoes the awkward tension.
He reaches out and takes her hand as a sudden, firm grab sounds.
The garden glows around them as they share a moment of mutual understanding.
Diego appears physically shattered by the intensity of the moment as a sudden, sharp cracking sound rings out. Kashmir looks on in confusion as a small figure expresses total bewilderment.
A stylized title card transitions the scene.
A carriage travels down a paved street as a rhythmic, steady clip-clop sound echoes from the horses.
Inside the carriage, Kashmir wonders if she said anything inappropriate during their conversation. Diego and Kashmir shake hands as they agree that their relationship is now based on mutual friendship and trust.
Diego reflects on his happiness while questioning if his attempts to get closer to her were truly successful.
He asks her to return soon to prevent the Emperor from making up more wild rumors about their relationship. Kashmir is left feeling completely overwhelmed and flustered by the prince's unexpected behavior.
The carriage arrives at its destination, and Kashmir steps out onto the stone courtyard. Kashmir looks up at the grand architecture of the temple.
The massive white stone temple stands tall against the bright sky.
A temple guard reacts with extreme shock and recognition upon seeing Princess Chrysis arrive.
Kashmir explains that she has come to meet Priest Julian to fulfill a previously requested visit. The guard quickly agrees to relay her message and invites her to wait inside the temple.
Kashmir walks through the grand vaulted hallway as a series of heavy, rhythmic thuds sound from their steps.
The guard informs her that the priest is just inside the room and she thanks him for the guidance.
Kashmir pauses at the door as a sudden, sharp flinch sounds while she overhears a heated argument about noble meetings and exhaustion. She recognizes the voices of Julian and Elle, wondering why they are together in the room.
Julian observes that the princess is sharp enough to have noticed the reason for his visit and why he brought Elle along.
A series of loud, frantic thuds sound as Kashmir asks to enter the room, interrupting a chaotic scene unfolding inside. Voices bicker loudly about stepping on feet and pulling hair while Kashmir stands bewildered outside the ornate doors. The massive doors are thrown open with a thunderous boom as someone stands in the middle of the chaotic room. Kashmir discovers Julian aggressively pulling Elle's hair and neck in a highly undignified scuffle. Kashmir and the temple guard are frozen in absolute wide-eyed shock at the sight of the priests fighting. Julian drags Elle away across the floor as a series of soft, sliding sounds ring out in the large room. Julian composes himself and looks toward the princess as she formally greets him with great honor. Standing amidst a floral backdrop, Kashmir bows deeply with her hands clasped in a sign of formal respect. A boisterous and sudden burst of laughter echoes through the grand, high-ceilinged temple hall. Elle teases Julian for his embarrassing behavior, laughing while claiming he will be punished for harassing a subordinate.
Elle points mockingly at Julian and laughs about his failed attempt to bring down the mace of justice.
Julian acknowledges the princess with a calm face, while Elle continues to laugh and blush wildly in the background. Kashmir asks for a moment alone with Julian, and Elle quickly agrees to leave them to their conversation.
Kashmir looks at the blue-haired man with a steady and serious gaze.
Julian flinches slightly and looks down with an expression of deep nervousness and guilt.
Kashmir tells him not to be so nervous and asks if he is still harbor any anger toward her.
A sharp, ringing click sounds as Kashmir places her teacup firmly back onto its saucer. Julian admits he was furious when he first saw her, but he looks up and claims he feels better now. Kashmir sips her tea while Julian lingers on the final word of his sentence. Julian stares ahead with a look of profound sadness and weariness in his eyes. Kashmir smiles slightly and asks him how she could ever truly bring herself to hate him.
Narrative text explains that, although he always seemed suspicious, she felt deeply grateful for his help during her hardest times.
Kashmir demands to know why he hid his identity as the Pope and asks if he enjoyed deceiving her.
Julian stands up with a sudden, sharp jolt, his face filled with genuine shock and alarm. Julian trembles as he desperately tries to explain that his intentions were never to deceive her.
Julian says he truly wanted to tell her the truth, while Kashmir pointedly asks why he chose not to.
Kashmir watches Julian in silence as he looks away, unable to meet her gaze.
Narrative text reveals that Arya's lack of divine power as a half-fairy made her a vulnerable target for dangerous groups.
Kashmir questions why a powerful pope would ever need to strike a deal with a lowly mercenary.
Julian clenches his hands together and admits with a lowered head that he only wanted to help her.
Kashmir acknowledges his kindness but continues to press for the true motive behind his specific request.
The singular and heavy question of why he wanted to help her hangs in the silent room.
Julian sits in quiet reflection on the red velvet sofa, his back turned to the camera. A close-up focus highlights the delicate blue earring worn by the blue-haired man. Kashmir offers to change the subject if it is too difficult and decides to ask her questions in a different way.
Kashmir looks at the man and asks him directly if he has a sister.
Narrative text recounts Julian's memory of meeting a child a very long time ago.
A flashback shows a dark-haired child in a sunlit forest calling out for their sister.
The child explains they found many flowers today and credits it to the protection they received.
Narrative text notes that the young girl with round eyes reminded Julian of Arya. The dark-haired child hands over a flower while expressing their heartfelt thanks for the help. Narrative text describes the girl's older brother as a nameless, scarred boy with black eyes who was hard to recognize. The boy is described as being full of hatred for the world and smelling of extreme poverty.
Narrative text notes the nameless child smelled of sacred lilies while staring with a vacant expression.
Julian confirms to Kashmir that he does indeed have a little sister.
A soft, rhythmic whisper sounds as the child from the memory shares a quiet secret.
The girl smiles brightly about her brother's recovery, though a dark bubble confirms she is now dead.
A soft, quiet whisper sounds as the two children share an intimate moment in the sunny forest.
The girl smiles warmly while expressing her happiness, but the somber truth of her death remains.
The story takes a nostalgic turn.
Narrative text recounts a fateful day when she saved a pair of siblings from bullies.
A young, dark-haired girl looks up with a sweet, blushing face.
Narrative text explains that the sickly orphan girl reminded her of Arya.
As visits became frequent, the young girl happily displays a basket full of herbs.
A rhythmic patter sounds as the young mercenary approaches, prompting the girl to call out to her brother.
A sudden snatch sounds as the mercenary grabs the girl's arm, telling her to come closer.
The dark-eyed boy shields his sister and warily asks why she has returned yet again.
Narrative text identifies the boy as an apprentice priest living with his sister.
He relied on a small subsidy granted to orphans of the church.
The sibling stands small and shadowed against the backdrop of a grand temple.
Narrative text describes the torment they suffered from the noble priests who looked down on them.
Despite the blood and bruises, the boy endured everything for the sake of his sister. Narrative text reflects on how those living in such darkness often resemble one another.
Refusing to leave them behind, the young mercenary delivers a powerful punch to their tormentor.
She walks alongside them, explaining that her own brother gave her her name.
She offers a friendlier nickname to the little girl while the boy watches with a brooding, dark expression.
The little girl smiles with pure, unbridled joy. A rhythmic patter sounds as the mercenary runs off to rejoin her own brother. Narrative text notes that despite being called names like rat and garbage, the boy remained protective.
He took great care in choosing a beautiful name for his sister. The mercenary reflects on how deeply the title of brother seemed to affect him.
The scene of their bond serves as a poignant reminder of her sister Arya. A sudden desire to give the boy a name takes hold of her.
She playfully suggests naming him Black because of his dark eyes, much to his bewilderment.
She leans in close and teases him about his new, simple nickname.
She promises to visit them at dusk, claiming he clearly needs her protection from the bullies she beat.
With a bright smile, she challenges him to come see her if he wants her to return. Narrative text notes that their meeting soon became a regular part of their lives. Bully priests flee in terror as the boy kneels on the ground, battered and exhausted. A quick dash sounds as she rushes to his side, asking if he is all right.
He tells her to go away and pretend she hasn't seen his pathetic state.
She looks at him with a steady gaze and asks if he truly wants her to ignore his pain.
A firm grip sounds as he clenches her clothes, admitting he cannot bear to show her his weakness.
Narrative text notes that her clumsy attempts to help were perceived by the boy as pity.
Tension radiates through the silent forest. He lashes out in a fit of self-loathing, screaming that her sympathy makes him feel nauseous and small.
The young girl is left stunned by his sudden, explosive resentment.
Through tears and a bruised face, the boy tells her he never wants to see her again.
Narrative text reveals the tragic news that Anne died the very night of their argument. Unaware of the tragedy, she waited in the garden for a long time, but he never appeared.
Believing he truly hated her, she looks at the moon and decides to respect his wish to be left alone.
A series of heavy footsteps sound against the grass as someone approaches the wall.
Narrative text notes that the boy eventually returned to the garden, more broken than before.
A series of ragged gasps sound as the battered boy searches frantically for his only friend. He finds only an empty garden, as the girl had already vanished into the night. In the present, the blue-haired Pope sits in a moment of quiet, lonely introspection.
Kashmir sits across from him, thinking of the girl who is now only a memory.
A vision of the child Anne appears, wearing a crown of white flowers and smiling brightly.
Though long gone, the child remains an unforgettable presence in her heart.
Kashmir looks down with a somber expression as she contemplates her conversation with the blue-haired man.
Narrative text explains that Julian had watched the entire life of his sister while he sits alone on a red sofa. Looking toward the high windows of the grand hall, Kashmir asks one final question.
Julian's expression softens into one of profound sadness as he listens to her.
Kashmir expresses her desire to know the truth of why he never returned to her in the past.
Julian gazes at her with a weary look while explaining that he could no longer remain the person he was. A gentle ripple moves through the surface of the tea as the room falls into silence.
Kashmir looks at him and offers a choice, asking if he would prefer for her to pretend she is unaware of his secret.
A sharp crinkling sound rings out as Julian tightly clenches the fabric of the sofa, admitting he wants her to maintain the facade.
Julian remains silent, bathed in the soft, shimmering light reflecting off the ornate room.
Julian grips the velvet cushion with his trembling hand while requesting that she keep his true identity hidden.
Julian reveals that he needs time before he can find the courage to speak for himself.
Kashmir reflects on the many thoughts she had before arriving at the temple. Sitting in a carriage, Kashmir looks out the window and considers how she should handle the truth about her friend.
She smiles slightly, realizing that her past worries have become meaningless in the face of the truth. Kashmir looks back on their history, acknowledging that regardless of his status, Julian was always a dear friend she knew as Elle.
A sudden, sharp smack sounds as Elle waves happily to the princess, only to be struck by a sudden force.
Elle struggles as Julian uses his divine power to choke him in a fit of emotional distress. Elle teases Julian for his blushing face, mockingly pointing out that he looks like a man in his first love. Kashmir smiles warmly at Julian, promising to address him as Elle when they are alone and praising his hard work. A soft rhythmic patter sounds as Kashmir bids the Pope farewell, laughing internally at the fact that he is actually older than her. The scene shifts to the exterior of a massive white mansion as maids begin their morning chores in the garden. Looking out from a balcony, Kashmir reflects on how this spring must be a time for preparation rather than relaxation. Narrative text warns that a cold wind is approaching as dark clouds gather. A firm, rhythmic tap sounds as Kashmir stands on a footstool, vowing to prepare for the coming war to keep her family safe.
A close-up focus highlights a pink invitation sealed with red wax and a small bouquet of red flowers.
Kashmir looks at the letter with a surprised expression, questioning if they were both invited.
Sitting in the salon, Kashmir wonders why a socialite like Llewellyn would invite a swordswoman with no social standing.
Arya scoffs at the letter, claiming it is laughable how transparent the invitation's true intent is.
A sudden, sharp jolt sounds as Arya stands up, insisting that Llewellyn would never truly want her presence.
Arya points out the absurdity of being invited to tea by someone she had previously dueled. Narrative text explains the intense rivalry between Arya and Llewellyn that began in high society. A sudden, sharp snap sounds as Arya throws the letter down, declaring the invitation is merely a ploy to reach Kashmir. Arya warns her sister to be careful, claiming that Llewellyn's target is actually Kashmir herself.
Arya highlights the suspicious timing of the tea party, which coincides perfectly with her own busy schedule.
Looking across the grand room, Arya warns that the clever woman likely intends to exploit Kashmir. The maid pours tea while Kashmir remains confused about her previous encounters with Lady Ricardo. Kashmir recalls the debutante ball, fearing what might happen if her secret connection to the lady was ever revealed.
Arya continues to grumble about how Llewellyn has bothered her about Kashmir ever since the ball.
Arya desperately begs her sister to ignore the invite, though Kashmir feels a strange pull to meet the woman at least once.
A sharp crinkling sound rings out as Arya grips her skirts and decisively changes her mind about attending.
Kashmir realizes she must finally step into high society after a long period of avoiding social activities.
Arya eats her meal with a frustrated expression as Kashmir resolves to find the true motive behind Llewellyn's interest.
Sipping her tea, Kashmir decides to observe the situation closely despite Arya's obvious disapproval.
Narrative text introduces Llewellyn Ricardo, noting her role as a calculated villainess in the original story world.
Intricate illustrations of roses and spiderwebs emphasize the calculated nature of Llewellyn's every move.
Kashmir looks at her own reflection, considering the possibility of turning such a dangerous person into a powerful ally for the war.
A close-up highlights Llewellyn's glowing green eye as Kashmir acknowledges her potential as the best possible ally. A soft, rhythmic tap sounds as Kashmir holds her tea, deciding to use the lady as a tool if necessary.
Narrative text concludes that her actions are driven by the absolute need to protect those she loves.
A firm, heavy step sounds as a pair of black boots crush the red rose petals scattered on the ground. The black-haired woman notes that the garden of the Ricardo mansion is famous for never withering, even in early spring, because of the massive fortune spent on magic stones to keep the flowers in bloom.
Looking startled, the black-haired woman turns as someone apologizes for the delay. Bowing gracefully in a dark gown, the red-haired woman expresses her gratitude to Princess Chrysis for accepting her invitation and invites her to begin the tea party. As they sit at a long, ornate table, narrative text observes that most of the guests are watching the princess with malicious and curious gazes while flaunting their fashionable accessories. Closing her eyes, the black-haired woman feels a sense of relief that Llewellyn did not attempt to manipulate the seating arrangements to make her uncomfortable. Narrative text explains the social hierarchy of the table, noting that the seats directly beside the organizer are considered the most prestigious.
An illustration of a crossed-out royal silhouette highlights that there is currently no princess residing in the palace to claim the highest social rank.
A diagram illustrates that the black-haired woman, as the one with the highest rank present, rightfully occupies the most important seat at the table.
A high-heeled foot stomps down on the hierarchy diagram as narrative text notes that high society is not solely governed by official status. Raising a crown above her head, the red-haired woman is identified as Llewellyn Ricardo, the person who truly wields the greatest power in this social circle.
Looking at the delicate tea set, the black-haired woman wonders if Llewellyn truly intends to treat her well and does not harbor any hidden resentment. She glances sideways with a look of slight suspicion, thinking she would be disappointed if her host's kindness was merely a facade.
A close-up highlights the sharp, calculated gaze of the red-haired woman's glowing green eye.
A sharp, rhythmic tap sounds as the two women lock eyes across the table in a moment of silent tension. A sudden, warm blush colors Llewellyn's face as she hides behind her teacup, and a soft gasp sounds as she reacts to the princess. The black-haired woman looks completely bewildered, realizing that while Llewellyn may not hate her, the intensity of her gaze is overwhelming.
Narrative text emphasizes the immense pressure the black-haired woman feels under the weight of the social atmosphere.
The feeling of being under pressure intensifies as the surrounding guests continue to watch her every move. Sweat beads on the black-haired woman's face as she notes that Llewellyn's gaze is filled with a high level of excitement and curiosity, making her suspect the lady knows more than she lets on. A small, nervous cough sounds as the brown-haired guest in the patterned dress comments that Lady Chrysis's outfit looks remarkably comfortable.
Dark shadows fall across the princess's face as she silently wonders why none of the guests had the courage to ask about her unconventional attire sooner.
Smiling brightly, the black-haired woman explains that she is the type of person who values convenience and personal comfort above all else. Guests whisper amongst themselves in the garden, wondering why Llewellyn would invite someone to such a prestigious place when their clothing seems so unsuitable for the occasion. Comedic panels show the princess being dismissive, noting that since the organizer hasn't complained, she doesn't care. She recalls that in the past, she always wore clothes that matched her sword, and no one dared to criticize her. Narrative text reflects on her internal struggle, noting that while she once considered wearing a dress to avoid controversy, she felt that doing so would be a betrayal of her true self as a princess.
Deciding to address the elephant in the room to end the party quickly, the black-haired woman asks Lady Ricardo directly if her uniform has negatively affected the tea party.
Llewellyn looks calm as she simply answers that it has not.
A heavy silence falls over the table as the other guests look on in absolute shock at Llewellyn's unexpected defense of the princess.
With a soft, knowing smile, Llewellyn tells the guests that she doesn't understand why they would think such a thing about the princess's attire. When the guest in the patterned dress protests that the outfit is meant for men, Llewellyn sharply counters by asking if clothes have a specific gender. Llewellyn continues her defense, pointing out that since the princess didn't arrive in pajamas, there is absolutely no reason to make her clothing an issue.
Llewellyn offers a warm compliment on the princess's purple vest, prompting a surprised thank you and a return compliment on Llewellyn's own dress as the princess marvels at her host's friendliness.
A sudden, sharp movement sounds as Llewellyn points her fan at the princess, startling her with the abrupt shift in energy.
Narrative text reveals that the black-haired woman had fully expected to be criticized for wearing men's clothes to the party, regardless of the original reason for the invitation.
She looks at Llewellyn and realizes that the woman's current behavior is completely different from what she anticipated.
Thinking of the original story, the black-haired woman concludes that these characters are far more complex than the garbage novel she remembers, regretting that she let its biased descriptions sway her judgment.
The guests look visibly disappointed as they follow Llewellyn's lead, while the black-haired woman realizes she no longer finds the red-haired lady scary.
A sudden, sharp clink sounds as Llewellyn sets her teacup down, stating that while she didn't want to bring it up, there is a clear contradiction in the attitude being shown at the table. The guests freeze in shock as Llewellyn declares that someone is currently being incredibly rude. A sudden warm blush fills the brown-haired guest's face as Llewellyn clarifies that the rudeness is being directed at someone other than Lady Chrysis. Llewellyn abruptly tells her guests that it is getting late, and she hopes they will all go home immediately, much to their confusion since the party has only lasted an hour. A firm, heavy slap sounds as Llewellyn strikes the table, repeating her command for everyone to leave at once.
Smiling with forced politeness, Llewellyn explains that even though it is early spring, the sun sets quickly and it is too cold for them to stay any longer.
A rhythmic patter sounds as the terrified guests scramble to leave the garden, acknowledging that they must obey Llewellyn's wishes. The scene shifts to the deserted tea table as Llewellyn bids them a final farewell. A sharp scraping sound rings out as the black-haired woman stands up, thinking that the party ended too soon for a private talk, only to be stopped when Llewellyn calls her name. The princess turns back to find Llewellyn watching her with a serious, expectant expression. Llewellyn looks directly at her and states that she has something she wants to ask her in private. Sitting alone by the grand fountain, Llewellyn invites the lady to ask whatever she wishes to know, but the black-haired woman counters by asking if she will receive an honest answer, to which Llewellyn agrees as long as the princess does the same. Llewellyn explains that business requires mutual exchange and reassures Kashmir of her moral standing before asking if she may remain silent. Kashmir smiles gently, noting that the lady's forthcoming question will likely not be difficult to answer. Kashmir suggests they exchange questions one by one, pledging that all of her responses will be truthful.
Narrative text notes that both negotiators are satisfied with the arrangement, and Kashmir confirms her agreement as they sit at the garden table.
Llewellyn takes the lead, asking if she and Princess Chrysis had met before the princess's official debut.
Kashmir confirms they have indeed met before, causing Llewellyn to look noticeably flustered.
Kashmir asks why Llewellyn constantly questioned Princess Arya about her during their previous encounters. Llewellyn reacts with shock as Kashmir wonders if she had uncovered information she was not meant to know. Blushing deeply, Llewellyn insists she was only interested in gathering light personal information.
Llewellyn adamantly denies being a stalker, while Kashmir acknowledges that the lady's character is not as malicious as she once feared.
Kashmir offers Llewellyn the option to remain silent or allow her to ask a different question if the current one is too difficult.
Llewellyn clenches her hands nervously, hesitating for a moment before addressing Kashmir directly. Llewellyn admits she was simply driven by a desire to know what kind of person the princess truly was. Narrative text observes that the response was strangely ambiguous and could have been perceived as hostile in a different context. Llewellyn prepares to ask her next question, pausing to collect herself as a rhythmic tap sounds.
Llewellyn looks Kashmir directly in the eye and asks if the princess has ever harbored hatred toward her.
Kashmir looks on with serious intensity. Llewellyn watches with a calm gaze. A thought reflects on how saving people didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Llewellyn calls Kashmir a foolish person, a sentiment the princess humorously agrees is an accurate assessment. Kashmir asks a bonus question about how Llewellyn managed to identify her despite her mask and altered voice during their past encounter. A masked figure holds a scythe. Llewellyn explains that she recognized the princess's hands and decided to break her own silence rule to reveal the truth.
Kashmir stares back in utter shock. Illustrations depict the various paths a person's life can take as seen through their hands, contrasting the rough life of a knight with the restrained life of a noble.
Llewellyn reveals she has a lifelong habit of remembering people's fingerprints and that her ability has only sharpened over time. A flashback shows the princess saving a younger Llewellyn who watched her rescuer's hands with intense focus.
Llewellyn recalls seeing Kashmir briefly at the debutante ball and noticing a familiar trait.
Looking at the princess's hands, Llewellyn explains she became fully convinced of the princess's identity during that moment at the ball.
Kashmir looks on in disbelief, thinking that Llewellyn's level of recognition is comparable to a barcode scanner.
A brief narrative intermission shifts the scene.
Llewellyn reiterates that she was absolutely certain of what she saw during their encounter at the ball.
Kashmir stands frozen in a comedic state of complete bewilderment. Kashmir continues to wonder how a human could possess such an incredible level of fingerprint recognition. Llewellyn notes that she was impressed by the wounds on Kashmir's hands and found the lack of visible fingerprints to be very strange. Kashmir glances sideways as a soft look sounds.
Kashmir realizes her secret identity has been fully exposed and that she has no way to deny the lady's claims.
Llewellyn asks if Kashmir will help her keep this secret, to which the princess cautiously agrees. Kashmir asks for a formal oath, and Llewellyn insists that she is the one who owes a debt to the princess.
Surrounded by roses, Llewellyn vows to protect the secret with all of her honor.
Llewellyn formalizes her promise by swearing upon the scarlet roses of the Ducardo family. Kashmir reacts as an amazed sound rings out from the intensity of the lady's vow.
Llewellyn decisively states that she will fulfill the oath of the sun to honor their agreement. Llewellyn reaches for a sweet treat.
Narrative text reflects on Llewellyn's immense family pride, concluding that her oath is unquestionable and the truth must remain hidden.
Kashmir decides the current topic has reached its end and prepares to transition to her own turn.
Llewellyn asks point blank if Kashmir is the legendary king of mercenaries, leaving the princess momentarily speechless. Kashmir inwardly regrets her carelessness, realizing her past actions led directly to this exposure.
A series of sharp bangs ring out as Kashmir reacts with shock while Llewellyn promises to keep the secret safe. Llewellyn asks if Lord Einhard ever questioned what happened in the past, and Kashmir admits she never gave the matter any thought.
Kashmir reflects on her growing sympathy for Llewellyn despite her initial selfish intentions.
A sharp pang of conscience strikes Kashmir as she reevaluates her perspective.
The two women conclude their current line of questioning and move forward. Llewellyn proposes a final exchange where they each ask themselves a question. Kashmir maintains her resolve regarding her choice of attire for the partyman.
Llewellyn questions whether Kashmir truly follows her own heart's desires.
Kashmir looks on thoughtfully as she considers the weight of the lady's words. A quiet moment of reflection passes between them in the sunlit garden.
Narrative text compares Llewellyn's noble and beautiful nature to the crimson roses.
Llewellyn's natural charisma and high self-esteem easily captivate everyone in her presence. A soft, warm blush colors Llewellyn's face as she listens to the princess. A sudden, firm squeeze signals a shift in the intensity of their conversation. Kashmir declares her extremist views on the absolute necessity of living a free life. She expresses a preference for a short, free existence over a long, withered one.
A golden butterfly rests delicately near Llewellyn's vibrant red hair. The elegance of the lady's attire reflects her high standing and personal pride.
A soft rustle sounds as Kashmir directs her attention toward Llewellyn's hair.
Kashmir compares the lady's hair to a rose in full bloom that inspires desire.
The two negotiators reach a new level of mutual understanding and respect.
Kashmir gently touches the red locks, comparing the vibrant hair to a living flame.
She tells Llewellyn that fire has an inherent right to burn as brightly as it wishes.
Kashmir urges Llewellyn never to give up her right to be her true, fiery self.
Llewellyn looks completely stunned and deeply affected by the princess's sincere words. A sudden turn away follows as Llewellyn hides her face to conceal a deep blush. Kashmir pivots the conversation toward a new proposition for their future relationship.
Standing tall, Kashmir extends her hand and asks Llewellyn to become her friend.
A quick swish sounds as Llewellyn reacts with surprise, calling Kashmir a truly strange person.
A firm, steady hold sounds as they tightly clasp hands to seal their new friendship.
The two women stand together in the garden, having formed an unexpected and powerful bond.
The bright spring sun shines over the peaceful garden gazebo.
Kashmir recalls her past determination to master swordsmanship through daily, rigorous training. Lord Einhard makes a sudden and blunt declaration of his own immense strength.
Kashmir is left utterly bewildered and flustered by his unexpected and arrogant boast.
She counters his claim by pointing out several glaring problems with his assessment. Einhard suggests that Kashmir is missing the most serious issues in her combat style. Kashmir humorously protests his habit of casually pointing out her greatest weaknesses. Einhard critiques her for having no clear strategy and insufficient physical strength for long battles. A sharp smack sounds as he metaphorically strikes her with his blunt honesty. He points out her inability to defend and her reliance on short-term attacks. Einhart claims that very few swordsmen on the continent are capable of truly defeating him. Kashmir reacts with shock as he identifies her as the weakest link in defensive combat. He predicts she will lose any match lasting over an hour due to poor stamina. Einhart further critiques her mana efficiency, claiming it will eventually render her sword useless. A rhythmic snap sounds followed by a pained ouch as Kashmir reacts to his barrage of criticism. Kashmir is left speechless and defeated after being called a stupid swordsman who never defends. Einhart watches her calmly, waiting for his harsh words to sink in. Kashmir looks on in a state of complete and utter disbelief.
Looking up at him, she questions his sudden mention of finding her a teacher.
The atmosphere shifts as they transition to the next stage of her training.
Einhart explains that his harsh critique was intended to prepare her for a new instructor. The white-haired man stares in wide-eyed shock as the black-haired woman looks back with a panicked, sweating expression.
A dramatic announcement reveals that a new instructor has finally been chosen.
The dark-haired man stands between them, casually asking if the two already know each other. Internally, the woman's reason and emotions clash violently as she desperately searches for an escape from the awkward situation.
A brief title card signals a transition in the narrative flow.
The dark-haired man admits he lacks the proficiency and time to personally handle the training. He reveals that he knows a true expert in defense and physical training who can help instead. The black-haired woman is left reeling at the sudden mention of a new swordsmanship teacher.
A sharp, sudden slap sounds as the dark-haired man tells her to focus, prompting her to apologize for being distracted.
She worries that her secret identity as a master of swordsmanship will be immediately uncovered by a new teacher. The dark-haired man wonders how he will explain bringing a mercenary to be taught by a high-ranking knight.
Narrative boxes explain that while the Duke and the mercenary share a history of destruction, most knights remain wary of mercenaries.
The woman is left speechless when the dark-haired man reveals the new teacher is actually his own subordinate. A massive, explosive aura fills the screen as a blunt accusation of power abuse rings out.
The realization that Liner is also a subordinate to Caesar weighs heavily on the woman's mind.
The three stand in the palace hallway as the woman recognizes the second knight commander's familiar presence. She laments the harshness of having a palace leader train her physical strength on a rare day off.
A decorative box suggests that it is time to reorganize the current situation.
Flashbacks show the white-haired man rescuing a young girl and the woman later threatening him to keep her identity secret.
Memories of a dance invitation at a debutante ball resurface as the woman prepares to face the white-haired man again.
Liner asks why Miss Mir is present, while the woman remains silent and visibly stressed behind her mask.
The dark-haired man offers to formally reintroduce the two to one another.
He introduces the white-haired man as Liner Einhart, the leader of the Second Imperial Knight Order.
In return, he introduces the black-haired woman as Mir, the legendary Golden Shield mercenary. The intricate details of the woman's dark mercenary outfit are displayed.
A formal, low bow sounds as the two warriors exchange greetings with practiced military etiquette.
An awkward silence settles over the group while Caesar watches with a questioning look.
The black-haired woman thinks to herself that she should not force the commander to waste his time on her. Liner is visibly startled when she suggests that he is likely too busy to help her practice.
With a quick, dismissive swish sounding, she bows and suggests that her presence might be an inconvenience for him. She recalls past experiences of knights looking down on mercenaries and feels her self-esteem crumbling.
Liner urgently protests, insisting that training her is not an inconvenience but a great honor.
The scene shifts as a brief moment of quiet follows the intense exchange.
A narrative pause occurs as the two sides of the agreement settle their nerves.
Blushing deeply, Liner apologizes for his initial stress, admitting he didn't realize who his student would be. The woman claims she doesn't need instruction, but Caesar bluntly states she could be defeated with a single finger. Caesar clarifies that the training should focus solely on physical strength and defensive techniques.
He further explains that basic palace training is the best path forward for her.
Caesar's eyes glow a piercing red as he looks on with a stern and commanding gaze.
He pointedly asks the knight captain if he is truly incapable of performing the task. Liner bows in submission while Caesar leads the woman away, leaving her to wallow in her shame and embarrassment. The scene shifts to the wide, open training grounds as they discuss the next phase of the program.
Liner proposes starting with 100 laps to test her base stamina, while the woman notes her reliance on mana.
A sharp, distracting itch sounds as the black-haired woman suddenly pauses mid-run.
Liner explains that the exercise must rely on her physical body alone, not her internal power.
Caesar explains that the woman is an irregular master who lacks the physical foundation of a traditional knight.
He notes that she surpassed all expectations through her genius-level ability to wield innate power.
Liner is left in a state of complete disbelief after hearing about the woman's strange combat nature.
Caesar admits his discomfort with her total dependence on power over balanced physical stamina. He expresses deep concern about her long-term survival if she continues to fight with such a reckless habit.
Caesar cautions that his subordinate's unusual behavior might be frustrating, while the black-haired woman agrees to accept his guidance.
A system message instructs Mir to maintain her role as personal support and guide throughout her mission.
Standing before a heavy wooden door, the woman promises to remain mindful of her speech and actions. Rhythmic thudding sounds echo through the grand stone courtyard of the Imperial Palace.
Her legs tremble violently as a pained hiccup escapes her during the grueling 98th lap of the training course.
Noting her exhaustion, Liner asks if she is truly all right while Mir breathlessly vows to never surrender.
Liner suggests stopping the exercise, but the woman remains determined to finish the run despite her flagging stamina.
A portrait of the black-haired woman captures her raw determination and physical agony during the trial. Liner watches her with a look of stunned admiration and a deepening blush coloring his cheeks.
A thought bubble questions how any human could be so remarkably stubborn and driven.
Having completed 100 laps, the woman collapses in exhaustion while Liner offers her water and praise.
A startled exclamation escapes the woman as Liner clumsily prepares to serve the water.
A sudden jerk sounds as Liner spills the water, admitting he was distracted by thoughts of her surprising physical limits.
A quiet question lingers in the air regarding just how poor her physical condition truly is.
Liner decides that the first session is sufficient for the day, blushing as he suggests they end the practice. The two warriors sit together on the dusty training grounds to recover from their shared exertion.
Liner is struck by a wave of intense surprise as he stares blankly ahead.
A decorative title card marks a pause in the afternoon's training session. A colorful graphic features a red panda mascot while signaling a shift in the story's focus.
A loud thud sounds as a chair topples over in the dining hall while Liner holds the woman's hand.
Liner screams in a panic, desperately apologizing for having touched the legendary mercenary so casually. A sharp grasp sounds as the woman firmly seizes the Knight Commander's scarred wrist. Mir reminds him of her previous warning to take her secret to the grave while holding him tight.
A metallic clock sounds as a hand rests on a sword hilt, following a stern command not to act arbitrarily.
Liner blushes furiously as a narrative box notes he has kept her secret faithfully since their first meeting. Mir notes the knight's racing pulse as she keeps her hand placed firmly over the artery in his wrist. A firm squeeze sounds as the woman demands to know if he intends to reveal her true identity. Liner gasps as he struggles to maintain his composure under her intense and threatening scrutiny. He swears upon his sword and the honor of his knightly order that he will never speak a word. Covering his face with his free hand, Liner pleads with the woman to finally release his wrist. Mir lets go of his hand, stating that she has decided to trust his word for now. Looking confused, the woman questions why he is so adamant about not hearing the secret she was prepared to tell.
With a quick step back sounding, Liner insists that he still has no desire to know her hidden truths.
Standing together in the dining hall, Mir expresses her desire to become strong enough to face him as an equal opponent.
A faded memory resurfaces, showing the hazy silhouette of a figure from a long-past encounter.
The flashback reveals the tearful, blushing face of a young boy during a life-altering moment.
Liner gazes at her with an intense, lingering look that betrays his internal emotional turmoil.
A soft touch sounds as the woman reaches out toward the Knight Commander's face.
Liner stands framed by soft blue flowers, his expression softening as he looks upon his companion.
A final thought bubble confirms his resolve to continue pretending he knows nothing of her true self. A portrait of the young, yellow-eyed boy appears alongside a promise of a future reunion.
High above the noisy palace, a message announces the arrival of a foreign delegation for an upcoming celebration.
Mir drinks tea while reflecting on the history of Alexander, a man once feared as the continent's most violent executioner. Narrative boxes detail the rise of the mad tyrant who reached master rank at 15 and seized the throne by 17. A fierce argument sounds as Arya and a companion scream about dress codes and the absurdity of royal etiquette.
A whimsical illustration depicts the kingdom of Arata and the desperate pleas for their king to return to his duties.
Arya smiles brightly amidst a flurry of roses, seemingly oblivious to the king's strange obsession with her. A closing graphic encourages readers to continue the journey in the next chapter. A ghostly image of a figure's back appears once more, echoing a significant moment from the past. The young boy's tearful face is seen again, emphasizing the lasting impact of their first meeting. A close-up of the white-haired man, Liner, reveals a deep blush and a pained expression.
A memory of Arya smiling brightly in a frilly pink dress accompanies a note about a strange obsession with her.
A graphic features a red panda mascot while directing readers to continue the story on a specific website.
Narrative boxes introduce Alexandro as the 7th child with the weakest claim to the throne.
Surrounded by shadowy silhouettes of his brothers, the young boy experiences the sting of being ignored and neglected. A chaotic scene depicts 12-year-old Alexandro facing assassins as his nanny urges him to become a strong king and seek vengeance.
A raw, stylized portrait captures the young boy's overwhelming terror and despair as he cries out.
Sacrificing herself, the nanny enables Alexandro to teleport away, leaving behind a trail of blood and shattered glass. Seriously injured, the boy collapses in a rainy back alley of the Salatine Empire, where a fateful meeting occurs.
A young Arya appears for the first time, holding a yellow umbrella over the fallen boy to shield him from the rain.
While drinking tea, the black-haired woman reflects on her past role in rescuing and treating the young prince. A small graphic shows the young girls struggling to carry the bleeding boy through a heavy downpour toward a cabin. Flashbacks show the two children bickering as the girl forcefully tries to feed the stubborn and ungrateful prince. Mir realizes that a recurring pattern of ridiculous coincidences has linked her past identities to the present situation. A sudden splash sounds as she spills her tea in shock upon seeing a familiar face in a newspaper picture. Mir bites her thumb in distress, noting that the man's middle name matches Leo's and wondering about his true identity. A startled gasp escapes her as she finally connects the names of Leo and Alexandro in her mind. Gossip fills a tavern at night as patrons speculate whether the hooded figure at the bar is the real Mir or an imposter.
Mir sits quietly in the tavern, thinking to herself that she needed fresh air to clear her confused mind.
A tavern interior is shown as she orders a vodka martini, specifically requesting that it not be blended.
She stares at her green drink, contemplating the possibility that Leo might actually be the grown-up Alexandro. Mir worries that the king might seek revenge for her rough treatment of him during their childhood encounter. Memories show her past rough kindness, where she bullied the prince into taking medicine and working out for his own good. Recalling her dark history, she panics at the thought of the king coming to kill her for her past behavior.
A sharp slap sounds as she slams her glass down, ordering a strong bottle of vodka to bolster her courage.
She chugs the alcohol but laments that her swordmaster's constitution prevents her from getting properly drunk. A heavy thud sounds as she slumps over the table, desperately hoping that her past savior is just a simple farmer. A focused close-up captures the intense pink gaze of the woman as she hides beneath her dark hood.
She suddenly looks up with a wide-eyed expression of alarm as her senses pick up on an approaching presence.
A narrative box notes that the newcomer is likely a man of great strength, comparable to Liner.
Rhythmic thudding sounds echo as a pair of dark boots strides purposefully across the tavern floor.
A tall, hooded man in black attire enters the tavern and begins scanning the room for his target.
A mischievous smirk plays across the mysterious man's lips as he focuses his attention on the woman at the bar.
Mir thinks to herself that his decision to sit right next to her is a blatant sign that he has found what he was looking for. She looks at him with deep suspicion, wondering if he is a trap or simply has a strange taste in companions.
The hooded stranger rests his chin on his hand, observing the woman with an amused and enigmatic expression.
Rhythmic gulping sounds are heard as Mir continues to drink, ignoring the man while her intuition warns her to play dumb. The stranger reaches out toward her bottle, teasingly suggesting that she would be sick of the drink if he shared it. He orders a fruit platter and a bottle of absinthe, causing the bartender to react with a surprised look.
Mir wonders if he is an assassin trying to poison her as he offers her a snack to eat together.
The man prepares the absinthe with a flaming sugar cube, impressing the woman with the traditional ritual. A flashback shows a young boy with sad green eyes as Mir resolves to figure out the stranger's true purpose. A thought bubble expresses that while the drink is interesting, something else in the room is far more fascinating. A sudden flinch sounds as the stranger's hand moves decisively toward the woman's drink. A soft sliding sound occurs as the man's hand reaches out to grasp hers, causing a moment of tense contact. Leaning in close, the blonde man tells her that she is far more interesting and that he knows how to play tricks.
A chibi character appears on a credit page, thanking readers for their support and displaying the series title.
A ghostly, faded image of the blonde man's face lingers as if haunting the woman's thoughts. A close-up of the man's mouth shows him beginning to speak a single, loaded word directed at the woman. A massive boom sounds as an explosion or impact rocks a scene featuring 3 grim-faced men. Panic-stricken voices scream out for Mir to reveal herself as an approaching presence draws near.
Drinking deeply, the black-haired woman realizes her quiet evening has been interrupted by a persistent visitor.
Shifting her focus, Mir resolves to deal with the nuisance outside before addressing her other concerns.
Stepping into the cool night air, the hooded woman questions the cause of the sudden commotion.
A group of thugs confronts her, accusing the mercenary of stealing their livelihood while she denies ever seeing them. The leader shouts that she usurped a high-paying escort mission that belonged to them months ago.
Mir pauses as a vague memory of the past assignment begins to surface in her mind.
Recalling an old request from the guild, she realizes the original mercenaries had simply been too drunk to work. The arrogant thug continues his tirade, boasting that he has finally cornered her after she supposedly fled. Dismissing their delusions, Mir offers them a chance to leave peacefully, but the man mistakes her mercy for fear. The men surround her with mocking laughter, disparaging her small stature and questioning her reputation as a legendary mercenary.
Insults fly as the thug leader suggests she only achieved her rank by catering to aristocratic clients.
A sudden whoosh sounds as the black-haired woman's gaze sharpens and she prepares to strike.
A massive boom sounds as a single, powerful blow sends the leader crashing violently into a nearby wall.
Mir's confusion grows as Leo steps from the shadows, his dark aura flaring as he insults the fallen men. Ignoring the thug's questions, the blonde man attacks with brutal efficiency while Mir observes his oddly familiar behavior. She attempts to sense his identity, but wonders if he is using high-level magic tools to mask his true face. Mir concludes that his equipment is of exceptional quality, marking him as a man of immense wealth.
A metallic clatter sounds as Leo draws his blade, darkly musing on a gruesome way to silence the thug's insults.
A sudden bright flash of light green energy erupts as the man prepares to deliver a final lethal strike. Mir's eyes widen in recognition as she identifies the distinct color and power of the man's aura. The shimmering green light confirms her suspicions about the mysterious warrior's true capabilities.
Placing a hand on his arms, she tells him to stop the violence before things go too far.
The two stand together in the quiet street, the tension between them thick as the thugs lie defeated. While Mir insists on sparing their lives, Leo expresses his desire to continue punishing them for their disrespect. The blonde man turns his gaze toward her, stating that she shouldn't have to deal with such filth herself.
A soft chuckle sounds as Leo's boots scrape against the stone floor during his departure.
Staring at him, Mir is struck by the overwhelming feeling that he is the person she remembers from years ago.
A sharp thud sounds as she grabs him, demanding an answer while he lets out a pained cry. A haunting childhood memory resurfaces. Looking closer, Mir realizes that his physical appearance perfectly matches the child from her past.
Recalling their shared history, she remembers the kind words she once spoke to the neglected young prince.
A gasp of shock escapes her as she finally acknowledges the truth of his identity. The narrative notes that the boy who vanished years ago has returned as a fully grown man. Leo offers her a knowing smile, his eyes shining with a warmth that confirms her realization. Beneath the brilliant glow of a full moon, the transition from boy to man is made undeniably clear.
High palace walls stand spirate.
Mir finds herself wondering how the once gentle boy could have grown into such an arrogant and powerful king. Doubts and questions fill her mind as she contemplates his true role in the erotic kingdom.
Sensing her hesitation, Leo asks why she has suddenly fallen silent in his presence. Blurted out in a panic, she asks if he is still alive, her face twisting into an awkward, forced smile.
She immediately regrets her bluntness, fearing that her lack of etiquette might anger a reigning monarch. A whimsical illustration depicts her imagined execution as Leo's laughter rings out at her strange behavior. Framed by soft, blooming flowers, the blonde man reminds her of his long-held promise to return to her side. Despite his confirmation, Mir still struggles to reconcile the man before her with the boy she knew. She recalls the wild and temperamental child he used to be, noting his current refinement is a stark contrast. Looking at him with a blush, she asks why he refuses to address her with the affectionate title of sister. Memories clash with the present as she recalls him swearing that he would never call her by such a name. A gentle hand tuxes her. Leaning in close, Leo explains that calling her sister would be far too childish for the nature of his current feelings. In a warm memory, Mir pats the blonde boy's head and acknowledges how much he has grown. Back in the present, Leo's face flushes with a mix of frustration and embarrassment, leaving Mir to wonder if he is truly angry. He firmly demands that she stop treating him like a child, but she remains unconvinced by his protest.
Leo's expression turns intensely serious as he stares at her with glowing green eyes, though Mir still privately views him as the little boy she once knew.
Feeling the weight of the situation, she suggests they return to the tavern to speak more privately. Resettling into the tavern, the conversation shifts to Leo's noble heritage in the Atara kingdom and how Mir's past assistance allowed him to finally return home. Pouting slightly as he pours a drink, the blonde man confirms that her summary of his history is accurate.
A heavy narrative weight settles on the table as the story of Alexandra's rise from nobility to the throne is acknowledged. Mir chugs her vodka in a panic, haunted by vivid memories of how she used to bully the young prince into taking his medicine and training.
She watches Leo drink, wondering if his original feelings for her have truly changed after all these years.
Beneath the shadow of his hood, the blonde man offers her a surprisingly soft and genuine smile. Mir can't help but lament how much he has changed, her chibi-like distress highlighting her confusion over his transformation.
Leo calmly recounts the details of her own life, noting her journey from mercenary to swordmaster and her eventual discovery as the daughter of Duke Chrysis.
She confirms his words with a nod, feeling a sense of relief that they are alone and can speak freely about their secret pasts.
While Leo finds the twists of her life incredible, Mir finds the entire situation to be an absurdly ridiculous drama.
Staring into the green liquid of her drink, she reflects on the fact that Leo is one of the few who truly knows her identity.
She asks him to keep her presence a secret for now, and he solemnly promises to take her confidence to the grave.
A narrative box notes that these secrets are necessary for the dramatic plans currently being formed.
Mir tells him that no oath is necessary because she trusts him completely.
The blonde man rests his chin on his hand, observing her with a steady and unreadable gaze.
With a faint smirk, he comments on how ruthless she continues to be.
Mir invites him to attend the upcoming banquet celebrating the delegation, telling him to see for himself that she is truly a princess.
Leo dismisses her challenge, stating that he already believes her because he knows she would never lie to him. A close-up of Mir's pink eye captures her moment of quiet realization at his absolute faith in her.
As they part ways, a reflection on the past 5 years emphasizes how they have walked different paths and grown into strangers.
His hand reaches out to grip hers firmly as he begins to speak. Leo reacts with sudden, dark annoyance at the suggestion that they are strangers, before letting out a weary sigh at his own frustration. He finally settles on a compromise, suggesting that, for a start, they should simply try being friends.
A soft sliding sound echoes through the tavern as the door is opened.
Mir reaches up to adjust her hood, preparing to head back out into the night. Her sharp gaze focuses on him one last time before their departure.
Leaning in close, the hooded man shares a moment of intense, quiet intimacy with the seated woman.
He pulls back and bids her goodbye, noting that they should leave before they attract any unwanted attention.
Mir is left momentarily stunned by his sudden departure and the weight of their interaction.
He tells her he will miss her as he leaves, leaving her completely bewildered by his cryptic words and the lingering sensation on her wrist.
In her confusion, Mir begins to overthink his departure, wondering if he was actually making a veiled threat about their alliance. The scene shifts abruptly to a grand, brightly lit hall as the Chrysis family is officially announced to the gathered nobility. Duke Kaiser leads the way into the banquet hall, flanked by Mir in a striking red military-style dress and Arya in a deep crimson gown. While Arya immediately draws a crowd of admiring ladies discussing jewelry, Mir watches the social whirlwind with a detached expression. The Duke promises to stay by Mir's side, but he is immediately interrupted by a man requesting an urgent conversation.
Kaisar's face turns sour as he is forced to address the unexpected interruption right at the start of the event.
The newcomer is identified by name as Marquise Einat. A formal introduction reveals Noah Einhard as the captain of the Imperial Palace Knights, while Mir notes his strong resemblance to Liner.
The Marquise bows deeply and announces that he has grave news regarding the situation in the north. A heavy silence falls between the Duke and the Princess as the severity of the report sinks in.
Narrative text notes that war is approaching the Empire, as the Duke apologizes to Mir and prepares to leave to handle the crisis.
Noah turns his attention to the young master, greeting him and inquiring about the girl standing beside him. Formal introductions follow as Mir bows and identifies herself as Princess Kashmir Chrysis to the Marquis. The Marquis beams with delight, mentioning that his son is a great admirer of the princess, much to her surprise.
A narrative note reflects on the long history of the Einhard and Chrysis families as they stand together in the face of the looming war.
Mir observes that Marquis Einhard is clever and respects her, though she recognizes him as a powerful swordmaster.
He is renowned as one of the very few legendary swordmasters in the entire empire.
Despite his exceptional talent, the narrative notes he is not as powerful as Duke Kaiser. Looking out over the banquet hall, Mir silently prays that the Marquis does not perish in the coming war.
A steady, rhythmic thud sounds as a hand in a white glove offers a reassuring pat. Cal boasts about his victory and promises to remain at Mir's side until the grand banquet concludes.
Mir asks her brother if Arya has been making good progress in her magic studies under his guidance.
Cal looks visibly annoyed, questioning why they must discuss Arya during their private time together.
He admits that Arya is talented, but emphasizes that she is not nearly as skilled as he is.
Voiceover text explains that they are currently working on strengthening Arya's innate healing magic.
Cal notes that Arya has trained hard since their family was injured, proving he still cares for her despite his protests.
A mysterious figure in a white uniform approaches from the shadows, politely greeting Lady Chrysis.
Mir freezes in shock as she instantly recognizes the familiar voice of the man standing before her.
Liner stands in the garden light wearing a magnificent white uniform, his face flushed with a deep, visible blush. Mir compliments his radiant appearance, leading a bashful Liner to promise he will wear the outfit more often.
When Mir suggests the uniform looks uncomfortable for daily wear, Liner defensively reminds her that she just praised it.
Bathed in a soft glow, the white-haired knight gazes down with an expression of pure, bashful affection.
The intensity of Liner's blush deepens as he remains completely captivated by the princess's presence. Mir is struck by the sudden realization that Liner may have dressed up specifically to look good for her.
Cal's arm blocks the view as he points out how overly familiar the young knight is being with his sister.
With a teasing grin, the young master suggests that Liner is clearly trying to impress Shushu with his appearance.
Cal's expression turns chillingly dark as he sternly asks the knight if he has forgotten his place and manners. A sudden thud sounds as Liner bows low, apologizing for his delay in greeting the heir of the Croesus house. While Cal dismisses them as simple friends, Liner firmly states that the relationship cannot be defined so easily.
Sparks of intense rivalry fly between the two men as Mir stands awkwardly between their clashing auras.
A grand announcement rings out as the Emperor and the messengers from the Kingdom of Atara entered the court.
A formal thud echoes as the envoy bows, presenting a significant collection of gifts from their sovereign king.
The gathered nobility erupts into hushed whispers, visibly surprised by the nature of the offerings.
Mir watches as the crowd gossips about the young king's violent rise to power and his supposed ignorance of diplomacy. She reflects on how bizarre this situation must appear to those who do not understand the true context.
A narrative note reveals that the real king has actually entered the empire in hiding among the messengers.
An illustration explains that international relations are often determined by the quality and intent of the gifts exchanged.
Under normal circumstances, sending only weapons would be interpreted as a direct provocation to fight. Mir contemplates the unique circumstances that change the meaning of this unconventional gift. The narrative explains that these weapons are a message to prepare for a war with the North.
The golden crown of a hidden ruler gleams as he watches the proceedings with quiet calculation.
As an ally, the Kingdom of Arata signals its intent to provide superior armaments for the impending conflict.
The text confirms that for a nation facing war, high-quality weapons are the best possible gift to receive.
The scene shifts to the grand hall where the formal ceremony of delivering the gifts takes place. A mysterious scroll is presented, bearing a cryptic warning to beware of the wind from the north.
A soft chuckle sounds as the blonde king scoffs at the message, finding the threat to be amateurish and childish.
In response, the Empire also prepares a massive quantity of weaponry to be sent back as a gesture of alliance. Rumors of the impending trouble spread quickly among the lower nobles who begin to curse the Empire's situation.
Mir realizes that while the news isn't public, the highest-ranking authorities already know about the coming war.
A sharp creak sounds as Mir clenches her gloved fist, the gravity of the situation weighing on her. History recalls that throughout the Empire's long reign, the northern nomads were never considered a serious threat. The narrative notes that the Empire's mighty army has never been defeated by the wandering tribes of the north. The power gap has shifted because the northerners have finally discovered a way to weaponize demonic energy. Animals in the north have been transformed into monstrous beasts with unnatural and terrifying physical strength. Dark energy swirls as the narrative concludes that the northerners now control these beasts through forbidden magic.
A red leather collar attached to a heavy chain sits surrounded by a swirling aura of dark demonic energy.
Narrative text describes the sightings of demonic beasts near Luju village, as Mir's sharp pink eyes focus on the terrifying threat controlled by the northerners. Historical silhouettes illustrate the long legacy of the ruling class persecuting and exploiting the people of the north.
A jagged speech bubble emphasizes the grim sentiment that the coming rebellion was inevitable and deserved.
Steeling her resolve, Mir reflects on her duty as a woman of the Empire to lead her people toward victory despite the complicated history.
Liner approaches the princess with concern, noting that her complexion looks quite pale and asking if she is unwell.
Mir tries to dismiss his worry, but the white-haired knight insists she looks sick and offers to check her temperature himself. A close-up of Mir captures her amused reaction as she shares a soft, genuine smile during the banquet. With a gentle touch, Liner leans in and places his forehead against hers to feel for a fever, catching Mir completely off guard.
Mir freezes in shock, her thoughts racing as she wonders why he chose to use his forehead instead of his hands for such a gesture.
Bathed in a warm glow, the knight remains close to the princess, his expression full of bashful but sincere concern.
The surrounding noblewomen are visibly scandalized, whispering and shielding their faces at the sight of such public intimacy.
A sudden, violent crash echoes through the hall as the ceremony is interrupted by a series of pained groans and shouts. With a sharp sound, a golden staff slams into the floor, leaving the onlookers wondering if it is truly the Pope's wand. The white-haired Pope sits upon his throne, raising a hand in a calm apology for the sudden disruption.
Maintaining a perfectly serene expression, the Pope simply explains that his hand must have slipped.
Cal erupts in anger at Liner's overly familiar behavior, while the knight defensively explains he was only measuring Mir's temperature.
Overwhelmed by the escalating chaos, a chibi Mir decides it is time to leave before the situation becomes truly annoying.
A servant approaches Mir, presenting a glass of gin sent as a gift from a mysterious gentleman across the room.
Mir looks over to see the blonde man winking and raising his glass in a playful toast to her.
Mir approaches him to investigate, while the blonde man teases that she should remain polite since they are currently alone.
When she asks why he sent the drink, Leo admits he could tell she was in desperate need of one.
Mir acknowledges his keen ability to read her feelings even in a crowd, silently considering whether she should tease him back.
She questions him about the King of Atara and the unique choice of weapons as a gift, causing the disguised man to break into a nervous sweat. Hesitating slightly, the blonde man identifies the sovereign ruler as King Alexandro I.
He describes the king as a powerful sword expert with immense wealth before abruptly asking Mir what kind of men she typically prefers.
Mir gives a simple and honest answer, stating that she only cares about finding a truly good person.
When he asks if power and wealth don't matter, she coolly reminds him that she already possesses more than enough of both.
Leo leans in with a serious gaze, asking if her standard of goodness specifically includes not being a murderer.
Mir confirms that not committing murder is a very important trait, leaving a chibi Leo looking visibly depressed and dejected.
With a mischievous sparkle in her eyes, the princess adds that she also has a strong preference for someone with good looks.
Leo instantly brightens up, confidently declaring that she will definitely like the King of Atara because he is exceptionally handsome.
Mir can't help but laugh at his shameless self-promotion, finding his reaction to the word handsome absolutely hilarious.
His mood shifts as he asks Mir about her relationship with the young knight with the yellow eyes.
Mir identifies Liner by name, appearing completely unfazed while Leo listens with quiet, simmering intensity.
They sit together on the couch, the air between them thick with unspoken questions about their respective alliances.
When Mir insists they are only friends, Leo is overcome by frustration and begins banging his head against the furniture in a silent tantrum.
Mir stares at him with a look of pure bewilderment, seriously wondering if the man sitting next to her has lost his mind. She reaches out to stop his frantic movements, warning him that he is going to end up hurting himself.
Leo stops and gazes back at her with intense green eyes, his face marked by a deep blush of frustration.
Mir's gloved hand reaches up, softly cupping his cheek to steady him.
He leans into her palm, a moment of quiet vulnerability passing between the two as she holds his gaze.
The blonde man stares up at her with a look of longing and intensity, the proximity making the moment feel heavy.
Leo relapses into his comical distress, frantically wondering what exactly it is that Mir finds lacking in him.
Mir stands in a daze, her mind filled with question marks as she tries to process his bizarre and erratic behavior. She finally realizes that Leo is desperately trying to prove that he is a much closer friend to her than Liner is.
Leo gestures for her to approach, his expression a mix of expectation and lingering annoyance.
Mir obliges, reaching out to gently touch his face once more with her gloved hand.
With a playful smirk, she tells him that she will allow him to be her close friend if that is truly what he wants.
Leo reacts with another explosive burst of headbanging and shouting, leaving a panicked Mir trying to keep him from breaking his own head.
Mir wonders if Leo is drunk since he is usually such an expert.
Leo groans about hating her and smelling like alcohol.
A narrative note explains he is acting foolishly because of the alcohol.
As she consoles the weeping man, Mir casually dismisses the chaos.
Leo asks if he is truly the first man to receive a forehead kiss from her, and she confirms he is.
Mir stares blankly as Leo erupts in an excited outburst, asking if she treats everyone this way.
Mir looks on with wide, startled eyes.
The blonde man's face turns a deep shade of red as he reacts with shock.
Leo laments that he won't be able to sleep while Mir offers to get him some water.
A voice from beyond the curtain greets the lady.
Mir is delighted to see Priest Julian again, and he reciprocates the greeting with a smile.
Julian apologizes for the delayed greeting due to the circumstances, which Mir understands.
The priest clears his throat, mentioning he has a message for the lady.
Standing with a formal air, Yulian informs Mir that the Holy Father is requesting her presence.
He repeats the message that the Holy Father is calling for her.
Mir is puzzled as she wonders what could be happening. Leo watches the scene with a cold and calculating gaze. A tense, silent exchange passes between the purple-eyed priest and the green-eyed blonde man.
Leo angrily questions Julian's use of the Pope's name, but Julian dismisses his outburst as disrespectful.
Deciding to follow the summon, Mir tells Leo she will go.
Mir gives Leo a playful pat, telling him to stop being dramatic and stop drinking.
Mir arrives at the grand doors, announcing she is going inside. A soft click sounds as she opens the door and enters the room.
A brilliant full moon hangs in the star-studded night sky. A figure with long silver hair stands alone on the balcony.
Elior turns with a calm, serene expression.
Mir approaches, noting that despite his harmless smile, there is more to his mood.
A rustling sound fills the air as the narrative notes that a swordmaster can read the dark atmosphere.
A flicker of anger toward her is visible within his silver eyes. Mir point-blank asks Elior why he seems to be in such a poor mood.
She follows up by asking if he has ever felt truly angry. Elior looks down with a melancholic and troubled expression.
Mir questions the discrepancy between his words and actions, wondering what she could have possibly done to upset him. A low rumble sounds as Elior walks away in silence, leaving Mir confused. A firm thud echoes as he turns back, complaining about his inability to walk away gracefully. Mir reaches out and firmly grabs his arm to stop him.
Demanding eye contact, Mir insists she needs to know how to treat him properly.
She directly asks Elior why he is angry with her. They lock eyes in a moment of intense emotional tension.
A sharp grip sounds as Elior admits his anger was directed at his own selfishness.
He confesses that his kindness isn't as genuine as she thinks and hopes she never discovers his true nature.
Mir reflects on how Elior acts like a fool around her despite her pretending not to know about his unrequited feelings.
Mir observes that Elior could change things if he wanted, but he chooses to remain an idiot.
A soft thud sounds as Mir bows her head, deciding it is time for her to leave.
Elior hesitates, his expression filled with a sudden fear of what might happen next. Tears well in his eyes as Elior confesses his fear that she will eventually dislike him. Mir stands frozen in confusion as his desperate words repeat in her mind.
Mir's internal monologue continues as she questions her own personality while Yulian looks on in shock.
A close-up shows a hand gently reaching out to touch Mir's face.
A soft rustle sounds as Elior touches her cheek, admitting he kept his past secret to avoid being seen as a helpless child again.
Mir reflects on her subjective nature while considering the Pope's fear of her rejection.
Elior professes his unwavering honesty to the princess, but she firmly dismisses the sentiment.
The silver-haired man's face is illuminated by the celestial glow of the night sky.
A chibi Mir clarifies that her affection is for her past friend, not the current Pope Elior.
Memories of a bruised and weary young boy surface as Mir recalls her former companion.
Tears well in the eyes of the silver-haired man as a single name echoes in his thoughts.
Subtle movements on the stone balcony signify a shift in the heavy atmosphere between them.
Elior pleads for her constant protection while the full moon hangs overhead.
A sudden, firm hug surprises the lady, marked by a quick sound of embrace.
Mir stares ahead with a look of quiet shock as the proximity increases.
Their gloved hands intertwine in a silent moment of shared tension and vulnerability.
Surrounded by flowers, a cheerful chibi Elior holds hands with a clearly uncomfortable Mir.
With a determined gaze, the silver-haired man whispers his refusal to back down from danger.
Mir attempts to steer the conversation toward his dealings with the Kingdom of Atasa.
A narrative burst confirms that the Pope has deliberately shifted the topic of their discussion.
Mir acknowledges the truth of her personal connections with a look of weary realization.
The princess identifies the blonde man as a temperamental individual with a wild gaze. Elior expresses his unease regarding her relationship with the blonde man he has only recently seen.
He questions if the individual in question is the same frantic man she previously mentioned.
Despite his lack of authority over her life, Elior admits his desire to intervene. A somber warning appears, urging the lady to distance herself from that particular person. Mir looks at him skeptically, asking if there is a specific motive behind his caution.
Elior observes her intelligence while noting her blindness to the affection others feel for her. Thoughts of jealousy and envy swirl beneath the surface of the quiet night air.
Standing alone at the railing, the silver-haired man looks out into the star-studded darkness.
The scene shifts back to the opulent splendor of the grand ballroom's interior. A man's gloved hand reaches out toward Mir as he calls for her attention.
A nobleman in a suit asks if he has been selected to receive her hunting festival gift.
Mir is utterly bewildered, directly questioning the identity of the man standing before her.
The man introduces himself as Udra, the son of Lord Prama, with a confident smile.
Puzzled by his sudden boldness, Mir asks for clarification regarding his festival claims.
Udra becomes melodramatic, clutching his heart with a squeeze as he reaches an emotional limit. In a theatrical display, the purple-haired man proclaims Mir to be his one true love.
Onlookers react with varying degrees of shock and disdain at the public spectacle.
Nobility whispers in a noisy flurry as Udra continues his loud, romantic declarations for Mir.
Mir recalls Udra's past failures and his cowardly desire for revenge against her brother.
She realizes he is the source of rumors intended to keep her isolated and low status.
The princess finds his manipulative behavior and public scene to be incredibly cruel. Udra is suddenly startled, his expression shifting from passion to visible alarm. A blonde knight in golden armor, Diego, interrupts the scene to condemn Udra's behavior. As the crowd bows, Mir realizes the situation has become far more complicated. Noisy whispers fill the hall as the commoners and nobles watch the new confrontation.
A narrative note explains Diego's unexpected arrival and the resulting spread of scandalous rumors.
The text describes how a complicated love polygon involving several people has become public gossip. Rumors about tea parties and a potential royal engagement begin to circulate through the kingdom.
Diego's interference in matters concerning Mir is noted as a source of ongoing conflict.
Mir worries that the escalating scandals will eventually damage the reputation of the royal heir.
Diego remains resolute, deciding that he must take charge and arrange the situation properly.
A final narrative burst indicates that the knight still has his own personal issues to resolve.